You go straight away. Su-chan didn't even think about talking to these poor mutants. You don't need us? The Avatar was a little excited, just standing up, the silly face of red tan. King Marco was also a little dazed. Rather than directly urging them to leave, the Avatars wanted to hear the other party's arms raised, shouting the programmatic words of declare war on mankind. But although the clone was agitated, he calmed down. At least his brain-replenishing behavior is indeed unlikely to happen to this indifferent and ruthless teenager. He wanted to say more, but the chill radiated from the other's sharp and handsome face spoke of an inhumane taste. He swallowed. Only then did he realize that this was a guy even more terrifying than Magneto. I understand. When we need us, we will definitely show up. Only you can save mutants. The clones were like their nicknames, splitting into a series of clones, dragging the unwilling Hontan, Ku, leading a group of mutants to jump over Su-chan's figure, and just toward the end of the corridor. The passage at the place is advancing. Soon, these people were surprised, running like a ghost in the empty corridor of the experimental base. People, where did they go? Except for the sound of footsteps, the surroundings are quiet and scary. Where's the guard? Where's the X-weapon figure? What about the experimenters in white coats? Everyone felt extremely chilly in their hearts. There is no blood, no trace of fighting. As if the world has evaporated and been wiped out of thin air, the figures of the station personnel at the experimental bases have disappeared. At this moment, I am afraid that only the silly Hontan Ku rushed out with all the excitement. Even the clones felt extremely creepy, and like the mutants who were on the run, they had a new understanding of the concept of the strength of the number one mutant. The indifferent and ruthless young figure suddenly added a mysterious halo. Go. There are some of us who are good at moving in space. You don't need to bother others, and you will be able to leave here soon. The noisy words on the top gradually dissipated, and the Su-chan who remained did not stay long. His right hand was spread slightly, and he saw an invisible mental power wave gushing out, and a black box device buried under several tens of meters was suddenly squeezed out of thin air by him. This time, Su-chan will not be left behind. After all, the hacker girl who had never met specially standardized the most critical black box equipment of the experimental base. Last time, it was the black box that caused Su-chan to escape. After that, a series of major incidents occurred in a chain reaction. Although he doesn't care now, he doesn't want his figure to be spied on. Well, it's time to leave. This time I came here for revenge, but also for show of power. So, after confirming that all the poor mutants left, at the time of parting, Su-chan directly released the energy accumulated in the body. The magic power, as well as the Cthulhu energy previously absorbed, all turned into a violent flood current and completely vented to all the surrounding buildings. The walls and even the metal compartments are as fragile as a piece of paper. In the blink of an eye, the terrifying light of energy completely engulfed the entire large experimental base. Because this base was buried deep in the mountain, the entire mountain range began to collapse, and the location of the dam extending beyond the mountain began to collapse. Finish it all. His figure manipulated many spiritual puppets to completely disappear into the air. Yorkton, downtown Manhattan. The same day night, in a large freight warehouse area. The X-weapon like a puppet is placed in a hidden warehouse of the Supergirl, which is also one of the safe houses for her and Dad. Although the weapon stock is not as abundant as the previous one, it is enough to meet Mindy's many needs. I need a big fight tomorrow, and I have to prepare too. Mindy took out a fully automatic rifle from the pylon. Sometimes, I also envy the two of you, with extraordinary powers. Jumping up and down is much easier than me. The super killer complained. After all, in order to train a fighter machine like her, it took a long time to waste a childhood, and a lot of hard work was wasted. If she could move through any object like Susan, she wouldn't know how cool it would be. Actually, you don't need to do anything tomorrow, just look at Susan. Su-chan said flatly. Tomorrow is the day for the public trial of General Stryker, and he has naturally made plans to completely kill the instigator under the eyes of the world. The stage has been set up. Under the conditions of global live broadcast, kill the root of this evil. Only in this way can he vent his inner resentment. This is not only for himself. It was also for the sake of myself and Susan that they fled in a hurry to put a stop sign. Don't underestimate me. Susan also took out a pistol from the rack and said with a smile on her face, I am not a cumbersome and dragging oil bottle. I have also learned some kung fu from Sister Mindy. Don't worry, you don't have to worry about me. She also shook a black grenade in her hand along the way. Under molecular mimicry, Susan in the molecular state of the whole body can penetrate everything, neutralize all attacks, and can easily put a grenade in the stomach of others. This is also the technique carefully taught by Mindy, the little witch. Boom. At this moment, a very light knock on the door resounded on the iron door of the warehouse. The warehouse keeper on patrol? Mindy frowned. This is a wharf. Various private warehouses are transformed from cargo ships containers. You can get a warehouse anonymously for a fee. The administrator also knows that the things here are not very clean, so they will not patrol and knock on the door specially at night. The number one mutant, I know you are in it. You and your sister, and even the super killer Mindy. In fact, the warehouse keeper here is ours, so I can find the door. Rest assured, I am alone and have no secrets to disclose to the outside world. The man in the suit who knocked on the door gently smiled, expressing his intention and kindness. At last, he added a sentence. We can even be a group of people. After all, we all have a common enemy. Hydra says hello to you. Hydra says hello to you. Suddenly, the sentence that came out suddenly made the super killer Mindy feel a bit of horror. Hydra. Mindy's face changed. Isn't this a terrorist organization that has completely disappeared in history during World War II? Not to mention her. Su-chan and Susan, who were present, have naturally heard stories about the Hydra organization. No, Hydra is still there. Across the iron gate of a warehouse, the Hydra agent who arrived suddenly said in a cordial tone, cut off one head, and two heads will come out. Hydra will never die. In fact, the size of our organization is beyond your imagination. Every corner of the world is under the gaze of our Hydra. He just thought it was a giant snake entrenched in the nine heavens, overlooking the stupid people. Hear the words. Su-chan said indifferently. I don't know what it is to brag about an organization swept into the trash by history. You. As if being greatly humiliated, the Hydra agent outside the door suddenly became a little frustrated. Fortunately, the remaining sanity in his mind stopped the swear words that almost blurted out. After all, the young man inside was not easy to mess with. He took a deep breath and said very tactfully, although we can't tell you the specific situation, we have secretly controlled the world's major organizations. As long as we are willing, we can subvert the whole world at any time. Your enemy is my enemy. Our interests are the same. After you take control of the entire world, you have everything you want. Women, wealth, thrones, and even the crown of the king of the earth will all be crowned on your head. At this moment, the Hydra agent is like a good-tempered demon, whispering constantly, depicting a beautiful blueprint world for Su-chan. But Su-chan laughed. A terrorist organization that has disappeared in the world for decades, hiding its head and showing its tail, everyone shouts and beats, like a mouse hiding in an underground ditch. Just like that. I'm ashamed to be soliciting me. Su-chan was really amused. The ruthless ridicule laughter was like a stone mallet constantly beating in the heart of Agent Hydra. Damn bastard. The devout Hydra believers simply can't stand the other side's repeated provocations of the majesty of their own organization. But when he still wanted to scold him angrily, a horrible and invisible reality fluctuation instantly haunted his whole body. The time of death is approaching. His arms began to turn into a handful of gray smoke and dissipated into the air. The Hydra agent who foresaw the scene had a grinning smile on his face and shouted, long live the Hydra. Soon, under the force of obliterating reality, his figure was completely disintegrated into molecules and disappeared. It should be true. The super-killing girl Mingdi said with a dignified expression. Even though she was separated by an iron door, the enthusiasm in the other party's tone could think of how enthusiastic the other party's face was. This is very much in line with the legendary terrorist organization Hydra. It is also very surprising. I really didn't expect that the Hydra, which was swept into the garbage dump by history, could make a comeback. Looking at this posture, it seems that it has completely penetrated into the world's major institutions. Could it be that the World Council and S.H.I.E.L.D. have been completely secretly controlled by them? Otherwise, they dare to subvert the world in this tone? Don't bother them. Suchin looked on deaf ears. He is not afraid of biting too many lice. Suchin simply looks down on a terrorist organization that has been hiding in history for decades and dare not rise up. Even if the opponent throws an olive branch, he feels disdainful of it. As for revenge, his abilities are not enough to be afraid of a guy hiding in a stinky waterway. But Suchin's heart is still a little uncomfortable. Another inexplicable situation provokes another terrorist force from nowhere. He really felt that the world was deliberately targeting himself. General Stryker, who is not yet settled, made himself the most wanted criminal in the world, vowed to arrest himself and hand himself over to the official X-Men. Revenge from Mindy inexplicably provoked magical forces and the so-called Guardians of the Earth coming at any time. Now, a terrorist organization that has been dormant for decades is inexplicably led. Suchin only felt that he was caught in the eyes of a storm, like an insect caught in a spider web, struggling hard. No matter what, tomorrow's things are the most important. Just after Suchin and others destroyed the exposed warehouse and secretly returned to their high-rise apartment. That night, Shoching, in an underground base, the Hydra agent who was dispatched to contact has been lost. The life fluctuation disappeared, and it can be judged as death. The other party did not accept our kindness. Baron Straker said coldly. The other party actually rejected us. So it is just like the calculated answer of Zola's algorithm. He is indeed our confidant. Then we don't have to intervene in tomorrow's actions and sit and watch him come to his death. In the darkness, there was a man who replied. The so-called Zola algorithm, through the calculation of the Zola program and big data methods, lists the people who will threaten Hydra's rule of the world in the future. A host in Cairo, North Africa, Rage's Hulk, an unknown surgeon, and the undead buried in the Middle East. American Team Steve. Later, it was the 13-year-old boy who walked out of the small town. This is the list of people who will threaten the existence of Hydra in the future based on Zola's algorithm. As for who is Zola, S.H.I.E.L.D. personnel may not feel unfamiliar, because the Insight project led by him is to detect potentially harmful personnel in society, so as to prevent crime in advance and prevent crime. But no one thought that Anim Zola was a backbone member of Hydra. The so-called Insight project has been completely reduced to the secret operation of the Hydra organization to redominate the world. As for this underground base, almost all Hydra members have the organization of S.H.I.E.L.D. Bureau. There's a joke that can well describe the arrogance of Hydra at this time. S.H.I.E.L.D. is here. 8 of the 10 agents are Hydra. Since the win-win failed, then just sit and watch him violently die tomorrow. I believe his youthful temper will definitely not help coming. The personnel of the Hydra organization just sneered like this, formally waiting for the arrival of tomorrow in a way of sitting on the mountain and watching the tigers fight. And on this night, a certain central township, the X-Men who fled here finally ushered in the dawn of their victory. With the extraordinary speed of Quicksilver, the figure named Amplification was brought over by him from far away. Call. Quicksilver Pietro looked fortunately, and he was relieved. Increase. As the name suggests, it is naturally a mutant that can strengthen the expression of X gene and enhance the ability to use it. Can we start now? Wolverine Logan was immediately excited. His eyes flashed with cold light, and he couldn't wait to go back in time and completely kill the stinky boy. Phantom Cat Katie did not expect Quicksilver to complete the task so quickly, but at this time she shook her head and said, "No, I can't control this ability well. I must wait until tomorrow." Well, tomorrow. Wolverine Logan gritted his teeth, and he is not bad this day. As for the time node of the time and space shuttle, under his concealment, it would naturally not be the day when Su Chun was arrested by General Stryker. In order to vent his anger and avenge his good friend Charles, Logan chose to return to the moment when the other party had not yet awakened. That is the best time for him to start. Kill it. Later, successfully reverse the future. All new history, that is, a new timeline, will replace the tragedies that happened before. And people will completely forget the teenager who walked out of the nuclear explosion, forget the mutant number 1, and simply can't remember the little boy in a town on the West Coast. The dead Professor Charles and the X-Men will also come back to life. Only Logan bears all this alone, remembering clearly what happened in the past. This is the plan to reverse the future. And at this moment, beyond the earth, Asgard, one of the 9 great realms, the King Odin, known as the King of the Gods, suddenly woke up from his bed. I saw the dusk of the gods. A trace of cold sweat slipped on Odin's old cheek. In his sleep, he saw the magnificent fairy palace completely swallowed by the terrifying light. The ancient heroic spirits wailed in the flames, and the figure of a fairy palace warrior turned into a handful of smoke and dissipated into the air. Oh my god, Asgard just vanishes into nothing. Odin laughed bitterly. At this moment, after experiencing a battle with Lao Fei, the king of frost giants, his vitality was severely injured. The twilight of the gods. This is an illusion that has been passed down from ancient epic legends. When that day comes, the gods will be judged, the fairy palace will be reduced to ruins, and everything will be turned into the dust of history. This day has finally arrived. A trace of unwillingness appeared on Odin's complexion. He clenched his fists, but he didn't want to personally witness the tens of millions of years of Asgard vanish. The keen intuition told him that the prologue of the twilight of the gods will begin with Midgard. And Midgard is the atrium of the 9 gods, commonly known as the Earth. Give me an order to let Thor lead a team to Midgard immediately. He didn't know what would happen there. However, if the root cause can be completely pinched out from the signs, it will certainly not spread to Asgard. At this moment, the dying white-haired Odin remembered that his adopted son Loki had been missing for a long time, and the other mission he had dispatched just swallowed in his throat. Although the two brothers turned against each other for a long time, they made a fuss about this, causing Rocky to fall from the Rainbow Bridge and get involved in the whirlpool of the universe. But Odin knew very well that Loki was not dead. After all, that is the god of fraud and mischief. The next day, the dawn of this day finally arrived. The public trial scheduled at 9 o'clock in the morning will be followed by a public trial in a court in the first city to people from all walks of life. At that time, it will be broadcast to the general public and live worldwide. It will take an hour before the trial, but reporters from major media are already standing outside, and vehicles equipped with satellite equipment have parked on the streets. Even internet celebrities can't help but come to rub the heat. The client, Su Chun, was not present. How did he achieve the public trial? It is understood that S.H.I.E.L.D. personnel representing absolute justice will act as prosecutors against General Stryker. I heard that this is a kind signal from S.H.I.E.L.D. to that mutant number 1. It's hard to say. After all, the military also charged the juvenile with death penalty. Until now, Su Chun is also the most wanted criminal in the world. Then let's talk about something else. What do you think is the chance that Su Chun will be there? Over 70%. This is intuition. Under the TV camera, a blonde hostess talked with a security department expert. Even TV viewers are very curious whether the number 1 mutant will come. The other side. Inside the court. At least percent above. This is the result of the arrival of the opponent by MR. Fantastic read. It's 100%. Since learning from the military that a secret base of General Stryker has been wiped out, Reed has been very clear that the opponent will inevitably be killed. It's not obvious anymore. Iron Man Tony didn't expect to work with Reed of the Fantastic Four one day. The top 3 IQs on this planet exist, and just 2 appear. Certainly, more people agree that MR, Fantastic Reed, is the number one IQ on Earth. You can underestimate his abilities, but you must always maintain awe of his IQ. This is the conclusion drawn by the supervillains who were defeated by the Fantastic Four in the past. Now, in order to learn from the last lesson and successfully arrest the upcoming mutant number one, the Fantastic Four have to officially play. Well, let's change the way of guessing. Why don't we just guess how the other party came here? Iron Man Tony apparently hit Reed. In view of the mighty image of Su-chun who climbed the ladder on the ground last time and walked out of the nuclear explosion, Tony knew that this young man would inevitably play another set of flowers this time. Guess it. Of course, the more reason is that Tony vowed to compete with this Reed. Early the next morning, Su-chun finished his breakfast in the apartment so slowly. This is the breakfast Susan cooked for herself. A simple sandwich and a small cooking cake, smeared with peanut butter, although it is easy to make. But Su-chun eats it in his mouth, but it is more delicious. It's delicious, right? Remember to come back. I will make it for you every day from now on. Susan is wearing a pink apron, with a small figure that is very cute. It's a farewell to life and death. Su-chun helplessly rubbed her hair. In order not to cause trouble to her brother, Susan naturally stayed behind by dragging the oil bottle improperly. And the super killer Mindy is also accompanied here, taking care of her and avoiding some accidents. Now I'm out. Su-chun glanced at the clock, and it was almost time for the public trial. It must be safe. Susan stepped forward and hugged him, and said with tears, after the revenge, let's leave here, okay? I don't want you to continue fighting. Su-chun's heartstrings were suddenly touched. Being in such a luxurious high-rise villa, his dreams of childhood seemed to have been accomplished in this way. But when he looked around, he seemed to be the enemy of the world. When is the head? He is not clear. But what he knows is that as long as the enemies are down, then his life can go on peacefully. I promise you. Su-chun smiled. Now that he agreed, he could only pull out all the potential enemies as soon as possible and quell the endless battle. It's 8:59. The public trial has almost begun. Still in a black sweater, Su-chun wore a matching hood and strolled down the street like this. Yorkton is some distance away from the capital city. But, just taking a step forward, Su-chun disappeared in front of his eyes, driven by the ripples of space. The scene of his eyes suddenly changed, and his figure had come to the capital city far away. His fluctuating perception has captured the distant court position, and there are a lot of people who join in the fun, and they are surrounded by at least several layers. There are many mutants among them. They raised their brands and shouted in support of the number one mutant. There were even those that made General Stryker be sentenced to death. In addition, there were also many brands that discriminated against mutants. The crowd is like a tide, and the voice is full of people. When Su-chun was only about to step across the distance again, his gaze caught a nearby gymnasium. At this moment, he understood. Isn't there yet? The court has already started. When will the guy wait until he comes? In the court building tens of meters high, the superheroes who had been waiting for it were a little anxious. They even wondered if that guy would not come. MR, Fantastic Reed is very calm, just debugging the equipment over and over again to confirm that there are no errors. Godstick, this thing is really useful? The Thunderbolt in the Fantastic Four couldn't help asking. As a researcher of ultra-forward-looking science, MR, Fantastic has been negotiating in negative space, parallel universes, particle observation, and other fields. So many close people directly call it the magic stick. Reed, who just finished the parallel universe observation experiment hastily, said confidently, "Don't worry, I've understood the opponent's ability, so I am absolutely sure to beat him." And this time, all the superheroes present, including the Fantastic Four, and even the prototype personnel of the Avengers in the future, appeared here. Everyone looked a little anxious. In fact, some of them here have participated in the first battle with the number one mutant, even if they didn't personally experience it. Just listening to Dr. Banner's description felt a little frightened. An indestructible physique, the weird ability to use external energy wantonly, the speed of self-healing is almost immortal and immortal, possess some kind of terrifying inside ability, able to capture the movement trajectory of those with spatial ability at a glance. At last, and once angered, it will disrupt reality and achieve some kind of terrifying power to interfere and tamper with the real world. These are all listed by Iron Man Tony and Dr. Banner. However, Tony still has a conclusion that is difficult to determine. That is, the number one mutant seems to be able to transform and evolve through external stimuli. He also specifically informed MR, Fantastic Reed of this point. For this reason, Tony still couldn't forget the other side's understanding and thoroughly considered the lack of flatness of the footpath. Don't worry, a hit will definitely hit, and it won't give the opponent room to resist. Ding! At this moment, a siren resounded on every superhero's watch. He came. The mutant number one is here. Please be careful. This moment, even Tony, who was arrogant, had a dignified face and put on the latest marked suit. At this moment, also located in the headquarters of SHIELD Bureau in the First City, the Tri-Wing building has detected a large number of majestic energy fluctuations in the local area through satellite equipment in low Earth orbit. He came. The technicians are anxious. Director Nick Fury looked anxious and hurriedly pulled the alarm device to convey the reminder to the frontline personnel. Not good. Another place in New Jersey also experienced very strange energy fluctuations. The reason is unknown. It is even more terrifying than the fluctuations in the capital city. What is that again? A sense of panic appeared under Nick Fury's face. New Jersey belongs to the Western Desert, and the capital city on the East Coast is almost a world away, and it is unlikely that it was the work of the number one mutant. So who caused such a huge fluctuation? This kind of unexpected situation really makes people a little more anxious. Send an aerospace aircraft carrier to track down. And now the primary purpose is to deal with the number one mutant that appeared in the First City. Quickly mobilize local monitoring equipment. I need live images. Under the order of the director of SHIELD Bureau. Soon, there are scenes on the scene presented in the air in front of them in the form of holographic projection. Oh my god, this is... Even the experienced Nick Fury became a little dazed at this moment. I saw in midair, the very famous super large stadium in Shoching was uprooted by a terrifying force. Except for the green football field lawn left in place, the entire ring-shaped platform building was suspended in the air like this. Yin power fluctuated slowly forward. That is a gymnasium that is big enough to seat 80,000 people, but he has made it into the sky. This scene is really spectacular. In this way, black shadows shrouded from the sky. At this moment, all the citizens of Capital City could see the huge buildings floating in the sky. It's him. The number one mutant is here. The name of the person, the shadow of the tree. The number one mutant, who had been wantonly in this place not long ago, was killed again, which immediately caused a lot of panic. Last time, he walked out of a nuclear explosion. This time, he transported a gymnasium and smashed it from the ground. Boom. The huge building smashed onto the ground with a terrifying aura, and the vast smoke and dust suddenly lifted up. At this moment, the entire ring-shaped building with tens of meters of high platform completely encloses the court building. For a time, it was like a prison, completely surrounding the court building personnel from the outside. Those protesting and noisy personnel were completely isolated by this ring-shaped building that was carried from a distance. Boom. It's like a glimpse of the ring-shaped Great Wall. The entire stadium seat building that was transported from far away is like a ring, standing on this piece of land in the First City. This is a besieged city, which completely surrounded the court building in it. Oh my god, what is this? At the moment when the entire circular building fell to the ground, a violent wave of airflow knocked all the onlookers to the ground. And when they stood up, they would also find that the vision in their eyes was completely blocked by this structure belonging to the gymnasium. I go. The stadium 10 miles away was moved by the top mutant. This is too scary. Everyone is stupid. Even the audience in front of the TV was completely frightened by the sudden arrival of a building. This is no ordinary small building. It was a huge stadium that could hold 80,000 people. Except for the long ground was left in place, the entire surrounding platform building was moved from the air, and it was smashed down here. Not long ago, everyone heard that the #1 mutant had emerged from the nuclear explosion. Now he was able to witness the extremely terrifying motivation of the other party in real time. This is over. The entire army is inaccessible. The large buildings lying here not only obstructed everyone's sight, but even the shield rapid reaction forces on standby from outside were unable to break in immediately. But there is a more shocking fact that was not discovered in time. Is that his figure? Look, in the sky. Following the direction of a figure's fingers, everyone's eyes all looked at a figure floating in the air that came from the air in such a hurry. As always, the combination of black sweater and slacks, coupled with that sharp and handsome face, is enough to star in a school idol drama. It's just that this 13-year-old boy came from the air with terrible hatred and suffocating pressure. For a time, feeling the terrifying strength of the other party, everyone's noise stopped inexplicably, and their breathing inevitably accelerated, as if the airflow around them inevitably stopped. Noisy, clamor, or carnival, or protest, all completely quiet under the terrifying force of the other party. Unknowingly, Su Chen's complexion was already not angry and mighty, an aura belonging to a superior person, and the coercive killing intent above all living beings made people involuntarily lower in their hearts. In this way, his figure slowly landed from the air on the ground surrounded by the ring seat. Mutant #1. This moment, rows of roars suppressing the sense of anger were just emitted from the court building. The thunderbolt and the Fantastic Four, braving the fireworks, soared into the air first, and on the ground, there were many superhero figures, such as the Stone Man, the Invisible Woman, Immortal, Fantastic Reed, War Machine, Falcon, Hawkeye, even the old acquaintances Iron Man, Tony, Hulk, and so on. The trial here is to wash away your grievances. Do you really want to go the wrong way again? Someone said angrily. That is, General Stryker's crimes are definitely worth the death penalty. Trust us. Everything can be lost. Let go of the hatred in your heart. Child, you are young. You can even become a hero. As long as you let go of your resentment, you can. It was also echoed. What is this? Su Chen's indifferent and ruthless mood has never fluctuated. To be honest, he even wants to laugh at this time. At least not long ago, the ignorant self and younger sister were hunted down by General Stryker and arrested for a while. Soon, he was unfortunately arrested, put his hands in shackles, and imprisoned him, and was arbitrarily transferred to another base like a personal commodity. Later, under the threat of anatomy, he finally began to awaken, and for the first time came out of a terrifying nuclear explosion. But the unfortunate days are not over. Encountered another General Ross who continued to chase and kill, but after the solution was resolved, he was declared to be a global wanted criminal and existed as an extreme mutant. What a ridiculous fact this is. He was just resisting the other party's arrest. What's wrong with this? Why is it he who is hurt after all? Why is the other party so able to ignore all the facts, slander himself so recklessly, and graft all unnecessary charges on him? Why is the other party so daring to stand on the moral high ground of justice and awe-inspiring blame for himself? Obviously, it was not me who was wrong, but the world that was wrong. But now, even these people in front of me are constantly admonishing themselves to let go of the hatred in their hearts. Are they playing with themselves? When the evil does not fall on the body, everyone can act as a good person in a stately manner. Su Chen was deeply impressed at this moment. He sneered. Open trial? Repentance? Admit wrong? Are you kidding me? As of yesterday, that damn base was still in operation. Su Chen's eyes flickered with cold light, and his right hand stretched forward and suddenly tore to the void on his side. Under the action of a surging thought force, the court building in front of it was forcibly torn from the exterior of the building by an invisible giant hand. The other hand pulled the void again, and the ceiling dome of the entire building was thrown away by Su Chen casually. This, under the surprise of everyone, the entire magnificent court building became an open-air building, and the frightened people in it were completely reduced to a group, including judges, lawyers, and representatives of S.H.I.E.L.D. who initiated the prosecution. Among them, a middle-aged man in a black suit caught Su Chen's eyes. General Stryker. At this moment, under the gaze of the audience, and even the cameras inside the court, the audience in front of the TV sets could see the figure of General Stryker flying out under the guidance of an invisible position. A gleam of cold light flashed in Su Chen's eyes. This was a plan he had planned for a long time, and he was completely executed on the stage cast for him all over the world. But next second, the anger in his mind just emerged so irresistibly. How courageous! You are still cheating on me at the last minute. The figure that had flown in front of him was not a Stryker at all. This is an X-weapon with transformation ability. What he changed was the appearance of General Stryker. Had it not been for Su Chen's awakening of the spiritual level, I am afraid they would have deceived him. Very good. It seems you don't want to live anymore. Until the last moment, these people were still thinking about how to deceive themselves. Until now, these people are still thinking about how to deceive themselves. Ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. As if he also realized that his identity had been inexplicably seen through, the figure caught by the invisible giant hand suddenly began to struggle. What? A terrifying psychic wave invaded in this way. Under the intense pain, he really couldn't bear the post-transformation appearance. The skin all over his body began to change and return to its original appearance. However, when this captured figure was struggling in the air, it was actually leaning in front of Su Chen desperately, seeming to make a suicidal attack before dying. Su Chen frowned. Although he didn't read his mind too much at this moment, he suddenly realized what was wrong from the other party's memory. The opponent's body was actually tied to an unknown device. That is something specially used to frame oneself. It's now, Thunderbolt reminded. And the invisible woman also used her ability to move her position, pushing and shoving this X-weapon figure from afar and constantly approaching Su Chen's face. At this moment, there was also a hint of danger in Su Chen's battle intuition. Start. At this critical moment, Immortal, Fantastic Reed also directly pressed the hesitation in his heart and directly pressed the button in his hand. In an instant, the figure caught by Su Chen suddenly emitted strong heat, and the energy fluctuations around it were instantly annihilated. But in an instant, his entire figure suddenly collapsed, and the flesh and blood of his entire person was swallowed in the blink of an eye, as if a terrifying black hole had formed in his body. All the surrounding matter began to be swallowed up by this suddenly formed black hole. Under this terrible attraction, even the light began to be distorted. This is an equipment tool named Negative Space Collapse that Immortal, Fantastic Reed personally cast. If the enemy really has the ability to become stronger and stronger, constantly evolving, even Hulk, who is constantly getting stronger by anger, can't compete with it. So if you want to deal with such a terrifying existence, you can't hold the psychology of fighting for a long time, and you must complete the victory in a moment. This is the only way to avoid making the opponent stronger, so as to evolve a bunch of characteristics aimed at these people, and there is no chance of winning at all. Since you can't win, and the opponent has a terrifying, indestructible physique, then you can only expel the opponent completely. This is the equipment that Immortal, Fantastic Reed specially built for Su Chen after he learned about the characteristics of Su Chen. Expelled it from the earth. Even, in order to avoid the opponent's space ability, the collapsed black hole that was suddenly formed will involve it in the boundless cosmic storm, causing the opponent to find no way to go home. This moment, in order to avoid being affected, all the figures began to recede. Please let me in. The invisible woman cried. She evoked the strength of the whole body, and fully urged her own stance ability, just as she stretched out an invisible arm, and began to continuously push the distant Su Chen to the black hole. Yes. Su Chen's face was serious at this time. Just less than a meter away, a terrifying collapsed black hole was spinning like a whirlpool, constantly sweeping the surrounding things. Although the area affected is not very large, the swallowing force that flows from it directly plunges the surrounding area into a vacuum zone, and even the light cannot directly come in, completely turning into a black area. Su Chen gritted his teeth, relying on the full support of the power of thought. His figure seemed to be rooted in the earth. He just didn't move forward. But at this moment, the ground under his feet began to collapse, turning into a black hole with mud rolling forward. Su Chen's complexion remained unchanged. but less than half a second. Behind him came a wave of invisible force pushing him forward. Suchin knew that someone was using some kind of mental power to do it. He tried to use teleport. However, the ripples in the space that were set off were instantly swept into the collapsed black hole. Suchin's complexion is still calm, because at this time the body has already begun to generate resistance. Body strength plus 200. Spatial characteristics plus 200. Awakening. Space anchor. The constructed system quickly revealed the infinite evolutionary genetic information. This moment, his body was really like an anchor, embedded fiercely in the surrounding space. With this violent sweeping force, Suchin's shaking figure became more and more stable. Hurry up. The invisible woman was crying, because at this time, she felt more and more that she was pushing an unshakable giant mountain through the fluctuation of her position. And at this time, many people from all walks of life in the court who are eligible to participate in the trial have already stood up. They all released the motivation of thinking in their minds, or the fluctuations in their positions, and they kept pushing distant figures into the collapse. Inside the black hole, body strength plus 100, mind resistance plus. Feel the message from genetic evolution. Feeling the invisible hands that keep pouring behind. I feel that the people from all walks of life participating in the trial in the court are basically fake. They are the mind power superpowers gathered from everywhere, or they are the X weapons that specifically express the mind power X gene. All this is deceptive. Even Stryker is a disguised person. The so-called public trial is nothing but a false cover, a very shameless scam. They did not confess their sins at all. When the plan was completely unfolded, he even hypocritically allowed himself to surrender and admit his mistakes. This is really funny. Suchin's indifferent face was getting deeper and deeper. He came this time to execute Stryker publicly. He had never expected the so-called public trial to have any money effect. Now that they set up such a stage to play with themselves, it is an eye-opener for Suchin. These guys are hopeless. Soon, the small black hole that collapsed in front of him did not last for many seconds. The distorted light around him instantly returned to light, and the violent sweeping intensity also faded. After a few seconds, the peace in front of me was restored. But this that, looking at the place where there was an extremely terrifying giant pit, everyone could feel how terrible the power of the temporary collapse was. What shocked the people present was that the figure floating in the sky far away looked at them with such calm eyes. Next second, a terrible imprisoning force suddenly lifted their figures, as if they were hanging, and lifted their bodies from the ground. Since you don't want to live anymore, I will satisfy you. The group of people with the ability of mind just now, including the invisible woman, were all tied around their necks by a terrifying imprisonment. What? Their figures hung up in the sky, like a drowning person, their limbs constantly struggling in the air. Click. Accompanied by the sound of broken bones, the necks of the figures were all twisted. No one thought that the mutant number one would be unscathed and resist the terrible attraction formed by the collapsing black hole. The action of expelling the earth was so resisted by the opponent. Feeling the continuous fluctuations of thought power that swept through, and seeing a figure about to be hanged to death, everyone did not neglect at all, and just killed the figure of Suchin. Damn bastard. Thunderbolt immediately furious, and flames burst all over his body, shooting directly from the air to Suchin on the ground like a rocket. At the same time, the Stone Man, who is also the Fantastic Four, also ran directly. Boom. Every time the footsteps fall to the ground, the running movement sounds like an earthquake. And Fantastic Reed's complexion changed drastically, and the whole person's body stretched like rubber in an instant, wrapped in the air of his wife's body, trying to save her figure. The Fantastic Four have been famous for a long time, but they are too old. The children of Fantastic Reed alone are 6 or 7 years old. He is a very old superhero. During a space mission more than 10 years ago, they were accidentally exposed to radiation fluctuations from cosmic rays, so that each of them awakened with brand new abilities. Thunderbolt Fire can control the flames, is immune to flames, and can even soar in the sky with the flames all over the body. Whoosh! In less than a second, his figure swooped down and rushed towards Suchin on the ground. That's it, Suchin said coldly. He slapped it in the air. Boom. It was like a giant hand slapped out of the void, and the thunderbolt that floated in the air was like a home run, and suddenly hit and flew out like a ball of fire. Boom. The thunderbolt was completely stunned and didn't know what had happened. The whole person just smashed the ring-shaped building in the distance and flew to the capital city area completely. Driven by the huge remaining prestige, it also smashed several buildings. At the same time, the Stone Man had already been killed. His lumpy muscles are like granite, with terrifying anti-strike ability, as well as very majestic and terrifying power. But compared with Suchin, whose body has been tempered for thousands of years, it is still a little too far behind. Roll. It was another slap fan out. There was still no substantial touch, but the invisible fluctuation that was set off was like an air cannonball, and it rammed the Stone Man head on. Boom. At this moment, his figure flew out like a cannonball and directly slammed into the court behind. With this momentum alone, he smashed away, knowing how many people's bodies were crushed. What? At this moment, Suchin's neck was completely broken by Suchin's X-weapon silhouettes of the Mind Force system, and even the mind power abilities from everywhere. Puff. The figures that were hung in the air finally lost their lives at this moment, falling from the sky to the ground one after another. Do not. At this time, Fantastic Reed screamed in pain, because his wife, the invisible woman, was exhausted and died at this moment. As the most vigorous people just now, under the indiscriminate thought power fluctuations, they all ended up just like everyone else. They ended up completely dead. No, I can't accept it. Reed just felt the whole person's heart tight. The death of his relatives also made his tears flow out like an open gate. I'm going to kill you. At this time, his red eyes stared at Suchin in the distance. So you feel the pain now. Suchin's eyes also looked at him, and his frosty face did not feel a trace of guilt due to the parting scene in front of him. His heart has long since become numb. He has embraced the darkness completely blackened. Only then would he not be the little boy who led his sister everywhere. Only in this way would he not be the helpless mouse that was almost dissected. And only in this way, he will not think of himself escaping from the laboratory, but being wrongfully labeled as a global wanted criminal. Since they treat themselves like this, don't blame yourself for embracing them with pain. Even now, your hypocritical words and forged public trials are deeply disgusting to me. Suchin took another casual shot. Hulk, the old opponent who was suddenly killed in front of him, was unable to hold it for even around this time, and just slammed out under the slap of a vast mind power. What? Fantastic Reed killed him. His rubber-like physique continued to extend, flying like a spring. So you are the planner of this plan. Suchin has already seen his inner thoughts. Same. His soul also felt the other party's jade and stone burned, holding his resolute will to die together. Die together. Fantastic Reed's body was wrapped around Suchin's body like a blanket. With his almost physical immunity, he approached the enemy in front of him, preparing to detonate another collapsing device placed in front of him. Suchin's cold eyes didn't have any mood swings. However, at this time, there was a sneerful smile looking at the figures that were constantly rushing forward. Die. He allowed the opponent to approach him and detonated the collapsed device he carefully developed. In an instant, the space collapsed in an instant, and a terrifying black hole emerged spontaneously. The violent swallowing power swept in once again, and the surrounding light disappeared slightly. As the instigator, Reed, who was holding the jade and burning with his jade, already had a huge blood hole on his waist. He is laughing wildly. This time the distance is too close. Reed seemed to have foreseen the scene where the opponent would die together with him. Can be less than half a second. Suchin stretched out his hands, without a trace of dread, just like that. With both hands, he squeezed the collapsed black hole fiercely. This, Fantastic Reed was dumbfounded. It was like hell. The whole person's expression was completely dull. He never thought that a person would completely pinch a small collapsed black hole with his hands. Suddenly, he recalled the characteristic that the opponent can evolve under external stimuli. Don't treat the monster in front of you in the same way. Because it didn't work at all. Reed is clever eye, is crowned as the world's first IQ. It wasn't until this moment that he had been so angry that he realized that sometimes his fist and strength were the most important guarantee. MR, Fantastic Reed was completely desperate. The hope of revenge for his wife was so ruthlessly pinched by the boy in front of him. How old is he? It seems that he is not much older than his son. My son Franklin, can he cope with him? He does not know. MR, Fantastic Reed only knew that the sight of his eyes had gradually blurred, and his consciousness had gradually dimmed, because at this moment, there was a terrifying blood hole on his waist. Who would have thought that his attack of burning jade and stone turned out to be suicide? Goodbye, Suchin said coldly. Under one idea. The fluctuations in the power of thought around him suddenly caused ripples like ink wash, and after that, the price was plasticized into sharp spikes, like 10,000 arrows, which penetrated the opponent's body like this. MR, Fantastic Reed was so mercilessly made up for the last shot. For the man who single-handedly planned the public trial of the scene before him, and even tried to expel himself from the earth with a collapsing black hole, Suchun could not hold back his murderous intent at all. Why did these people deceive themselves until the end? On the surface, he has a benevolent face, and he wants to be fair to himself and wash away his grievances. But secretly, one by one can't wait to put themselves to death. Even the scene of the global live broadcast of the public trial, after tearing the surface disguise, turned out to be an assassination stage that is extremely targeted at oneself. Do they really think they are an ignorant and poor little boy? Fortunately, from the beginning to the end, I didn't expect them at all. At this time, there was no wind in his figure, and his black hair was constantly fluttering. Suchun spread his hands slightly, and his whole body's feet were separated from the ground, slowly rising into the air. My God, what happened? It's a fight, it's a fight. Damn superheroes and S.H.I.E.L.D. This is a scam. They are still deceiving the #1 mutant. The especially undamaged camera inside the court has already broadcast everything in real time. The audience in front of the TV talked a lot. They also didn't expect that the #1 mutant was a seen person, and when he arrived, he directly transported a gymnasium and turned it into a siege, trapping his opponent. It was also a superb, intangible thought power giant hand, tearing apart the walls and ceiling of the court building like thin paper. But a more terrifying scene still appeared. No one thought that behind this public trial was an arrest that had already been planned. Do not. It is expelled from the earth. Everyone was shocked when they watched the audiences in the courts tearing off their disguise and pushing their enemies into the black hole with their thoughts. I don't know if I should say it is despicable or shameless. Suchin's indifferent face was so condescending to overlook them. He spread his hands, and the fluctuations in the power of thought that swept out of his body swayed wantonly, as if waves of water rippled in the air. Do not. Now, on behalf of the official War Machine and Falcon both looked horrified, and they had vaguely realized what the other party was going to do. Whoosh. Their outer armor is constantly flying micro-missiles, like a desperate guy who jumped over a wall in a hurry, and they are doing their best to continuously release artillery into the air. But, under the pressure of this terror that has caused substantial fluctuations, their missiles have drawn an embarrassing parabola in the air, and they crash straight to the ground, even causing many casualties of their own personnel. You gave me pain once, but now it is for you to feel pain and despair. Embrace the pain. Suchun spread his hands and pronounced their deaths like a god of death. Under his will, the wave of thought power condensed in the air turned into a terrifying meteorite, and it suddenly fell from high in the sky to the ground. This is the stage they set up for themselves. But the sight of a besieged city in front of me, isn't it the burial ground I built for them? Do not. The desperate War Machine and Falcon tried to fly out of the siege, but the majestic forces pouring in instantly pushed their figures back to the ground. Not only that, when someone tried to escape from the broken gap of the siege, the air pressure condensed around made it difficult for them to move their feet. It was difficult for the whole person to make multiple steps. Even as they moved more and more, they felt the pressure from behind. Strength. Puff. Many superheroes such as Falcon, War Machine, and even the surviving Hawkeye, as well as a group of figures in the court, fell to the ground with a thud under the pressure of an increasingly shocking aura. Hulk, who had been stunned before, knelt on one knee and roared at the figure in the air. But at this moment, in his eyes, a horrifying thought-powered cannonball condensed by Suchin slowly fell like a meteorite. Feel the pain. Embrace the pain. Do not. It was like Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. A terrifying yin-powered cannonball engulfed the mighty power and momentum and smashed down toward the ground fiercely. Boom. The smashed cannonballs immediately crushed all these figures who had nowhere to hide to the ground, and the dilapidated court building that was the first to bear the brunt evaporated and shattered in an instant. Boom. The earth quaked, the invisible shock wave radiated out, and the surrounding wall that trapped them was completely collapsed at this moment. And the ground that fell down also formed a super large crater at that moment, like a meteorite from outside the sky. The boundless smoke rose from there. The noise, crying, and other noisy sounds finally calmed down at this moment. An hour ago, these people are still feeling nervous and excited about the plan to expel the planet. For the #1 mutant with terrifying and extraordinary healing abilities, and even constantly evolving rapidly under external stimuli, it is indeed the best strategy to drive them out of the earth and prevent them from returning. Want to say guilt? Maybe there are some superheroes. After all, the people who caused such a bad situation came from General Stryker. The bad environment that has been habitually forcing mutants for a long time has led to the birth of such a monster. Everyone feels somewhat resentful. Especially this plan requires Stryker himself as a bait, but after the opponent sneered and refused, the Fantastic Four could only pick out a deformable X-weapon as the bait. Anyway, how much pain and oppression has he suffered? In the end, he completely settled the charges. After all, no one possessed and taught that mutant #1 to make a nuclear explosion. No matter what his original intention is, this act has surpassed the history set by Magneto. He is wicked, unforgivable. The crimes on his back can no longer be cleared. After feeling his darkened state of mind, under the leadership of S.H.I.E.L.D., he completely accepted MR, Fantastic Reed's plan to expel the planet. As for the goodwill of the public hearing, it cannot be said to be completely false. If the other party can go to court to admit his mistake, even after everyone's first round of exhortation, in the perspective of the global live broadcast, completely confessed their mistakes, fell to the ground and accepted the shackles, this plan may not start. Then, there's no after that. Because the plan completely failed, they still underestimated how terrifying the enemy they faced. These planners, along with all the people in the court, are almost dead. The stage built by the actors desperately turned into their own burial ground. The endless wind and dust continued to blow up, rushing straight into the sky like wolf smoke. Suchun, who was above the air, landed so slowly from the air, and the lingering waves around his body made it impossible for the wind and sand to touch his body at all. He just descended from the sky. Whoosh. He waved his arm, and a surging wave swept away the area covered with wind and dust in front of him. In the boundless pit, the green-skinned Hulk was embedded in most of the mud. At this time, his blood-stained figure slowly healed. This is not the first time Suchun has met this monster. He naturally knew that the strength of the opponent's body was not as strong as normal. Thanks to this Hulk's blessing, Suchun's physical strengthening has also increased a lot. But now, this Hulk, who had opened his eyes, showed panic. Yes, he was scared. This Hulk, who used the city as an amusement city in the past and followed the army around the world for so many years, was so afraid of the boy in front of him. Why don't you shout? Suchin's mind still rests on the stalwart image of the opponent's arms tapping his heart, constantly roaring loudly. For a while, seeing such a cowardly Hulk was a little uncomfortable. Of course Hulk would be afraid. Don't look at such a monster as it gets more angry and stronger, but once it encounters a predator at the top of the food chain, this Hulk monster is completely honest and fearful. Hulk's personality was replaced by Dr. Banner's own personality at this moment. This is the first time that Bruce Banner started speaking in the form of Hulk, and it was also the first time that he felt such fear of Hulk's personality. He naturally understood what happened. Glancing around, there was nothing, the horrible meteorite-like pits, and there were not many corpses to see. Banner swallowed. He suddenly understood what he was going to do. As the world's top physicist and in existence with enough IQ to rank among the top 8 in the world, Dr. Banner turned into Hulk and held the last collapsing black hole device in his hands. I did a lot of wrong things, but in the last of my life, I just wanted to be a hero. he said very firmly. No choice. The teammates around him were no longer there, and the Avengers that had just been formed killed most of the members. Dr. Banner roared and jumped in place, manipulating Hulk's body to rush towards the figure in front of him for the first time. At the last moment of his life, he wanted to regain the dignity of Hulk's personality. Even if it is dead, I have to stand and die. He jumped up and raised his right hand high. In an instant, a terrifying fluctuation was released, and another collapsed black hole appeared. The terrifying suction took the lead in swallowing Hulk's right palm completely. Hero, Suchin only felt that he heard extremely harsh words. This is the third time the enemy has used this high-tech device against him. This is really boring for him. Ever since, with just one light kick, he kicked Hulk into the ground. The poor guy couldn't even reach him, so he was the first to be swallowed up under the terrifying collapsed black hole. The whole figure just disappeared without a trace. Obviously, he was still a supervillain before. He was chased and fled for a few years, but in the end he was transformed into a superhero by S.H.I.E.L.D. This is Suchin's most unacceptable answer. They are not even willing to treat themselves with a sincere heart, but are only willing to build such a fictitious stage to welcome themselves. This is really ironic. Hulk furiously wanted to die with Suchin in his arms, but just bound himself in a cocoon, and the figure that was kicked to the ground was completely swallowed by the collapsed black hole created. The violent sweeping power quickly disappeared without a trace. When the distorted light returned to normal, there was already an even more terrifying pit in front of him. As for Suchin's figure, it was so safe and sound, even unmoved. This was the third time he had encountered this kind of attack, and he didn't even bother to respond. Under the howling wind, Suchin's clear, black and white eyes swept around, and War Machine and Falcon, who had fought so hard just now, were left with only a piece of burning machinery. As for the stone human figures known as Super Vitality, they are all buried in the sand. Half of the granite-like body is soaked in blood, unconscious, and life shows a faint sign. Besides, there is another surviving object, and that is Iron Man Tony. Relying on a heavier set of Mark armor to resist and one-handed 12 shield mode, it also ended up sinking into the mud like a blood man. Such a catastrophe almost wiped out the superheroes and S.H.I.E.L.D. members assembled here. And this time, the personnel outside the siege were almost completely overturned by the aftermath of the bombardment. Many approaching personnel were even buried under the wreckage of the collapsed building. In severe cases, they were even swept up in the air by the vast aftermath, flying dozens of meters away. The S.H.I.E.L.D. rapid reaction force that was tragically affected lost more than half of it all at once. When the smoke gradually dissipated, some survivors stood up from the ground in a panic. Oh my god, this. It was only then that people discovered that the ground under their feet had cracked open, and a spiderweb-like pattern stretched endlessly to the horizon. It's almost like falling from a meteorite. Looking at it, everyone realized that there was already a scary pit in the field of vision in front of them, and above the quicksand, only the figure above the air just stood safe and sound. The other party's black sweater was not even stained with dust, and it was as clean as washing, as if the person who had gone through a great battle was not him at all. They are all dead. The expressions of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents guarding outside changed drastically. They also realized that a catastrophe was imminent. The pattern of the world will change. Compared to the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents who are like a bereaved concubine, the mutants who have recovered are suddenly in a carnival. Our king did not fall. Expel them. The mutant shouted. It is as if at this moment, chanting for the birth of a new king of mutants. Solve them. The mutant who recognized the other party's despicable behavior quickly couldn't help but attack the S.H.I.E.L.D. personnel in front of him. Suddenly fight each other. The plan to expel the Earth failed completely. Participants are wiped out. In the headquarters of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the Sankey building, which is also in the first city, all the agents and even the staff were very embarrassed. No one expected such a tragic result. S.H.I.E.L.D. director Nick Fury took several deep breaths before barely able to maintain the trembling facial muscles. What are you doing in a daze? Activate the world's highest level of alert. All temporary bases are ready to be put into use, and the aircraft carrier at the headquarters is also ready to activate. The second set of contact orders is activated. All personnel are ready to clean up the information in their hands and leave directly. Nick Fury gritted his teeth and muttered with disgust. Although the Fantastic Four had formulated a plan on how to expel the opponent from the Earth, in any case, S.H.I.E.L.D. had organized the manpower, and the number one mutant would definitely not let them go. Damn it. Nick Fury's heart screamed, but his mind was full of annoyance. He shouldn't be big. He obviously has the most critical Hulk card. If he was more stable and used the most critical call for help, he wouldn't end up where he is now. But the time now seems to be insufficient. Who would have thought that the other party would do everything in the past few days? Damn it, in my car. Nick Fury had no choice. But, at this time, a reminder from S.H.I.E.L.D. agents followed. Wait, the mutant number one stopped and stopped moving. He seemed to be frowning, thinking, with a hint of confusion. The sudden words changed Nick Fury's expression, as if seeing the dawn of victory and seeing the straw for life-saving. He immediately leaned closer and looked into the holographic screen projected in the air. It was the scene captured by the drone. I saw that the figure of the young man in the pit did not move anymore. He even frowned, as if he was thinking about something. Vaguely, there was a hint of anger. But, even facing the number one mutant who is no longer moving, the entire S.H.I.E.L.D. is helpless. So here comes the problem. What is the other party doing at the moment? Not long ago, in a hidden village in the central area, the remaining X-Men fled here with some students. Now, they were watching the live broadcast of the public trial. Soon, everyone witnessed that Suchin was like a god against the gods, and he was brave enough to resolve many crises, and superheroes were killed in his hands. Looking at the young figure above the air, everyone's mood at the moment is very complicated. On the one hand is pure hatred. The death of Professor Charles alone is a blood feud to each other. On the other hand, it is complicated and difficult to understand. After losing many of the X-Men's elite backbones and the protective umbrella supporting their heads, these people suddenly seem to have walked out of the quiet ivory tower. A series of pursuits made them realize deeply. Is Professor Charles's approach wrong? Is the estrangement between the two races really irreversible? No matter what, everything should be over. Quicksilver and the others all glanced at the wooden house in front of them and saw Wolverine's figure lying on top of a stone platform for some time. With the support of the mutant nicknamed Amplification, the Phantom Cat is finally able to maintain the ability to travel through time. Quickly, the flow of the two times is different. I'm afraid it will end in 10 minutes or 20 minutes. At that time, if the future is successfully changed, then the new timeline will completely cover everything that is happening now. Let all tragedies end. Return the lost Professor Charles and multiple X-Men. And they will also forget a blackened teenager. Certainly, the Iceman who learned of Wolverine's mind, but knows that there will be no more 13-year-old boy named Suchin in the new timeline. Call. Wolverine Logan, who came directly to Wolverine more than a year ago, took a heavy breath. Not everyone can travel through time and space unharmed. Even the brain of Professor Charles may be broken down in the process of shuttle. Logan also relied on his own self-healing factors to end this painful process and successfully returned to the timeline of the past. ASAP. Although he knew that the flow of time in the two worlds was completely different. But in order to avoid the collapse of the timeline again and the Phantom Cat can't maintain it, he must rush to the small town on the west coast as soon as possible. This time, he directly robbed a Mustang sports car and headed towards the destination. With previous experience, Wolverine Logan is naturally familiar with it. But no matter what, the journey still made him come to this East Coast town in the middle of the night. That's it. Wolverine Logan roughly cleared his thoughts and decided how to start. In the night, his sturdy figure is like an arrogant night wolf, with a killing intent and a strong will to revenge, just approaching a single family house not far away. Squeak. The wooden door of the house was opened easily, and Logan's expression became more fierce. At this time, his mind was full of revenge for Charles, and even he didn't know that his face became a little ugly. In the night, he stepped on the cobblestone pavement of the small courtyard. Because of his impatience, he could not even press his footsteps. In this way, his figure accelerated, his breathing became more urgent, and the whole person couldn't wait to walk towards the door on the other side. This time he learned his lesson and never broke in through the window on the other side, because it was the house where the middle-aged lady slept. He walked around to the back of the yard, prepared to use his Edmund's claws to easily cut through the balcony door of the back door. If he hadn't inferred wrong, Su-chun must be lying in the back bedroom. Kid, prepare to die for me. Logan pressed his clenched fist against the balcony door behind him, and with a bang, Edmund alloy claws penetrated the lock of the security door so easily. The whole door was pushed up gently by him. After being reminded, Logan knew that Su-chun, who had not yet awakened, did not have too many accidents. Instead, his sister Susan had shown the subtle ability of molecular mimicry, so he must be careful to take his brother away. Carefully, he held his breath, holding his breath desperately, but this made the murderous intent on his face more hideous and red. Especially the crouching body moved forward gently, and the hair that he managed seemed to have two horns on both sides. So at this moment Logan really looked like a hungry beast carefully approaching his prey. At this moment, Su-chun in the house is still lying on the couch. It's just that his slightly haggard eyes became more and more sober, and soon after accepting the memory in his mind, his childish face became more and more indifferent. He already understood why he appeared here. Dozens of seconds ago, he is also located in a pit in the first city. Full of ambition, he ruthlessly killed a bunch of superheroes who cheated himself. But at that moment, he already felt the boundless killing intent coming from the instinct of the battle, which seemed a bit dangerous compared to any moment. He quickly realized that this did not come from murder in reality. There is a person hiding in the dark trying to realistic timeline. He had reached this point with a keen warning. This was naturally impossible before, but who made the other party have tried it once? In this way, Su-chun completely relaxed his mind and allowed an inexplicable brain wave to sweep away his consciousness, as if pouring into an endless tunnel. For a moment, he realized that his consciousness shuttled in the long river of time and was constantly tracing back to the source, so he came to more than a year ago with his own will. He woke up. Su-chun, who was just 12 years old, was completely occupied by his own will in the next year. He flicked his right hand slightly and suddenly felt a surge of power. Between thoughts, there is a surging motivation for thought. It seems that a strand of will that shuttles through also brings strength. Wow. At this moment, a frightened lady's voice came from the outer corridor. But the mother who rushed to the balcony with a tube of clothes in her hand was suddenly shocked. In the dimly lit corridor, she suddenly found a monster with a hideous face, like a ghost, crouching on the side of the corridor. At this moment, she just forgot to take the blood pressure control pills, so that she felt her head dizzy under the fright, and for a while, the sky turned around, and she fell to the ground so suddenly. I have to say that this is the butterfly effect. Wolverine arrived a little earlier, and it happened to be another coincidence meeting this time. But this time, Su-mu, who was originally ill, did not take medicine. As a result, he was so startled by Logan, who was so terrified and stunned, and completely fainted to the ground. Damn. Wolverine Logan cursed secretly. He ignored the middle-aged lady, but rushed directly to another bedroom a few meters away. The sudden shock must have awakened the child inside. He wants to kill Su-chun completely when the opponent reacts. Boom. Luo, very strong and tall figure, instantly knocked open the door of the bedroom. But before he slammed into the figure in the bedroom further, the whole body was suddenly unable to move, as if plunged into the mud. Soon, his figure was completely unable to move, and was completely lifted from the ground by an invisible imprisoning force. That you turned out to be tricking the ghost. 12-year-old Su-chun sat on the couch. At this moment, he didn't have a face of childishness, and his expression was sullen. The whole person's right hand stretched forward like this, using the power of mind to imprison the opponent. He recognized the person's identity at once. Wolverine Logan. This is the original product of Weapon X, and this information is available in the experimental base. After that, he also read the opponent's head, and immediately noticed the so-called reversal of the future plan. It turned out that these were the remnants of the X-Men who were secretly playing tricks. Damn bastard. Su-chun had realized that his mother was fainted by him. Rage's uncontrollable emotions instantly rose up, and the killing intent could not be suppressed. The figure in front of him was twisted like a twist by him. Susan on the other couch was sleeping soundly, but to avoid being frightened, she was mentally hypnotized by Su-chun, so there was no movement. However, the distorted figure in front of him suddenly became blurred. It really disappears quickly like a ghost. It turned out that the phantom cat outside felt the Wolverine on the stone platform constantly trembling, and when foaming at the mouth, it cut off the energy that maintains the shuttle between time and space. The entire timeline collapsed again. Good. No longer generates a new future. Asshole. Su-chun has felt that his will be forced to grasp the long river of time, but at this time, he gritted his teeth and walked out of the room with the boundless force of restraint, just to look at his mother for the last time. He hadn't seen his mother for a long time, and even seeing it in this collapsed timeline made him feel a little satisfied. After just such a glance, a ray of his will rushed to the long river of time and returned to the future. The X-Men's plan to reverse the future just failed again. But as last time, like a broken string set off a burst of sound, the timeline of collapse still set off some real aftermath, causing some unspeakable spiritual impact. Reality, after all, changed a little bit. That's just a little bit. It's so weak, it can even be said to be insignificant, but it is Su-chun who suddenly wakes up to rage. That moment, the Earth's sky suddenly dimmed, and the sun's rays were so ruthlessly obscured. The timeline constructed by the Phantom Cat suddenly collapsed, and all mistakes will be corrected. Su-chun's consciousness was naturally forced to flock to the long river of time, and it came back to 1 year later and came to himself. This moment, it was a figure standing motionless in the pit. So he opened his eyes, and the inside of his eyes was bright. The muddy meaning in his mind even disappeared in the blink of an eye. Wolverine, X-Men. Su-chun's head suddenly jumped out of two keywords. He naturally remembered that the other party brewed all this, trying to reverse the future and obliterate himself. But all of this was retained by him. Certainly, his keenness for the fluctuations of reality still made himself aware of the slightest change. After all, the slight fluctuations that interfere with reality can't deceive him. With previous experience, Su-chun started directly from the level of the mind system, trying to find out a weak fragment that suddenly appeared. The last time I embed a small memory. It's the so-called ghost of childhood. But now, there is no extra memory, but a small memory suddenly replaced. The time of mother's death was unexpectedly advanced by 1 day. Su-chun only felt his head cracked. The timeline was not closed last time, but the aftermath of the string light cracking still 300 rippled out on the scene, causing some spiritual impact on the mother of the person involved. From this, there are so-called ghost legends. This time, the timeline was destroyed by Su-chun, and the aftermath of the collapse also rippled out like water ripples, which had a disturbing effect on reality, especially for the frightened mother. This slightly aggravated the palpitations. Su-chun's complexion got worse. Because of such a little butterfly effect intervention, the mother's death time was so advanced by 1 day. Yes, 1 day in advance. That insignificant fluctuation in reality is this damn day. If I hadn't been able to keenly capture the fluctuations of reality, I am afraid I would subconsciously ignore the past. Headache. It's really a headache. Suddenly, Su-chun only felt his head resemble a terrifying volcano that was depressed for a long time and waited to erupt. I think of it because of the interference caused by time and space shuttle. 1 day after thinking of his seriously ill mother's death, Su-chun's inner pain far exceeded the tragedy in the laboratory that day. Father left early. The mother held the sickness and raised them all by one's hard work. But it is because these people are endlessly hunting down. There is no hint of letting go. Endless. It's like the world is malicious to itself. It's okay to say that Su-chun is naturally fearless, but what makes him most unacceptable is that the battle this time extends to the past timeline and even affects his mother. Endless grief emerged in Su-chun's mind. He was even more unwilling to affect his mother than himself. That is a sin that is even more unbearable than dissecting yourself. This moment, Suchin only felt the anger in his head erupting like a volcano. Why? Why do you want to stay in the shadows? Why can't you people die? She has passed away. Don't bother her. Thinking of this, the out-of-control emotions exploded. Suchin's pupils had a cold, bloody luster. At this moment, his black hair and long hair suddenly hung upside down, an unknown wave lingering around him. In order to vent the anger in his heart, under the guidance of the out-of-control raging emotions, the terrifying reality interference wave has already rippled out. It was like a drop of ink suddenly dripping into a glass of white water, and the white water in the glass was instantly impregnated with black. At this time, under the rippling waves of reality, the blue sky suddenly dimmed. It's like a giant starry beast that is bigger than a planet passing by in outer space. The sun's rays are completely obscured by his spread wings, and most of the earth is suddenly plunged into darkness. But in an instant, as it left, the disappearing light returned again. But from this moment, the real fluctuations that permeated the entire earth have already begun to interfere. Why can't you people die? Suchin's thoughts began to get a response. Even running out of control, he didn't know what this moment meant. In the Marvel incident Royal Family Comics, Wanda the Scarlet Witch, who is also good at changing reality, uttered a desperate cry when her mood was completely out of control. No more mutants. With just such a short sentence, the mutants on the entire earth were almost extinct, leaving only about 200, and the ability of them was even weakened. This is the absolute sound of mutants. And now, the consequences of Suchin's runaway are still triumphant. Although his words meant something. But, because the power is too great, and the definition of the direction is not clear, so this wave of fluctuations spread to the entire earth. This moment, the first to bear the brunt was naturally Wolverine Logan. It didn't take long for him to wake up in the villages and towns in the central area, and suddenly, he realized something wrong with him. Wait, something is wrong. Logan's expression changed. He suddenly realized that his hands had suddenly collapsed, and the poor self-healing factor didn't even play a role. Do not. Logan had realized who did it, and an indifferent and arrogant teenager's face appeared in his mind. I wanted to say something more, but the rapidly disintegrating body suddenly collapsed into a piece of powder. What? There was a scream of exclamation all around. The Phantom Cat, Zhangji, and others quickly disintegrated at the same time. They panicked and didn't know what was going on, so they turned into a piece of powder as they looked at each other. This is not the strangest thing. At the same moment, weird dying events occurred all over the world. But this did not attract too many people's attention, because a very weird scene just came. The traces of countless people's existence, the names left on the paper, and even the memories of the disappeared people on everyone's head began to be gradually lost. It is as if an invisible hand is tampering with the reality of the world. It's like a supervillain Eradicator who just died for no reason, but all his files, ID cards, and even the influence of everyone on him, as well as the damage he caused, were all lost. It's as if there was no trace of an Eradicator in this world. The big event triggered by Suchun is not only a modification of reality, it even involves the indescribable law of cause and effect, and completely obliterates all the proofs that a person has ever existed. No one will remember who you are. The fluctuations of the Earth's reality have thus ushered in a revision. It is as if God is tampering with reality, and the selected personnel are undergoing the complete obliteration of the traces of existence. It is like a story told in a book. A character is deleted from beginning to end, so that there is no trace of his existence in the whole world. The image in people's memory. There are even various information about him recorded in the books. All were completely tampered with by an invisible wave of reality, completely obliterated on the timeline of this world. The world classics with huge archives and rich stories were suddenly torn off the pages. Certainly, also because this is Suchin's sudden loss of control and runaway. Rage's emotions that are stronger than the first awakening are a trace of inability to achieve completeness obliteration. The reality is not completely tampered with, and the fluctuation of the timeline is not completely corrected. All appeared a strange sight. Some people can observe changes in reality. Rogan and Phantom Cat disappeared. You were still making a fuss about Logan's disappearance just now? Why don't you remember it all of a sudden? Inside a certain stone hut in the central area, the Iceman said in anger. He had just witnessed Wolverine Logan disappear out of thin air, like a snowman in the scorching sun. Are you crazy? Whether it's Wolverine or Logan, or even Phantom Cat, we have never heard of these names. Iceman, what's wrong with you? By the way, haven't you noticed that the increase disappeared? The X-Men suddenly became a mess. Quicksilver looked anxious. Just like the Iceman, he seemed a little hysterical at the moment. At this time, he only felt completely cold all over, and there was a sense of horror in his mind. Too terrifying. What happened to this? Obviously, such a big living person as amplification has completely disappeared. Why can't these people see it? And why can't they remember the increase? Are these people lying to themselves? The Iceman, who was also stunned, holding his head and shouting in pain, was also completely frightened. Why can't you remember Logan? That fierce villain is also Charles's old friend, the guy who helped us get here. Don't you have any impression? The Iceman subconsciously felt that people around him were maliciously colluding to deceive him. But that pair of incomparable emotions, and Quicksilver's hysterical look, made the Iceman feel that a world of malice was coming. Yes, it must be the malice of the world. Wrong. Suddenly, the Iceman thought of an answer. Suchun, he must be playing tricks. Professor Charles used to be very optimistic about his talents, calling himself an extremely rare Omega-class existence. One day, his ability to freeze everything and even stop the operation of atoms and molecules. The suspension of molecules also means that the movement of all things is completely stopped, which means that time can be frozen by him. Now the sudden chaos of the world line changes. It must be that kid who is making trouble. Damn it. No one knows exactly what happened. In fact, people all over the world go to work normally and continue to live their lives in a normal order. As for the people around who disappeared, they have not observed them at all. This is not so much obliteration. It is better to say that this is the fluctuation of the timeline. The tampering of the world leads to changes in the law of causality, so that a baby born in the past disappears for this reason. Just like a person who observed changes in reality suddenly yelled to a couple, "Have you forgotten your little son? What are you going crazy? We have never had a second child." There may even be another answer. Damn, my wife was seriously ill a few years ago, and you told me the second child. Are you sick? Yes, strictly speaking, this is not an obliteration. Obliteration, that is the worst reality change. Reality tampering in the true sense is omnidirectional, inverting cause and effect and paradoxes, subverting all reality, completely fooling the fluctuations of the reality of the entire world, and completely changing everything. Seeking flowers, all traces of existence will be obliterated, memory, information, all disappear, no one will remember what happened. It is as if the timeline of the entire world is completely covered by the timeline of another parallel universe. This is the reality tampering that truly subverts everything. Certainly, Suchun, who was stimulated to run out of control by his mother's early death, couldn't control this power at all, so some people observe the fluctuations in reality. But these people are unfortunate. Some people are self-doubt, thinking that everyone around them is maliciously deceiving themselves. The brain in the tank, Truman's world. Terrible words continue to flood into my mind, and after feeling the world full of malice, many people may even be schizophrenic. 00. Damn bastard. In the headquarters building of SHI. Compared to other places, the number of people disappearing here is very dense. Even if Suchin's roaring words didn't have much meaning, S.H.I.E.L.D. organized and planned everything. But it was the same as the military organization. It suffered a large area of reality tampering, and the figure disappeared out of thin air, as if from the beginning to the end. The tail does not exist. S.H.I.E.L.D. Director Nick Fury has forgotten many capable 8th level agents, and even forgotten too many subordinates he personally recruited in the past. His face at the moment was very embarrassing. Because he observed the fluctuations in reality and felt the changes in reality after the kid Suchun went mad, he was frightened. Of course, at this moment, he also felt that his life had reached an end. The god of death is coming to harvest his life. Asshole. He didn't even have time to do too many things. But it is enough to do this. I hope you don't forget me. Nick Fury endured the pain and pressed down an old pager in his hand with pain. The old-fashioned pager, which had been eliminated for many years, completely shone at this moment, and saw a bright sign like a star displayed on the screen. Mountain. The violent fluctuation of the timeline is like letting the timeline of another parallel universe recover the current timeline. Su Chun, who had run out of control, did not expect that his anger would spread to the world. After returning to God, Su Chun realized that he had tampered with world history until his emotions recovered. His figure was still in the crater just now, and his black hair fell automatically without wind, and the haunting fluctuations had gradually disappeared. The attitude of running out of control was officially lifted. His first consciousness did not want to see the changes in the world. But my sister, less than an instant. He can feel that the other's life fluctuations are very normal in his mind. Perhaps it was done by the subconscious mind. After all, my sister is a mutant. Under the fluctuations of the entire timeline that interferes with the world, the reality of the mutant race has not changed much. This is what Su Chan learned from his feelings at the spiritual level. Wolverine, Phantom Cat, all the boosts are dead. Even the damn Striker died completely under this catastrophe. The instigator of the time and space shuttle has been completely wiped out any traces. The more Su Chan felt the changes after the reality was tampered with, the more he was secretly surprised. He also did not expect that the influence caused by his momentary emotional out of control was so terrible, and it is true that the shock of his mother's early death was still too great for him. If he were to change to the present, he would definitely not be able to achieve such a terrifying ability to subvert reality. After all, if the ability to change reality is to be fully stimulated, it is very dependent on the loss of control of emotions. If you want to control this mysterious reality as you like, it may take some time for Su Chun. The King of Mutants. Cheers for the birth of the King of Mutants. At this time, there was a loud carnival out of the pit. The mutants who came to support were gathered around the periphery of the pit. They raised their arms and shouted, expressing their respect to Su Chun. They didn't know what happened just now. It is also not clear that the shield rapid reaction force that he was facing has disappeared for some reason. One of the mutants noticed something wrong. However, the sudden explosion of carnival, in the resonance of emotions, they also let go of the surprise in their hearts and began to cheer for the mutant king in front of them. As people on the margins of society, they have been tortured and discriminated against, and even faced the risk of dissection and research. Every moment of my life, I flew extremely frightened. And now, someone has finally stepped forward to show the world that their dignity should not be insulted. So, at this time, they shouted that the king's affection was so sincere. It was like the travelers trapped in the desert finally found a puddle of water. They looked forward to Su Chun with admiration and admiration. This is their guarantee of survival. The X-Men is like a clown playing in front of humans. They only know to save and please humans, but they can't solve our pain. The Brotherhood of Mutants is too useless and lacks in strength. After repeated battles and defeats, Magneto is also old. Only the number one mutant in front of us is the hope of saving us. The crowd chanted. Under the extremely provocative words, the carnival cries are even higher. He broke the shackles in our hands and shattered the shield conspiracy, and only he can give us a new life. We don't need to be enslaved, we just need a fair living environment. Only our mutant king can bestow everything. The more provocative words were said from a familiar face. Is a clone. He has already come to the scene. Next to him were the silhouettes of mutants who had been rescued at that time. Hong Tan-Ku's sturdy figure also roared loudly on the side, transforming from Magneto's powerful hand to Su Chun's faithful believer, the king of mutants. What Su Chun did not expect was that her stupid girl, Susan's sister, rushed here with a super killer girl. Damn, didn't you let her stay at home honestly? Susan's sly gaze stared at Su Chun in this way, with an indescribable smile hidden in her eyes, as well as indescribable expectations. Obviously, she was sincerely happy for her brother's performance, and prayed that the other party would follow the public opinion around her. Call. Su Chun breathed a sigh of relief. Under the shouts of the people around, this young figure in a black sweater slowly rose from the ground, spreading his hands, and just following the cheers of the surroundings, he accepted the crown. For a time, the carnival cries grew louder and louder. He accepted it. Let us once again give our voice to the birth of the mutant king. From this moment on, a new mutant dynasty was born. A terrible fact is that the so-called king of mutants does not rely on the X gene at all, and his ability has nothing to do with the X gene. In theory, he is not a mutant in the strict sense. But for my sister's happiness, so what? In addition, the ambition hidden in Su Chun's heart has already grown stronger and stronger in the dark. Perhaps all this is the 13-year-old boy who has begun to satisfy his ambition. He already knows the world, understands the world, and further, start to master the world. Take S.H.I.E.L.D. This is the first order he issued. As if they had accepted the imperial decree, all of a sudden, a large number of mutants began to march towards the headquarters of the S.H.I.E.L.D. Bureau, which is also the first city, that is, the Sankei building. S.H.I.E.L.D. Tri-Wing building. It has already been messed up under the tampering of the world just now. At least half of the staff were obliterated under the inexplicable interference of reality. Under the change of the timeline, Agent Hill had successfully observed the changes. She panicked, but quickly calmed down again. Knowing through the satellite equipment that the wave of mutants was coming, she gritted her teeth and got up and left. The situation was over. She wanted to rush to the west coast to follow the plan left by Nick Fury and began to dorm it. But what she didn't expect was, what? The two aircraft carriers outside lost contact and refused to communicate directly with the headquarters. Hill is also a little dazed. She naturally didn't know that the Hydra personnel parasitizing the headquarters of S.H.I.E.L.D. had launched a rebellion and began to take advantage of the chaos to gradually eat away at the huge forces left by S.H.I.E.L.D. Damn it. The world seems to have been in chaos at this moment. S.H.I.E.L.D. The full name is the National Land Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau. Subordinate to a directly governed body under the World Security Council, the last retired director of S.H.I.E.L.D. directly served as a member of the board of directors. As a supernatural institution that handles various bizarre events around the world and guards against major threats, it has a lot of advanced black technology. Among them, MO belongs to the Superfighter, the Harrier fighter, which is both stealth and supersonic cruise, as well as the aircraft carrier that rises up under the support of 4 anti-gravity engines is the Sky Aircraft Carrier in the true sense. There is a Sky Aircraft Carrier about to run. At this moment, the rushing army of mutants has already invaded the Sankei headquarters building. But at this time, a majestic island-shaped building just soared up from the isolated lake against the current. No one thought that there was an underwater base hidden under a lake outside the Sankei headquarters building. Brother, don't let him run away. Susan was very excited. As the crystallization product of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s black technology, the 4 anti-gravity engines of the Sky Aircraft Carrier spewed endless power, supporting such an island-like aircraft carrier structure to fly into the sky rapidly. Want to run? Su Chun sneered. Standing in the floor-to-ceiling windows on the 6th floor of the Tri-Wing building, he just separated a window and released his shocking power fluctuations. Click. The entire aircraft carrier suddenly seemed to be trapped in an invisible quagmire in the air, and the more it rose, the more it was pulled downward. In the blink of an eye, in less than a few seconds, he was so imprisoned in midair, stupefied as the anti-gravity engine speeded up, unable to break through the fluctuations in the power of thought that covered the surroundings. Damn it, asshole, how exaggerated is that guy's power? Sounds of panic continued to be heard from the aircraft carrier in the sky. They can finally realize how exaggerated a power of thought power controlled by the enemy is actually the majestic horsepower of the 4 anti-gravity engines that completely confines the Sky Aircraft Carrier. Now they are in complete trouble. Click. Accompanied by the sound of broken glass. There were actually many mutants who directly smashed the floor-to-ceiling windows, jumped from a high floor, and pounced on the Sky Aircraft Carrier, which was only tens of meters high from the ground. Naturally, the first to bear the brunt is the violent temper, Hong Tan-Ku. From time to time, there are figures proficient in flying or shuttle space, pounced on the deck of the aircraft carrier, King, read more at wuxiax.com. There is a mutant nicknamed Electronics among our personnel who can control all electronic equipment. I guarantee that this aircraft carrier can be successfully operated after it is taken. The avatar is simply a dogleg, and the good news will be sent immediately. Great. Susan on the side was very excited. This will be our base in the future. She is a little witch. She is afraid that the world will not be chaotic. At this time, a laser-like barrel device suddenly protruded from the bottom of the sky aircraft carrier. Under adjustment, the muzzle faced the tri-curved wing headquarters building in front of it. There is one that wants to completely destroy the former shield headquarters and is unwilling to give this headquarters building to the mutants. It's a good idea. Suchun stretched his right hand forward slightly and then suddenly clenched his right hand. Boom. The extremely keen hearing ability immediately sent the heart-burst sound of many operators in the aircraft carrier to his ears clearly and unmistakably. War and artillery are a man's romance. When Suchun was a child, he also collected a lot of fighter plane models. Naturally, he will not let go of such a product that represents the crystallization of the highest technology on Earth. Go and see. Soon, he took Susan's figure and shuttled to the aircraft carrier like this. Standing on the deck, feeling the warm wind blowing in the air, Suchun inevitably felt a touch of emotion. This aircraft carrier alone is enough to lead today's Earth technology for more than decades. From a perceptual scan, he could thoroughly perceive that there was a Harrier fighter under the deck, which was more advanced than the Raptor fighter he had defeated. With these things, he won't miss it. In fact, after this revenge, Suchun himself is a little confused about what he will do in life after the age of 13. But what made Suchun both funny and helpless was that Susan, the little witch, was looking forward to ending these messy battles not long ago. Now he cheered along with the other mutants. Regardless, since choosing to wear this crown is also conforming to his own ambitions, Suchun will continue to win over more resources. Right now is the first step. Damn it, do you know who you are offending? Under the roar, a person wearing an armed battle suit was defending to the death, and they fought desperately against the building on the aircraft carrier's island. However, Hontan, Kike, and Marco didn't talk nonsense with him. He directly choked off the bullets and strangled the two figures in front of him. Long live the Hydra. Suddenly, one of them actually rushed forward with a bomb in his hand before he died, like a devout believer was martyred. Despair. Suchun snapped 300 crisp fingers. Under an invisible wave, the bomb in his hand was immediately wiped out of thin air. What? The suicide who tried to blow everything up here was dumbfounded. It seems that you underground rats are hiding well, and S.H.I.E.L.D. has infiltrated you? Suchin's slender figure just came to the door of the command room on the island, and his eyes swept towards the desperately defiant figure inside. There was a faint light in his eyes, and he had begun to read the memories in their minds wantonly. At this moment, Suchin suddenly realized that S.H.I.E.L.D. had already rotted from its roots. The Hydra organization that had disappeared for decades had already penetrated everything here and collapsed from within. Damn bastard. Soon, these Hydra personnel immediately noticed that their heads were being read like the same book. Cut off one head and grow two more. Long live the Hydra. Facing the almost incomprehensible existence, these people didn't hesitate to grab their heads and committed suicide one after another. Remember that you rejected the olive branch of our Hydra. Hydra will always look at you. When we welcome back the master from the endless abyss, that's when you die. Suicide, committed suicide again in the form of martyrdom. The decisiveness of the Hydra organization completely exceeded the expectations of the mutants present. For such a Hydra that once dominated most of the world in the past, everyone's memories and impressions can only stay in books and texts. Now I can see it, but it feels weird and horrified. Obviously the strength of these people is very low, but the fierce strength and determination made some mutants inevitably feel a sense of awe. A bunch of trash that can't help but be beaten. Hong Tenku is still that heartless. He slapped his heart and shouted with a rough voice. If you find me where these guys are hiding, they must be uprooted by our king. Suchin's complexion is still calm and composed, but he doesn't care too much about the existence of the Hydra organization. Certainly, from the mind of the Hydra leader just now, Suchin also learned that Hydra has already existed in various parts of the world. Besides, the members of Hydra have always wanted to dominate the world, but to welcome back a Hydra monarch exiled in a foreign land. It is said that it is a terrifying existence that was exiled from another world thousands of years ago. This is quite surprising. Suchin raised his eyebrows, but dismissed it. After all, he was never afraid of challenges. In a sense, his infinitely evolving mutant genes determined Suchin's character that is very eager to challenge. Soon, the S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters Tri-Wing building, which was designed and cast by Howard Stark himself in the past, and the security system was renovated by Iron Man Tony Stark, fell into the hands of Suchun. Mutant Electronics began to crack the system data in it, and gradually took control of various places. Unfortunately, a large amount of data has been deleted and cannot be completely restored. Among them, a large number of materials that require level 8 agents or higher to be accessed are all lost. S.H.I.E.L.D. Director Nick Fury claimed to be the man who knew the most secrets of the Earth in the past, and he alone knew the secret base created by this powerful existence. None of these can be answered. ZZ. In the underground garage of the building, an old-fashioned pager that had been trampled on by someone exploded with electric arcs. The mutants of Luoxiong don't know what this means at all. A number of Harrier-shaped fighters flew out of the aircraft carrier in the air. Some mutants drove the fighters directly to downtown Manhattan, where they would go there to receive the armored robots of the Stark Group. Besides, Baxter Mansion, where the Fantastic Four lives, will also be taken over. After all, it is a laboratory in charge of many scientific research technologies and cutting-edge black technologies. It didn't take long for good news to finally come from Mutant Electronics. Some materials were rescued. S.H.I.E.L.D. has a secret base in the north called the Joint Dark Energy Operations Base. The level of confidentiality is very good, and there are a lot of additional personnel. It is recommended that more mutants be sent to occupy it. From his mouth, everyone quickly learned more information. It is reported that the United Dark Energy Operations Base preserves an existence called the Universal Rubik's Cube, and S.H.I.E.L.D. continues to extract energy from this treasure to create cutting-edge black technology weapons. What's more surprising is that this is a treasure once owned by Hydra in World War II. The people present were all shocked inside. Until then, everyone did not know that the Cosmos Rubik's Cube stored in the Joint Dark Energy Operations Base would cause a lot of trouble to their own people in the future. After learning the news for the first time, Suchin personally led the personnel and rushed to this black technology base. Downtown Manhattan, Baxter Building, all houses on the top and fifth floors were bought by the Fantastic Four, and they were transformed into an experimental base. On the rooftop, there is a man tool of the Fantastic Four, called the Fantastic Car, which is fast and faster than conventional fighters. On the side of the wall of the building, there is also a rocket launching station, which can launch rockets into space. As Mr. Fantastic Reed, who has been studying the theory of parallel universes recently, he once had a space door leading to negative space on the second floor of his top floor. This is a very shocking thing. In Reed's vision, this is where he will be exiled in the future to expel supercriminals. But not long ago, this negative space door was closed by a little boy at home, like a random door he put in his pocket. Franklin Richards sighed, followed Ms. Hill's advice, and led his sister Valeria Richards out of here. Both of them are mutants. My brother is a terrifying mutant with a level beyond Omega. Omega is already terrifying. It is outrageous. But he must have the potential to surpass the Omega level in the future. The younger sister is also a super high IQ existence who has recognized that IQ will surpass all existence on the Earth in the future. Ironically, their parents died in the hands of a persecuted and now king of mutants. One can imagine how complicated the mood is. After all, after confirming the expression of the X gene and witnessing the incredible power of his own children, Mr. Fantastic Reed did not expose them too much for fear of getting a trace of discrimination from the society and biasing their growth psychology. For this reason, Franklin even had to seal his ability with the help of his father because of the sudden increase in strength last year. As a result, in such a helpless moment, he can't come up with a trace of strength to deal with the terrifying enemy. That I will take revenge. Believe me, it won't take long. This is the promise of my brother to my sister. It is also his guarantee of his own strength. After all, if it weren't for the seal, I'm afraid I would break through the boundaries of the good earth and squeeze countless spaces into the earth if I was not careful. They just left. Miss Hill came here in person, looking at them as hope for revenge, and took the siblings to the West Coast very carefully. On the West Coast, she will personally create a brand new Avengers. It's called the Avengers of the West Coast. Skin. Whoosh. In this way, the Harrier-shaped fighter jets shuttled under the night sky and quickly rushed to the United Arab Energy Operations Base in the north. But at this moment, boom, the darkness of the dark night actually gathered the boundless dark clouds, and thunder flashes were brewing in the air for an instant, and then swept across these fighters like a giant python. Midgard, courtyard. This is the name Asgard god realm calls the earth. Among the many titles of Odin, the king of the gods, there is also the title of Lord of the Nine Realms. In name, he is also the ruler of the entire earth. At least this was the case in ancient times. When the king of frost giants of Jotunheim came to the earth with an army, it was Odin who led the celestial warriors to successfully stop their barbaric acts. But thousands of years ago, after the heavenly gods from the universe descended on the earth, everything changed. The members of the celestial group easily defeated the united earth gods. The blood of the gods spilled over the sky. A deity continued to fall, and Odin was also defeated miserably. From then on, under the verbal restraint of the celestial group, all of their gods were unable to participate in and interfere with all human affairs. Odin, the king of the gods, has rarely mentioned things about the earth since then. But when the twilight of the gods began on the earth, Odin, who had entered his twilight years, could no longer pay attention to that verbal agreement. Maybe it's lust for power. Maybe it was because I didn't see through life and death. Maybe he cares about the people of Asgard's realm. So, at this moment, his son Thor led a team of soldiers from the fairy 300 palace to the earth through the Rainbow Bridge. However, Odin seems to have underestimated his son's violent temper. Boom. Under the boundless dark clouds, blazing flashes of thunder continued to interweave in the sky. In a blink, just like a series of giant pythons, the thunder electric light swept toward the Harrier-shaped fighter in the air. Not good, the driver yelled. At this moment, his expression was full of horror, and he couldn't think of the peaceful night, how the weather suddenly deteriorated like this. An electric light swept across, and instantly made him unable to react. Boom. The terrifying electric light whipped the plane like this, but what the pilot did not expect was that when the seemingly terrifying thunder python slashed, it did not cause any substantial harm. It's the king of mutants. He reacted all of a sudden, his eyes glanced to the back. We seem to have encountered an unusual weather attack. The driver is naturally not stupid. After all, everyone is a mutant, and most of them have seen the ability to call the wind and call the rain, and the ability to call thunder with only one hand. Now such an unconventional encounter in bad weather. After a sigh of relief, they naturally understand that they have encountered an enemy attack. You go first, Suchin said without a doubt. He just used the power fluctuation of his mind to form a shield to protect the two Harrier fighters. The perception in my mind is even more aware of the figure hiding in the night. Didn't think much. His figure flickered like this, and the space shuttle directly came to the outside night under the night. With the fluctuations of thought power lingering around the body, it is so easy to get above the sky. Boom. Multiple thunder pythons swept and smashed continuously, trying to destroy multiple fighters trying to retreat from the dark clouds. It's a pity that under Suchin's thoughts, multiple thunder pythons burst open like this, just as if they were hitting a snake 7 inches, and they were cut off out of thin air. Sneaky, a big man is embarrassed to peekaboo with me? Suchin sneered. Just you kid dare to talk to me in this tone. An angry word resounded like thunder. In an instant, a tall figure bathed in thunderlight, and holding a warhammer suddenly shuttled out of the dark clouds. He raised the weapon in his hand and flew in, just like this volleyed at the figure of Suchin. Boom. The divine weapon Thor's hammer hadn't touched the opponent's body completely, and the discharge of electric current was the first to sweep towards Suchin's body. Suchin frowned. Compared with the electric light in nature, he felt an unusual fluctuation in the electric current that touched the body. Facing the sudden enemy, he didn't have a trace of fear, did not flinch. Instead, he was full of fighting spirit. It seemed that after the battle with Hulk, when he felt the heartfelt blow from his fist, Suchin sneered, and instead of retreating, he raised his fist and slammed into the enemy in front of him. At this moment, Thor was dumbfounded and surprised. After all, this was the first time in his life that he had encountered an enemy's Thor's hammer holding his fist up. He was stupid. At the same time, he laughed too. The human beings in this world are really innocent. Don't you even know the Thunder Hammer, an artifact under the name of Odin, king of the gods? Stupid kid, doesn't the epic legend circulating here tell you what this thing is? Stop talking. Thor just raised the hammer of the divine weapon Thor and slammed it at the enemy in front of him. Boom. After a meeting, Suchin in front of him was knocked out. Hit the stone with the pebble. Thor laughed wildly. He had already anticipated the appearance of the opponent's body torn apart. Whoosh. Carried away by the violent impact, Suchin, whose body was out of bounds for a while, was thrown hundreds of meters away under the gusty wind speed. Thunder resistance plus 200. Divine power resistance plus 200. Body strength plus 100. In a short period of time, the constructed system can very well summarize the genetic information of the metamorphosis. Interesting. Suchin raised his eyebrows, and his unbalanced body instantly stabilized. The injury on the fist healed instantly before he could see the wound. This speed alone is enough to make the enemy doubt life. Whether it caused harm or not is a question. The metamorphosis genes of infinite evolution are so outstanding that sometimes, let alone an informed enemy, even Suchin has forgotten his immortal and terrifying physique. During this period of time, not only has the ability increased, but the skills have become more exquisite, and even the self-healing ability has been similarly strengthened. If it is said that even a drop of blood left in the previous self can be reborn in nirvana, Suchin now vaguely feels that he has turned into an indelible concept. Press these thoughts. Suchin's indifferent face suddenly showed a strong will to fight, and his figure flew forward in an instant like a cannonball. What? At this time, it was Thor's turn to change his face, but he did not expect that the other party could survive a trick under the artifact, and he seemed to be alive and well. It's too late to say, then it's fast. The flying figure just slammed into Thor. Boom. At this moment, Thor's complexion became more and more sluggish. He was knocked out. Boom. Suchin came on like a cannonball. This moment, Thor didn't expect the opponent to recover so fast, and he was blown away by the opponent when he was caught off guard. Damn bastard. Thor's complexion changed, and the flying figure quickly stabilized her figure in the air. At this moment, the reckless guy hadn't really felt the surprise of the opponent's 2 attacks before and after. Success. Thor roared. Under his anger, the Thor's hammer held in his hand seduced the thunder of heaven and earth, and constantly blasted towards the young figure above the 9 heavens. Click. Under the dark clouds, the thunders that had been brewing for a long time covered Suchin's figure like a magnificent beam of light. How fast is the lightning speed? Between the electric light and the flint, they continued to bombard Suchin in front of him. Boom. The dazzling thunderbolt alone was enough to smash a hill, and Thor did not believe that the other party could really remain indifferent. Wrong. Thor Tolton noticed the opponent's figure constantly approaching. I saw the figure baptized by thunder robbery, but there was no hint of being hit. He was completely unharmed, just bathed in layers of thunder, and flew quickly from the distant sky. Boom. It was another close combat. Suchin completely knocked out Thor's figure in front of him with such a punch. So you are a god? Under the sneer. Thor, who was beaten a little dazed at once, hadn't stabilized his body yet. A shocking attraction completely attracted his body like a stand. For a time, under the horrible attraction, his body flew back to Suchin's face again. Then, boom. Su-chan raised his fist and didn't pay attention to a trace of face at all, so he shattered the thunder light intertwined outside the opponent's body and prepared to bombard the opponent's face ruthlessly. Hit people but not face. This is undoubtedly a great humiliation for Thor. When he became angry, he looked a little awkwardly using Thor's hammer to hold him in front of him. Boom. Under the handover, Su-chan's fist hit the opponent's artifact like this. In an instant, Thor felt an immense power flooding in front of him, and the terrifying force bombarded like a mountain. There is also divine resistance. This is also the first moment Su-chan realizes that there are gods in this world. But that's okay. Since the first small loss after the battle, his infinitely evolving mutant gene has generated many resistances under external stimuli, and has awakened the ability to restrain the opponent. Awakening. Divine power absorption. No one can use the same trick to successfully work on his body a second time. The ability to absorb and release energy will quickly cover the level of absorption under divine power fluctuations. So at this moment, Su-chan, who was bathing the opponent's god Thunder, started to suffer from the opponent's backfeeding, and he continued to grow himself. The more you fight, the stronger. The more the fight, the more despair the other party feels. If it was the full strength of the Thor in front of him just now, then he could already be declared dead at this moment. Do not. Roaring Thor. Thor feels extremely aggrieved and depressed. Under the divine power of Thor's hammer, his aura suddenly rose one after another. He is Thor, son of Odin. How could it be possible to completely lose to a human, a mortal in a low-strength atrium world? It's just a human. The arrogant Thor couldn't accept that he would be defeated by a human being. His father Odin, the king of gods, is the nominal ruler of this world. Seeking flowers, he wants to regain his dignity. At this moment, the momentum suddenly rose, and Thor, who was pulling a piece of heaven and earth with divine power, just bombarded with the vast and incomparable killing intent. Boom. The two headed head on again. The terrifying light was released in the sky in this way, and the shocking energy fluctuations swept out at this moment, turning into substantive shock waves like windswept clouds, completely destroying the dark clouds under the night. Thor's figure retreated more than 10 meters. This time, his breath was stable, and heartfelt joy was expressed in his heart. But, in the next second, his eyelids twitched, and he discovered that the opponent was calm and natural under the wave of destruction just now, floating steadily and freely in the air on the other side. Have equal shares? 0-0. Was the collision just now unmatched? Divine power resistance plus. Body strength plus 100. Feeling the changes in genetic information, Su-chan's indifferent face also rarely showed a smile. It seems that you have made progress this time. This tone is like a predecessor who taught his younger generation earnestly. The more Thor listened, the more unpleasant it became. This kid, this kind of violent temper has been eaten to death by his brother Loki, who is a god of fraud in the past. Now, under the repeated provocations of the young man in front of him, Thor couldn't bear his temper at all, and did not try to figure out the changes in the opponent's body at all. So he rushed up quite thoughtlessly. Boom. Su-chan, full of fighting spirit, continued to raise his right fist, just like this, blasting forward at the attacking enemy. This time, Thor, who was already at his peak strength, said goodbye to the evenly divided situation. He felt the humiliation again. Asshole. Throwing hundreds of meters away, Thor endured the blood tumbling in his body. But an amazing discovery made him unable to suppress the despair in his mind. Thor's hammer shattered a horn. Boundless cracks permeated the surface of this indestructible artifact. Puff. At this moment, Thor finally couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Mountain. Thor's heart seemed to be dripping blood. You must know that this artifact Thor's hammer has followed him for so many years, conquering wars from the south to the north, and countering the war across the 9 regions. But it was destroyed in a human country. The cracks permeating the surface of Thor's hammer seemed to grow in his own heart, and Thor felt extremely uncomfortable. Asshole. He roared unwillingly. Reason is completely replaced by anger at this moment. He does not want to lose. Unwilling to lose to a human teenager in this atrium world. Even more unwilling to watch the existence that symbolizes the twilight of the gods continue to thrive. He wants to kill this sign. Die. Thor desperately urged all the power of Thor's hammer, and the surging divine power lingered around his body, shaking with the void. He was bathed in thunder and lightning, and he wore a mighty and simple armor. As if he had really come out of an epic legend, Thor continued to kill Su-chan in front of him with a will not tolerate humiliation. Good job. Su-chan's face was cold. After many head-on collisions, his more and more fighting spirit also showed a terrifying aura. The billions of trillions of whole body seemed to be completely awakened at this moment, and the energy of the limbs and hundreds of skeletons continued to penetrate the whole body. Su-chan, who was extremely vigorous and condensed, constantly raised his aura, and just rushed towards the identity in front of him with all his strength. Boom. At this moment, a majestic and endless energy fluctuation burst into the air. The vast aftermath that set off even caused the Harrier fighters that had already flown far away to tremble in the air. Less than a second, under the vast waves of light, I saw a figure directly smash from the air to the ground like a meteorite. Boom. The top of a mountain range collapsed, and Thor, who fell there, vomited blood. His majestic armor had long been shattered, and his body was bathed in blood, like a bloody man. What? He cried out in pain. At this moment, the Thor's hammer he was holding tightly in his hand had been completely broken in the collision just now. Only a handle was left in his palm, and the top structure of the artifact completely burst into pieces. Damn, Thor was completely stupid, and the momentary anger in his mind instantly dissipated. The performance of his incompetence and rage ruined an artifact. Besides, when he realized that the strength of the opponent's fist was enough to defeat a divine weapon, the pride in his heart had shattered to the ground. Asshole. How old is this human kid? Could it be that he can only sit and watch this young man continue to grow? Thor struggled hard from the pit and tried to stand up. It was just that he was injured all over his body, and every movement made his face extremely distorted. It had been a long time since he had suffered such a serious injury. He is dissatisfied. He would rather stand to die than lie on the ground to be slaughtered. Come. The rough and savage Thor vented his anger into the air. And this time, Su-chan, who was above the air, puts his arms around like this, with an indifferent and ruthless face without too much emotional ups and downs, just like this condescendingly overlooking the figure in the pit. But it was such a contemptuous attitude under control that made Thor extremely annoyed. He really couldn't stand a mortal overlooking himself above the air. The look of contempt penetrated his heart like a sharp blade. I'm not convinced. Thor is too violent. Severely injured, he stood up from the sky, trying to completely knock the tall figure to the ground. Suddenly, Su-chan frowned. He ignored this incompetent and furious subordinate's defeat. A warning signal came from the intuition of the battle and made him look into the sky, only to see an incomparable rainbow beam of light suddenly ushered in the night. It's like a bridge coming through from a foreign land, where the supreme divine power is extremely majestic, enough to make people feel the vast power of it. The rainbow light that penetrated is so fast and fast, completely enveloped Thor's figure. Do not. Thor roared. He didn't want to be a deserter. He had other Asgardian fighters left on the ground. In the unwilling roar, the rainbow bridge from Asgard's realm took him away. Run with the tail between. Before leaving, Su-chan snapped his fingers. Despair. There was a crisp sound. The terrifying power that interfered with reality penetrated Thor's body in this way, which was a complete obliteration power. What? A cry of pain came from the disappearing rainbow bridge light. It's hard to tell whether it's life or death. After all, if you want to obliterate an ordinary person, it is very simple for Su Chun under normal conditions. I am afraid that a single thought and a snap of a finger can easily be destroyed. But if it is to deal with a guy with supernatural power, it is not that simple. The probability of obliteration failure is extremely high. Of course, if you run out of emotional control, it is another answer. In any case, this is enough to completely severely hurt the opponent. Where's this again? Su Chin's indifferent gaze just looked in the direction where the rainbow light faded. His eyes shimmered with a faint light, an array of perception turned into an extended tentacles of thinking, constantly insight into the laws of space. But soon, the extended perception could no longer keep up with the fading light. However, Su Chun has vaguely sensed that this is coming from an alien space channel. It has the ability to shuttle through space, and has the ability to attack. Is it a foreign land, or a certain planet, or a small universe? Su Chun raised his eyebrows slightly. At this time, he became more and more curious about the understanding of the Earth. The gods are real. Some myths recorded in epic legends also seem to be true. Even aliens are real. Alien, and even demon gods living outside the dimension, as well as mysterious magical forces. All this made Su Chun realize that there is a magnificent world hidden outside the Earth, and he seemed to faintly open a corner. But a god. Su Chun smiled. Although the information fed back from evolutionary genes does show the other side's supernatural power. But I have never seen such a weak god. To be honest, if it wasn't for Hulk being completely stunned by himself, he would be afraid to fight. I'm afraid this god who can only rely on a divine weapon can't beat Hulk, who is more angry and stronger. It's not so much a god, it's an alien who is stronger than ordinary humans. Su Chun suddenly had some enlightenment at this moment. The colorful rays of light that pierced the Earth flocked to the Rainbow Bridge in Asgard's realm. Rainbow Bridge. This is a strategic shuttle device that can penetrate the star field and span 2 planets. Heimdall, the patron god who controlled the entire Rainbow Bridge device, ran forward and caught Thor, who was completely collapsed on the ground. OMG. He was covered in blood, bruised, and his life was weakened to a trough. Hurry up and call someone. Frozen. Heimdall, who was accustomed to wind and rain, couldn't help feeling a little moved. He hugged Thor and transferred his divine power into the opponent's body. I'm gone. I'm done. Thor's hammer is gone. Thor was completely discouraged, and his will became extremely depressed and weak. After an incompetent rage just now, he has deeply realized how far he is from that human teenager. The opposing party's movements like clouds and flowing water all revealed calmness and nobility, and on the contrary, it appeared that the opposing party was more graceful and powerful than that of himself as a deity. The disdain of the figure who overlooked him above the sky completely broke his heart. After suffering 12 great humiliations and being taken away by Rainbow Bridge as a deserter, it might as well just die like this. Cheer up. Heimdall was irritated. How could he have seen the invincible Thor become so negative? The divine body that resisted treatment began to become colder and colder. What is a Thor's hammer? Remember that you are not the god of hammers. That is just a tool to restrain your divine power. You are the son of Odin, the monarch who will lead Asgard in the future. Your divine power is more terrifying than you think. It's just that Thor turned a deaf ear, a lifeless look. Damn it. Heimdall, the guardian god, can see everything and hear everything, and perceive everything within the 9 realms. He saw everything with his eyes just now. The young man who symbolizes the twilight of the gods is indeed more tricky than imagined. He is both powerful and mysterious. To say that Thor's injury belongs to the opponent's last vicious obliteration power, that strange wave of interference in reality made Thor's injury worse. At this time, Asgard's medical personnel have arrived, and at least the level of medical technology that has been ahead of the Earth for a few years, and even the brilliant medical magic is enough to save his life. However, the depression of the will and the dim fighting spirit are the ones that need to be saved by himself. After the battle between Odin and the king of frost giants in his twilight years, he needs to fall asleep to restore his strength. Thor, who now symbolizes top combat power, has already retreated. Then the only thing you can rely on now is Destroyer. Destroyer. Naturally, it is not the fragile appearance of Thor 1 in the movie. In the comics, it is a horrible weapon that gathered the Earth gods to build to resist the cosmic gods. It's just that after the passage of time and the wear and tear of battle, the power of the Destroyer is naturally no better than in the past. After realizing that the dusk of the gods was coming, Odin naturally needed to renovate this precious thing. Perhaps in the end I can only expect Odin. Heimdall sighed secretly, but at this moment, his insightful eyes suddenly felt a malicious attack when he continued to observe the young man on the Earth. It was as if he had been seen peeping through the world. It's sneaky. Under the night, Su Chin's black and white eyes flickered with cold light, and he stared at the far distance. At this moment, his eyes seemed to reflect a figure in the same armor. It was this guy who was peeping at himself secretly, so full of maliciousness that his genes in his body produced a restrained response. Next second, Heimdall, who was in the control room of the Rainbow Bridge, only felt that his eyeballs were red, as if burning. He didn't dare to peep at himself, and he turned away his eyes in a panic, and got startled secretly. But there is a more worrying answer waiting for me. That is, the fairy palace warrior that Thor brought down did not come back the first time. Earth. Under the night, more than a dozen immortal warriors in the mountains waiting for a long time were pacing back and forth. Thor was able to fly through the air with the help of the artifact. Naturally, they couldn't keep up, so they could only stay here at a loss. But at this moment, their hearts seemed to be hit by a heavy boulder. Because they couldn't witness the battle scene in the air, but they could clearly see the colorful rainbow light coming from the Asgard god's realm, which responded to Thor's departure. Thor is undoubtedly defeated, and they were naturally abandoned. Damn it, everyone, don't be discouraged. The next release of Rainbow Bridge will take some time. Someone was comforted. Yes. But at this time, a ridiculous word came from the air like this. The figure of the young man above the air just looked down at the figures of these people condescendingly. A medieval armor, shining with the luster of runes, a look that emerged from an epic legend. There is no smell of cosplay. There is no sense of disobedience at all. These strangely costumed personnel are too obvious, too garish. It seems that you should be happy to tell me. Where are you from? What is the purpose of being here? The words fall. Under the suppression of the incomparably stagnant aura, the figures of the fairy palace warriors were lifted into the air like this. The horrible thought power fluctuations turned into invisible giant hands, and they grabbed their figure in this way, letting them struggle helplessly. At the same time, Su Chin's power to read the mind just poured into their minds. Asgard god realm. Thor, son of Odin. Odin, king of the gods. Xiangong warrior, Rainbow Bridge. So many epic words appeared in Su Chin's mind. At this moment, he finally learned of a place called Asgard God's Domain. It is not a planet, and it cannot be observed by satellite equipment and other existing technologies. It is a small universe, and the whole world is like an island. As for the purpose of their arrival, Thor concealed and didn't tell him, only knowing that he was going to kill himself. But he didn't say a word to these men for the reason. Interesting. Su Chin sneered. Another inexplicable enemy attack. The malice from the world is here again. It's okay. He is used to it. Scourge, what's the matter with the Lone Star? He does not lack this enemy. Since the Asgardians wanted to kill themselves, then until they calmed down everything here, they must completely destroy the entire Asgardian god's domain. This hatred ended. Interesting is here. This seems to be a looping knot. A karma. Odin saw that the future Su Chun had brought the dusk of the gods, so he almost started to act in advance, but he did not know that this behavior caused Su Chun to completely hate Asgard. The malice from the world has made Su Chun believe that this is an enemy that must be eliminated. So here comes the problem. If Odin does not let people start in advance, will Su Chun bring the dusk of the gods? Just after Su Chun had resolved the crisis from Asgard's realm, whoosh, in the sky, a Harrier-shaped fighter jet broke through the air in a stealth state and arrived above a secretly constructed facility in the north called the Joint Dark Energy Operations Base. As the crystalline product of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s black technology, these fighters do not disappear from the radar with a stealth coating, but can actually disappear completely from the human body's pupil line of sight. Under supersonic cruise, it takes very little time to reach the destination. Soon, a mutant has already begun to get off the fighter plane and begin to capture this secret facility under the banner of S.H.I.E.L.D. Bureau. The one who takes the lead belongs to Su Chin's #1 warrior, Red Tank. This guy jumped down from a height of several hundred meters and blasted through a building like a meteorite, killing more than a dozen people in such a simple and brutal moment. The horrible existence, like a simple bear, just stood up from the ruins casually and then killed every S.H.I.E.L.D. soldiers who were trying to escape. The entire Joint Dark Energy Operation Base has already received the notice and must start to retreat in time. But what is desperate is that the dismantling and handling of the universe's Rubik's Cube is so difficult that these people are unable to leave for a long time. Under the urgency of the situation, many people even had plans to destroy this treasure rather than give it to the other party. After all, time is still a lot slower. The cracking work from the mutants' electronics caused a group of elite mutant members to invade this base. It was just a rampant red tank, and a single acceleration completely collapsed several buildings. In the face of such an insoluble existence, the remaining S.H.I.E.L.D. personnel staying here fell instantly. Finish. Quickly count the strategic materials. Someone used great strength to summon the madman Hong Tan-ku. Many people have also found boxes of brand new weapons in the warehouse. This shouldn't be those laser weapons in Star Wars. The mutants are overjoyed. The materials pried apart from each cargo box turned out to be brand new laser weapons like guns. A mutant grasped this weapon that was like a slender scepter and slammed the button. An array of light was suddenly released from the head of the gun. The light flickered extremely, and with a bang, the wall of a building in front of him was completely collapsed. This is much fiercer than a bullet. This kind of laser weapon is simply unheard of. No one thought that this dark energy base of S.H.I.E.L.D. would still hide so many unused black technology weapons. And the root of everything is that cosmic Rubik's Cube that is guarded by key points. This square blue Rubik's Cube seems to contain endless cosmic energy, which can be continuously extracted from it and used as the release energy of laser weapons. In the past, Howard Stark even studied the prototype of new elements from the cube of the universe. Only limited by the technology of the current era, there is no way to completely extract it. With the cosmic Rubik's Cube, there is no need to worry about weapons. This will be the cornerstone for us to create a mutant dynasty. Many mutants said excitedly. The next day, Su Chun, who rushed back from the United Dark Energy Operations Base, spent the night in the Sankei building of S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters. He slept very peacefully this night. He suddenly raged. The fluctuating reality caused by his emotional loss of control has wiped out his most concerned enemy, General Stryker. Although the bait of the scam is a false stand-in, the true master still cannot escape the fluctuation of reality that has suddenly swept the world. Naturally, General Stryker, who was hiding somewhere, was killed. Certainly, this fluctuation of reality sweeping the world has also plunged the power on this land into a vacuum. Under the banner of Su Chin's #1 mutant, more mutants gathered on the East Coast and began to occupy all the superstructures here. According to the preliminary plan, a brand new force will be established with the city along the east coast of the first city Yorkton as the center, and it will begin to radiate to the surroundings. Top combat effectiveness, weapon resources, elite backbone. The rudimentary form of the power has also begun to become more specific. At this time, the missing resources are the financial resources and contacts to maintain the existing order. Just this morning, a dedicated person has already contacted the largest mutant force in Manhattan, trying to swallow all their resources. As for these, Su Chin completely ignored it. He was even a little confused after waking up from the spacious couch in the morning. General Stryker, the instigator who brought him to this point, disappeared, but after the endless joy, he fell into a void and confusion. After all, he is no longer the little boy who flees in a panic. The huge power gap had already made him understand that General Stryker was already as small as an ant. After stomping to death the jumping ant on one foot, at this time, there was confusion. Having gone through so many joys and sorrows, he has the strength that he could not imagine in the past, and looking back, he was only 13 years old. It's impossible to go to school. As far as Su Chun has been fully developed, the content of the textbook is already like an enlightenment book for children. After all, intelligence is also a part of the body, and the infinitely evolving mutant genes can naturally drive the development of the brain. It's just that compared to fists, problems that can often be solved with one fist don't require too much brain power at all. Call. He sighed lightly. When the feeling of anxiety in his eyes gradually disappeared, Su Chin's inner confusion was quickly filled with ambition. This world is so big. 9 gods' realms. Dimension. Even the vast universe has countless civilizations. The Earth is nothing more than a good wave in the ocean of Wanyan. This moment, Su Chun found his future direction. He wants to build a huge and endless interstellar empire. It's not Tong Yen Wuji. It's not the dream of growing up casually when I was young. It's like filling out their own wishes solemnly. The interstellar empire. That is his goal in the future, to become pregnant. He promised his mother to live with his sister, and he has done it now. His life should not be only revenge. It should also have its own goals. Just like what the teacher said in the class, realize your life value. It's time to work hard for who you really are. Now that the 13-year-old Su Chun has clenched his fists, his vigorous face is full of confidence after realizing the magnificent scene of the universe from the mind of the fairy palace warrior. He wants to live for himself. He wants to conquer the stars and the sea. You are up. The super killer Mindy was very happy to meet Su Chun. What? Her delicate face was suddenly filled with surprise. I don't know why you seem to have changed. Mindy's eyes were smiling. Obviously, it was still the handsome face with sharp edges and corners, but for some reason, it seemed to be full of confidence this morning, unlike the previous melancholy. The whole person seems to be reborn. Yes. Su Chun didn't say much, but looking at the only friend, he solemnly said, "Stay." What? Mindy was a little surprised. She pondered for a while, but smiled bitterly. But I'm not a mutant. It's enough that you are my friend. Su Chun said in an unquestionable tone. For some reason, Mindy's mind has already surfaced the scene of the opponent spreading his hands above the sky, accepting the carnival of a group of mutants. That kind of indifference reveals the arrogant and domineering meaning, just like him at this time. Okay, thinking of this, Mindy blushed slightly and nodded. Feeling that her emotions were not right, Mindy couldn't wait to get into the ground. After a cough, she directly shifted her attention and said, "Last night there were a lot of counterattacks by Aegis 303 agents, but they have all been extinguished." That was naturally what happened after Su Chun left the Tri-Wing building last night. Not enough. They obviously underestimated the power of mutants. Since yesterday, Su Chun formally responded to the voice of mutants and responded to the cheers of their king of mutants. From yesterday to now, more and more mutants from all over the world have gathered in the direction of Shoching. Today's #1 mutant is a bright and beautiful banner. Unlike the X-Men, he acts as a superhero in the human world and constantly saves others in order to flatter mankind. It's not like the Brotherhood of Mutants, who seeks extreme change but is weak and weak. Professor Charles is dead. Magneto is almost old too. This era belongs to the era of Su Chun, the #1 mutant. Last night, the mutant forces entrenched in downtown Manhattan were completely annexed. Since then, the mutant forces on the entire East Coast have completed their preliminary integration. There are already mutants to track down the whereabouts of the remnants of S.H.I.E.L.D. The clone came to report. Su Chun didn't care about these remnants of S.H.I.E.L.D. or the existence of Hydra. After all, their strength seemed too weak. What the clone is worried about is that S.H.I.E.L.D. is is trying to integrate superheroes from all over the world and regroup against the rise of mutants. However, it is very difficult to capture the traces of the remnants of S.H.I.E.L.D., who have completely entered the underground work. Leave them alone. Suchun is only interested in this, and he will deal with it directly. You don't need to do these things yourself. Moreover, the other party can find a character that is enough to challenge him, so I don't know whether to congratulate them or congratulate myself for being able to evolve. Time is always on your side. As time progresses, his infinite evolutionary genes will make himself stronger, and if the other party really finds a ruthless character, then he will evolve even faster. This seems to be an insoluble situation. Or choose to boil the frog in warm water and wait for it to die slowly. Or choose to fight to the death and give it all. No matter which answer it is so desperate. On the first day of his new life, for Suchun, he has found something very interesting. That is the laboratory data stored in the Baxter building, from which it is said that Mutant Electronics has discovered amazing research, MR. Fantastic reads parallel universe research. This is not whimsical. Rather, the research has already had preliminary answers. The smartest man on Earth successfully observed the multiverse in some way and named the universe he lives in as Universe. Hear the words. Suchun couldn't restrain his deep interest at all, and even Susan was so excited to follow. This world is too big. Maybe Suchun's goal just set is to change to conquer the stars, the sea, and the multiverse. At this moment, after Suchun's emotional out of control and complete rampage caused the tampering with reality, the pattern of the entire planet began to change. All the major forces on the Earth are surging under the current. First of all, the objects that were obliterated invisibly and obliterated all traces also included many members of the temple. Although the catastrophe did not directly point to them, the hostility in Suchun's subconscious has also unilaterally caused many deaths. The manpower was drastically reduced, the strength suddenly weakened, and it also gave the old opponent a chance. Let the Earth become the kingdom of the great evil god Domum. This gave Cassius, the chief disciple of Domum, a chance to start. A long-planned annihilation plan will directly point to the three major temples of the Earth. At that time, once the magic circle linking the three major temples is destroyed, then the dark evil god Domum will personally come. This is one of them. Second, somewhere between the undeveloped virgin forest, there is a town standing in the middle of the mountain forest. The humans here have no contact with the outside world at all. Of course, to be precise, they should not be called humans, but inhumans. A mysterious force flooded in the despicable human world, which caused some of us to disappear completely, and even made many of us completely forget the existence of some people. His Majesty the Black Bat King from the base of the moon has informed that it will spread the fog of Terrigon in the human world, thereby giving birth to a new alien race. At the same time, the Great Majesty needs an explanation from the human world. Otherwise, he will destroy any visible human city and destroy the civilization that mankind is proud of. The newly promoted Black Bat King is so young and strong. His strength is so terrible, strong enough to make all the alien races feel trembling when they stay by his side. For his strength, destroying the world seems to be too simple, so that no one would question the golden content of his words. This day, the alien race that had been hidden for many years suddenly became active. And on the west coast, Ms. Hill, who successfully rushed to a secret base in 51, has clearly been promoted to the new director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Bureau. Last night, the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent who risked his death to head to the headquarters building finally delivered an old-fashioned pager in an underground garage that had been broken into the hands of Ms. Hill. Just what's the use? She was a little confused. What's the use of this tattered thing, the old pager that has been eliminated? Director Hill naturally didn't quite understand. Nick Fury has always been mature and stable, and there are countless secrets in his heart. It must be very important to keep him so obsessed before death. Fortunately, the members of the scientific group gave an affirmative answer. This pager looks very old at first glance, but the technology in it doesn't look like that of our planet. Even more surprising is, a little girl in a red dress came over. If I'm not mistaken, this is sending a signal to the universe, and the signal fluctuates so strongly that it can at least fly out of a small half of the universe. A word fell. The people around were suddenly shocked. Where's the little girl talking? Is this a place where you can talk? Valeria Richards just folded her arms in this way, believing it or not, and turned around and left without giving her a good face. Compared with other people, Director Hill believed that the file information that can only be accessed by 9th level agents, the children of MR, Fantastic Reed were not normal human. Ji Duo Xing. That is the existence that will surpass Reed's IQ in the future. Soon, the genius members of the scientific team successfully cracked it and gave the answer. This is indeed a device that sends a signal to the universe. For a while, everyone was extremely shocked. Guess it. This is the blind cat ran into a dead mouse. Valeria Richards, who hadn't gone far, sneered, working with such a bunch of stupid guys, and didn't know when and when he could get revenge. At this time, a wonderful note came to mind. That being the case, you can build a device that sends a signal to the universe, not specifically to send it to a certain person, but to broadcast the coordinate position of the entire Earth to half of the universe. At that time, there will always be interstellar empires and cosmic gods coming. Ji Duoxing clenched his fists in depression. After the death of her parents, she would rather be buried with this planet. Just do it. Ji Duoxing immediately began to prepare the materials. In this moment, the N-51 base where they were located was over the east coast, and the figures wearing black steel suits broke through the air. Director Hill was ashamed after learning the news. That's not an ally. Obviously, the Stark Industrial Building has already been completely occupied by those mutants, but now it is starting to cruise the world. Iron Man is really dead. The American team Steve, who was unblocked from the ice, appeared in this base. He did not appear in the crusade against Suchun that day, but now he has become the backbone of many superheroes. He couldn't believe that his friend's son was killed in this way. Little Pepper Paws. He knows the relationship between the two. Missing unknown. Director Hill shook his head. Where is Jarvis the smart butler? No, never showed up again. At this time, the American team Steve suddenly felt an intuition that the cynical Iron Man Tony must still be alive. Are you sure you sent someone to excavate his body from the dirt in the pit? Yes, we did not rescue in time. Director Hill didn't know why the US team asked repeatedly. Hearing that, the US team Steve gritted his teeth, but didn't say much. At this time, even Director Hill's exquisite face also had a hint of thought. She suddenly thought of the Hydra that has made a comeback. One of the backbone scientists, Anim Zola, gave her a hint of inspiration. Isn't this guy? She suddenly understood what the US team was thinking about. Continents. In the central area, in a small rural town on the edge. The X-Men and its mutant students still live their lives here. Both Iceman and Quicksilver no longer mention the disappearance of Wolverine and others. Because of the horrible falsification of reality, many people have completely traced all traces of existence in the minds of many people. The information between each other is no longer equal, and it can only cause unnecessary disputes. Now how do we go on? A very real problem lingers in everyone's mind like this. In just one night, many more students from Xavier College of Genius had left secretly. A sad fact is that they went to defect to the #1 mutant. After a series of blows, and after losing Professor Charles and being hunted down, young people who had a complete epiphany had already realized that Professor Charles in the past might have gone the wrong way. They chose to go to the future leader. Can't stay here anymore. As surrender, those students will inevitably expose their position, seeking flowers, but the world is so big that they can only continue to be a mouse running around, avoiding the forces from the #1 mutant, but also avoiding hunting by some military. Surrender. Maybe the #1 mutant will treat them leniently. Find S.H.I.E.L.D. But the current S.H.I.E.L.D. Bureau seems to exist in name only. There is no way to go to the Earth, and this is their state at this time. Despair. At this moment, outside a forest road outside the village, a man in a striped medical gown came over from a distance. He was slow, just stepping on the branches of the forest road so unhurriedly. The clicking sound kept creaking, just like a playful little boy, stomping the branches back and forth. Where did the kid come from? Everyone was surprised. But at this time, an elderly mutant suddenly widened his eyes and cried out, "Wait, why did he come out of the mental hospital? Who is this? A madman? Is it necessary to be so shocked?" It's because the madman is too scared. Damn bastard. That's Professor X's son. Professor X has the most valuable brain in the world, but his son is a schizophrenic. If this is not enough to make him afraid, he is afraid that every split personality of this guy has the ability of a mutant. According to Professor X's guess, his hopeless son may have given birth to thousands, even tens of thousands of split personalities. In an instant, everyone's complexion suddenly became extremely horrified. When will the professor have a son? But at this time, a stern cold wind blew and suddenly, and the figure on the forest road in the distance appeared in front of them in the blink of an eye. The man with his childish expression just now looked like a different person, suddenly showing a cruel smile. Tell me, where did that bad old man go? When the words fell, the boundless Mori-lung killing intent filled the surroundings. For a time, all the X-Men were unable to move. Died. Your father is dead. Nonsense. The man in the hospital gown in front of him sneered. I clearly felt his disgusting breath. You told me that I was dead. I think you want to die. In an instant, the mutant who had just spoken was torn apart, blood gushing out. Mountain. No one wants to tell the truth. David Charles Halley in front of him said with a sneer, nicknamed the Big Group, or it's called the Legion, or the Army. Professor Charles's son may have inherited the extremely rare psychic powers of his father. He is an Omega mutant, but at the same time, he is also a super severe schizophrenia patient, with at least thousands of split personalities, and each of them has a certain ability. Strictly speaking, he has hundreds of Omega level abilities: astral projection, distortion of reality, pain transfer, super speed, ultrasound, and even mind control, etc. Even David himself didn't know how much he was capable. He has always been very well behaved, and he can even be said to be a bit tame in a mental hospital. But after feeling something unusual, he decided to step out and take a look at the world. Well, now you are not honestly telling me where that bad old man has gone. David sneered. At this moment, it is obvious that the person who dominates the personality is a cruel dark side killer. The extremely horrifying cold killing intent filled the surroundings, and the airflow around them couldn't help but become very slow. Every X-Men in front of him did not dare to take a big breath, for fear that it would cause the David in front of him to be unhappy. Just now, in addition to a man who was torn apart, another X-Men was directly stuffed into a tree out of thin air. The entire face, hands and feet were exposed on the surface of the tree, allowing everyone to felt terrified and frightened. Many of the X-Men who have experienced many battles even fought so hard that they did not dare to move. Even the Iceman dared not resist. Just when the killing intent was permeating and gradually turned into an abyss, it was about to swallow them. Why are my brothers so scared? At this time, David in front of him showed a look of childishness, and he spoke very childishly in his words. Personality changed? All the people present heaved a sigh of relief. Thank goodness. At this moment, the Iceman who reacted immediately swallowed his saliva and said boldly, You are not looking for your father? He is playing peekaboo with Su Chun, the #1 mutant. If you want to see him, go find him. Really? David jumped up with excitement. Really? You can find the #1 mutant just by searching the news. Go to the first city now, he must be there. The Iceman gritted his teeth and said with pain in his eyes, Let you, the #1 mutant, see what a true infinite ability is called, a terrifying monster with hundreds of Omega abilities in one. Thank you, brother, I will leave now. David looks extremely cheating. Obviously he looked like an adult, but when he left for a run, it was another child jumping around. Everyone felt extremely absurd, but they didn't dare to laugh at all, or even a slight smile. Thank God for being able to send this god of plague away, and to move eastward completely. Everyone looked at the Iceman in admiration. Correct. But at this moment, David, who was already drifting away between the forest roads, turned his head back again. He counted his fingers childishly and said, Geller said at least half of his life will be taken when he leaves, otherwise he won't let it out. What? The X-Men in the village only felt their scalp tingling. Geller. Needless to think about it. It is naturally one of the countless personalities in David's mind, and it is most likely the dark side personality who has just controlled his body. Everyone was stupid, and couldn't believe that there was such an outrageous request. Next second, when they were completely swallowed up by appalling fear and despair, a group of X-Men fled around, completely reluctant to produce a trace of resistance. Great, brothers are going to play peekaboo with me. David clapped his hands excitedly and began to chase after him, completing his half-life hunting action. At this time, in the Baxter Mansion in the downtown area of Manhattan, Su Chun and his sister Susan are reading Mr. Reed's research materials on parallel worlds. He stated that the world he lives in is main universe 616. In order to prove that his multiverse really exists, Mr. Reed even observed the existence of a single universe and named it the Ultimate Universe. A timeline has been going on for at least 10 years, a world where superhero organizations are extremely prosperous. In order to avoid causing trouble, MR, Fantastic Reed stopped observing. When Su Chun sighed, like a sponge, he started to absorb the knowledge crazily. MR, Fantastic Reed deserves to be called the #1 existence in the world. In addition to these information, he even learned that a stable space channel device had been transferred out by the enemy in time. And this time, despair. A young and beautiful tall lady came in. Dear King, we are in some trouble. Her name is Emma Grace Frost. A powerful mutant with telepathy and diamond form is also the backbone of the mutant who played an outstanding role in this annexation operation. Fanned by the butterfly effect. Naturally, everyone is not sure that she will inherit the post of Dean of Xavier College of Genius in the future, and Ms. Emma, who has entrusted Professor X's last wish, has already been put under the command of the #1 mutant. The Magneto does not want to be surrendered. The Mutant Brotherhood is still resisting our annexation. According to the plan, everyone is naturally to unite all mutants, take the lead in completing the annexation of mutant forces, and condense the mutant forces of the entire Earth into one. But now, Magneto, the boss of the Mutant Brotherhood, sneered and refused this request. He has a very tough attitude. Emma's delicate and flawless face showed a hint of displeasure. She didn't understand why the inadequate Magneto was still rebelling against the rule of the #1 mutant. I understand. Su Chun completely closed the book of materials. For more than a day, Magneto has been hiding in his stronghold with an attitude of not seeing the king. But even so, some members of the Brotherhood of Mutants began to flee, trying to head to the capital city. This made the aging Magneto feel extremely embarrassed. A teenager who hasn't finished junior high school wants to ride on his head. Others are shameless, and he wants to be old-fashioned. Anyhow, after so many years of hiring the world, Magneto will naturally not endure such a shame. On an island in the Atlantic Ocean, this is the force where the Mutant Brotherhood is stationed. At least 2 decades ago, the Brotherhood led by Magneto was still full of enthusiasm, interested in overturning the existing order of the world, breaking the shackles on the mutants, and crushing all discrimination and injustice. It's a pity that all the conspiracy that was launched is always blocked by his friend Professor Charles. The two former good brothers have turned against each other for so many years. Each became a stumbling block to each other. Why does this happen? This is determined by their natural birth status. Magneto spent most of his childhood in suffering concentration camps, and even killed his mother in order to force him to awaken his abilities. However, Professor Charles was born well, graduated from a prestigious school, and has inherited hundreds of millions of fortunes and the current manor building when he was young. How big is the difference in status between these two people? This is also destined to have a different way of getting along with each other when they grow up. A 12 feels the pain in the world, and his wife is separated when he grows up. He has been completely disappointed in society. Injustice and discrimination have bullied him for most of his life. A wealthy person is unwilling to break the existing order at all, and is willing to always act as a bridge between mutants and humans. This is the contradiction between the two all the time. Innate, unable to reconcile. But now, the already old Magneto saw a mutant star rising up, and successfully rose to the top with an out-of-control situation. He did it. He did everything he dreamed of. But he hates it too. Why is that person not himself? At this time, the Magneto, wearing a black robe and an iron helmet, looked at the formation coming from the island in front of him. I saw that under the ripples of space, Su-Chun led Emma in this way, and his many mutants shuttled through the space in this way. It's him. Oh my god, that's the mutant number 1. He actually came in person. Under the gaze of everyone, a crowd of mutants swarmed from all over the island. Everyone is very curious about Su-Chun, the number 1 mutant who looks at everything in the world and beats a lot of superheroes. After all, that is the savior of the entire race of mutants. So you came to commit suicide with me? Magneto said coldly. He just looked at the young man in a black sweater in front of him. He was slender and thin, with a handsome face. His indifferent and ruthless expression revealed an unkindness. Not in front of close people. Su-Chun still looks like this, indifferent and arrogant, and there is no mood swing in his eyes, which makes people feel extremely chilling. This is a ruthless person. After the first meeting, Magneto King Eric seemed to see the shadow of his own past. Recalling the experience of the other party's total blackening, he suddenly smiled. His smile became a little gloomy. God is really unfair to me. Why can you completely awaken and run away in the laboratory, but in my childhood in the concentration camp, I didn't have enough power to tear all the shackles? Hatred. He hates it. If in the dark time of childhood, he had enough power to successfully awaken and excavate greater power, not the weak magnetic field controlling power at the time, then I am afraid he can also rewrite history. If I had enough power in my childhood, then I would definitely save my mother. Magneto gritted his teeth and looked very bitter. He thought of those hateful guys who killed his mother in public in order to force his awakening abilities to stimulate his abilities. Damn beast. At that moment, he had already darkened and fell into the abyss, and at that moment he vowed to completely subvert everything in the world. But his strength was still too low at that time. As a result, he was constantly used by them like a bereaved dog. Hatred. I really hate it. Therefore, seeing Su-Chun who was able to walk out of the laboratory at such a young age and completely smash all injustices, Magneto suddenly became unbalanced in his heart. Old man, I'm not here to listen to your chatter. Su-Chun said coldly. Either surrender or die. He directly issued an ultimatum. Su-Chun doesn't care how much grudges the other party bears, and he doesn't care about the other party's past history. He is no longer the 13-year-old boy who was desperate in the past. His state of mind is completely falling into the abyss. After he has stepped into blackness, he will no longer show empathy, compassion, and sympathy for an outsider. Looking at the opponent's extremely indifferent face, Magneto continued to laugh for some reason. He is so satisfied. It is this ruthlessness, this scorn of all things, and only my domineering aura that can lead the mutants to go on. Rather than being like him, gradually acknowledging his old age, just shrinking on an island waiting for the judgment of fate. But he won't give in. Surrender. He can't do it. Very good. Magneto converged his smile. At this moment, a surging magnetic field surged in his body, and a vast momentum continued to rise from his body. He hasn't had a hearty battle for a long time. At the last moment of his life, he just wanted to be a real man, with the pride that Magneto should have, to face the number 1 mutant in front of him. Come and fight with me. Either you die or I live. If you die, it proves that you have no strength to continue to lead the mutants. Then death is not a shame. Certainly, if I die, all the members of the Mutant Brotherhood will completely surrender to you, and you will be their lord. Magneto's momentum is getting higher and higher. Just now, he was chattering like an old man in his twilight years, hating his own years. But now, the old meaning of his face has disappeared more and more, and the whole person reveals a strong meaning. At this time, the Magneto is back to the most powerful period in the past. If I die, promise me, young man, you must promise me. Don't shrink back. Don't be merciful. You must completely conquer the world, or even destroy it completely. As long as this is the case, they won't make a comeback. There is no retreat in your path. The horror hidden in the earth is beyond your imagination. Humph. This is from an old man's teaching to young people. Stop talking. Magneto's whole body fluctuated more and more vigorously, and the wanton surging magnetic fluctuations seemed to distort the surrounding light, forming a terrifying power. He shouted angrily, and the terrifying magnetic fluctuation turned into a shocking position and suddenly blasted towards the figure in front of him. The people who arrived were slightly surprised, but the figure standing in front of them is Su-Chun. Faced with such a vast momentum, Su-Chun didn't frown. He waved his hand directly, and a majestic wave of thought power shattered the position in front of him. Magneto roared, and the surrounding magnetic field fluctuations became more and more rippling. I saw iron water pipes buried under the ground directly out of the silt, and instantly plasticized into sharp thorns like a serpent, towards the figure of Su-Chun. It seems that you are really old. Su-Chun said coldly. He didn't see any movement, and the iron thorns roaring around seemed to be plunged into the mud, and it became more and more difficult to move in the air. Another thought fluctuation. These plasticized steel pipes broke instantly, completely collapsed under the weird fluctuations of reality, and turned into a handful of gray particles and dissipated in the air. Wow. The faces of the members of the Brotherhood who were looking around changed drastically. Sure enough, it's a well-deserved reputation. Is this the strength of the number 1 mutant? This is the first time everyone has seen Su-Chun's combat style up close. Facing the veteran mutant leader Magneto, the performance of this number 1 mutant was so plain that he didn't even take a step in the same place, so lightly dispelled all Magneto's offensive. Damn, Magneto had already felt at most a 30% chance of winning when the battle started. But now, the performance of the other party made his complexion even more embarrassing. Not to mention 30%. One thing do, maybe more for yourself. Smelly boy. Magneto became a little angry. He directly manipulated the opponent's body with a roar. You must know that there is iron in the human body. Although it is very small and very rare, Magneto, who has entered the microscopic level, can feel it. In a short moment, he can cause the enemy's stiffness and paralysis. With another angry rebuke, Magneto's right hand suddenly pulled back, and a metal building tens of meters high on the island was uprooted. Driven by the incomparable magnetic fluctuations, it blasted such a building towards Su-Chun in front of him. Whoosh! The vast building burst into the air, casting a shadow on the ground in an instant, completely covering the figures of Su-Chun and others. Magnetic King. The expressions of Emma and others changed. At this moment, they finally understood why Magneto was able to lead the mutants forward in the past. This hand is as easy as breathing, throwing architectural skills, which is simply breathtaking. Everyone panicked instinctively and ran away subconsciously. But when it was reflected that the person in front of him was the number 1 mutant, Emma and others were relieved that they knew what the number 1 mutant was. After a short period of stiffness, even less than half a second, Su-Chun, who has evolved infinitely, has acquired magnetic field resistance. Feeling the immense pressure from above, Su-Chun sneered and kicked his feet on the ground, and the whole figure flew into the air like this. Boom. With his relaxed punch, such a huge building exploded like this. Under the bombardment of this terrifying force, the wreckage of the building continued to be thrown down from the sky, like flowers and rain in the sky. But under a wave of invisible mental power fluctuations, the wreckage of these buildings that were thrown away wantonly, suddenly, and continuously shot at the Magneto on the ground like a cannonball. Boy, Magneto gritted his teeth, and the magnetic field fluctuations in his body continuously manipulated the flying building debris. But at this moment, the line of sight in his eyes suddenly flashed, and a terrifying killing intent hit his face like this, and Magneto realized that the opponent's figure had been volleyed and killed. Don't underestimate people. Magneto King Eric constantly strengthened his physique with magnetic fluctuations. In the blink of an eye, his body strength has surpassed the theoretical limit of the human body. His right hand was in front of him, and a light shield like a sanctuary was formed in front of him. This is a position that can isolate matter and energy. Through this position, he can even resist the threat from a nuclear explosion. But the figure killed in front of him had already completely walked out of the baptism of the nuclear explosion, and his tempered and unparalleled physique crashed into this stand barrier. Click. Under just one face, the barrier was full of cracks like glass. Less than half a second, the sanctuary supported by Magneto King's full strength was smashed head-on. Su Chen's figure blasted at him like this, with a bang. Just relying on a simple physical impact, it made him like a broken sandbag, like throwing away hundreds of meters away. That Magneto, oh my god. The complexions of the members of the Brotherhood of Mutants changed drastically, and they ran to the ground in the distance to meet the poor king. Under the attack of the overly young mutant number 1, the once out-of-the-art Magneto fell to the ground like a poor old man dying. Although I am in a relatively empty environment like an island, not a skyscraper in a city, so that the magnetic fluctuations did not cause much momentum and suffered a lot of environmental losses. However, feeling the opponent's understatement and ease of action, everyone knew that Magneto might not have any chance of winning. Even the personnel brought by the other party did not have much fear and panic when the building was blasted down just now. Good Zhao, this is undoubtedly the trust in the young king. The winner has already been decided. The new and old generations of kings have been completed in this way. This is the handover of the times. Our king will finish the spear for the rest of the road. Emma Frost said as a pious fangirl looked forward to. Even though she is 7 years older than the other party, but behind Su Chun, she has completely ignored the other party's age. This is a trustworthy man and the king of mutants. Despair. The sound of footsteps resounded so clearly on the ground, and Su Chen's figure slowly walked towards the fallen body of Magneto. There are brothers who want to interfere, but they are shocked by his aura, but they dare not move. At last, but there was a woman flying in from the sky. She said very nervously, "Let him go and let him take care of his retirement. I am willing to be loyal to you." The figure flying from the sky is surrounded by red waves. A red windbreaker, coupled with a fire-like red waste, is the image of an imperial sister, Wanda. When the members of the Brotherhood all around saw the visitor, their complexions suddenly changed. Everyone obviously knew this woman. After all, this is the daughter of Magneto, Wanda known as the Scarlet Witch. Let him go. Wanda glanced at the figure lying down on the ground, already completely unconscious, his expression a little unnatural and unbearable. A magnificent magnet king, the mutant leader was so bloody and completely stunned. The violent injury also completely dissipated the magnetic fluctuations in his body, so that his face once again glowed with a sense of oldness. Magneto is old. Obviously, he couldn't stand such a fierce blow. If it weren't for a breath, he would be judged dead by Wanda. After seeing the person who came, Emma's complexion changed, and she immediately reminded, "This is the Scarlet Witch." According to the assessment, this woman's mutant strength is at least Omega level. She didn't remind Su Chun to be careful, but it was indeed a good thing to signal that this woman was willing to fall under his command. Su Chun raised his brow slightly because he felt a familiar wave from the woman with red waist-long hair in front of him. That is the weird energy fluctuation that interferes with reality. This woman can also distort reality and tamper with everything. This was the first time he met other people who had the ability to rewrite reality. Good. There was a hint of interest in Su Chen's black and white eyes. Prove your worth. This is not enough if you want to successfully cast your name. Wanda the Scarlet Witch pondered for a while, and after taking a deep breath, a terrifying force of interference acted upon reality. She was born with an Omega-level ability to modify probability, coupled with the chaos magic that she was given. The Scarlet Witch has since been able to rewrite reality under the violent mood swings. Outside the island, everyone can immediately see a wave rising like a city wall. Tsunami. If there is a 1% probability that this island will encounter a tsunami this season, then the Scarlet Witch interferes with reality in this way, forcibly distorting the invisible value, reaching 100%. In this way, she changed the tidal law and called a rare tsunami to this island. This scene is enough to demonstrate her strength. Su Chen was very satisfied with this. Amidst the panic of the people on the island, he waved his hand casually, and another wave of interference in reality rippled around. Boom. Far away, it seemed like a wave swept by thousands of horses, and it collapsed like this. The aircraft carrier, supported by 4 anti-gravity engines, gallops through the air in this way. Su Chen's figure just descended here. Many backbone members of mutants also began to gather on this aircraft carrier. Su Chen, who has gathered a large number of mutants in a short period of time, needs a formal organization name and action plan at this moment to command more and more subordinates. Utopia. This is the name of the power set by Su Chen. As for its elite backbone, under Emma's suggestion, define their respective code names and positions in the way that Hellfire Club used to play chess in the past. Bishop, a clone. Chariot, red tank. Knight, electronics. Queen Emma. There are 2 groups of black and white, with a total of 32 chess pieces, in order to commend the members who will be outstanding in the next battle. Under the confusion, it can even be said that the butterfly effect, and even under the correction of the timeline in the dark, Emma thus won the title of White Queen. As for the only king title, it naturally refers to Su Chen. Of course, it is called King outside. Everyone also uses a Supreme to respectfully call the King of Mutants. As for the other structures of the Utopia organization, it will be specifically improved by professionals. Supreme, we have found a lot of superheroes in S.H.I.E.L.D. Agents' activities on the West Coast. It's like mutants have been gathering on the East Coast. On the West Coast, a large number of superheroes appeared, and under the guidance of the Council and S.H.I.E.L.D., they began to restructure new forces. It is said to be called the West Coast Avenger. Humph. The Avengers have only just been established, and they died like this. Are you embarrassed to continue to reorganize it now? Everyone looked a little disdainful and a little angry. The other party is determined to use the name of the Avengers. Isn't the natural object of revenge is themselves? This is an unforgivable thing, and it is also a bright and provocative act. A major discovery is that there is a crippled file of Sentry Robot in the information that was deciphered not long ago. There is evidence that this is a robot designed to exterminate all mutants. Follow the description of mutant electronics. Everyone immediately realized that the Sentry Robot could actually imitate the mutant's ability to fight against the mutants. This is a horrible existence that has been transformed by using the gene of the witch-like girl and the replication ability of the Rakshasa girl. At least tens of thousands of mutant human X genes that the military has mastered can add various capabilities to the Sentry Robot. Everyone looked very embarrassed. Such a highly intelligent Sentry Robot can replicate the ability to restrain mutants, which is simply disgusting. So it is. Su Chen looked indifferent after listening to it. He heard how these Sentry Robots fight with him are somewhat similar. It's just that the opponent restrains the enemy by copying the ability. Once the Sentry Robot has formed a scale, coupled with the huge X gene library, we will definitely lose out. Emma gritted her teeth. Not to mention, the reason why the other party has such a huge X gene pool is obtained from the live anatomy of our mutants. Hear the words. Even Su Chen's brows wrinkled slightly, and he thought of the scalpel raised by the doctor in white in the laboratory very unhappy. Also, since S.H.I.E.L.D. is still dying to resist, then I don't mind raising the West Coast to the ground. Start to conquer the world now. The disclosure of the Sentry Robot's plan immediately made all mutants suddenly vigilant. For a time, a group of elite backbones were transferred and began to rush to the West Coast. Whoosh. In the completely occupied Stark Industrial Group, there are frames of steel suits that continue to be produced in batches of assembly lines. Soon, quite a few people just wore marked steel suits, and apart from rushing to the front line, it was to maintain the sphere of influence of the capital city of Yorkton. When cracking the central computer of the Stark work group, Mutant Electronics also discovered a key problem. That is, artificial intelligence Jarvis has disappeared, and he also learned the rudiment of a plan. That is Tony's attempt to build a steel army that covers the world in order to maintain world peace. The artificial intelligence responsible for leading this plan needs to be recultivation and incubation. According to Tony's preliminary vision, this artificial intelligence can update its program according to the characteristics of the opponent and evolve a method of restraining the opponent. Is it a familiar sight? The mutant screamed electronically and instantly knew that Tony had gotten inspiration from Supreme. Are you sure you found Tony Stark's body? Yes, it's all rotten. That world-famous pit has almost become the ruins of Utopia, symbolizing the new life and future of mutants. Some of the bodies buried inside have naturally been excavated. Tony Stark, who was covered in torn armor, was already dead. Why should he ask so solemnly? Damn it. Mutant Electronics had a solemn face, gritted his teeth, and said, Tony may not be dead. Everyone must be careful. How is this possible? Everyone has seen the corpse. Can it be possible that an ordinary person on the other side can be reborn in Nirvana? You don't understand. Upload the consciousness network and combine your own brain waves to generate intelligent artificial intelligence. Tony is very likely to rejuvenate with this. As knowing the use of all electronic devices, the mutant electronic nemesis can be said with certainty, because this is a lesson learned. In the cracked shield computer network, there is a record of a past scientist Adam Zola uploading his consciousness on a network after his death. Since this guy can do it, Tony Stark must have a backhand once he figured it out. Then how do we find each other? Everyone naturally admires this electronics who worked on cracking a large number of devices and was promoted to the White Knight, and there is no doubt that there is him. Don't worry about these. I will try to find traces of their existence on the internet. Mutant Electronic gritted his teeth. If he guessed correctly, Tony Stark must be hiding somewhere, preparing to cast a brand new body. What? At this time, the Mutant Electronics frowned and said, there were many mutants killed in the riverside streets of Yorkton. Go and see what happened. He mobilized surveillance and gradually caught a man in a hospital gown and killed him everywhere in the street. And the horror of death was extremely tragic. Damn it, what a monster this is. Yorkton City. On the banks of the Hudson River and the riverside streets that meander across the city, a man in a hospital gown has just so unscrupulously killed his compatriots. Sorry, if I don't kill you, Geller won't let me out. A big man pretended to be awkward and yelled in a child's voice. Looking at the shattered figure beside him, the mutants who rushed in front of him only felt his horror. Help me. What's even more shocking is that the hospital gown in front of me was actually holding a toy in the hands of the other person. It yelled in the opponent's hand and struggled happily. But that is not a toy at all. But a steel battle suit that was alive in the air, together with the pilot in it, was completely reduced by this terrifying guy and turned into a toy in his hand. It's so fun, so fun. The man in the hospital gown held up the toy in his hand and kept shaking. Seeing the diminishing figure struggling in the palm of his hand, he laughed completely brilliantly, just like a big innocent boy. What? Seeking flowers? He suddenly yelled. Click. However, his right hand was a little stronger, and the toy in his hand was squeezed into the palm of his hand. Blood came out of the gaps in the small armor. David threw it out disgustingly and wiped his blood-stained right hand on his striped gown. Not good. Uncle Geller, does this count as killing a person or not? David's innocent face suddenly became tangled. Do not care. He gestured his fingers, pointed at the figure in front of him, and said, kill you all. It's enough to make up. A terrible killing intent permeated the streets of the river in this way, and even the warm wind from the river could not be completely blown away. So, I'm here, so hurry up and hide. David was jumping around and was a mentally ill person, but everyone couldn't laugh out loud, because the man who smiled the happiest just now blended into the stone tablet, and his head and two hands were exposed, and his death was tragic. A mutant was constantly running out by moving fast, but a terrifying force turned him into an ant-like body, making him gallop extremely slow, and then he was trampled to death on the ground by David. Before the other mutant uttered a panic cry, a stream of blood spewed from the 5 orifices, and his head was inexplicably embedded in his stomach. David began to show off his artistic talents. Jump and jump, so happy. Is it fun? At this time, a cold word came from not far behind him, and a man in a black sweater walked out of the ripples in the space. What? It seems to smell like an old man. David suddenly stopped beating and turned around, looking curiously at Su Chun, who had suddenly come. He sniffed his nose and sighed secretly. You killed the old man? No, it's clear that the old man is not dead, and his thoughts are still fluctuating. It's really weird. But, in the next second, his cheerful face suddenly became serious. I was going to play peekaboo with the old man. You should return it to me soon. Sean. The ruthless words just fell. The childish-looking boy in the hospital gown suddenly changed, and his expression suddenly became extremely cruel. Personality switches naturally. Dark-faced personality. Geller made his debut. He moved his nose slightly, and for a while, the dead souls and consciousness around him turned into a plume of blue smoke and was sucked into his body. This is also an ability of David Charles Holler. He can take the initiative to absorb the consciousness and abilities of other people to generate new abilities in his body. But even if he does not absorb the consciousness of others, a new personality will automatically be born in David's own mind. Every personality is a new ability. This also means that David himself is adding new superpowers all the time, and there is no limit at all. So the interesting place is here. Su Chun in front of him is a person with infinite evolution ability. He is constantly changing and evolving. The David in front of him is infinitely capable. Infinite evolution versus infinite ability. Humph. Die to me. David took the lead. Suddenly, the earth suddenly cracked and turned into countless mud. The river on the side suddenly rolled up, turning into streams of water rushing. At this moment, the natural element seems to be reduced to the weapon of the monster in front of him. Su Chun, who was under attack, was still indifferent and calm. His cold eyes looked at the person in front of him like this. He could feel the elemental fluctuations in the weather, and for an instant, a wave of energy lingered in his body. Do not forget, he can absorb and release any form of energy from the outside world. For a time, the earth element and water element were all pulled away, turned into pure energy, and poured into the body. The water dragon collapsed, and the tumbling mud couldn't continue to flow. Su Chun raised his right hand, and the tip of his index finger turned the swallowed elemental energy into a pure light beam, and then pierced the air. Whoosh! The harsh whistling sound cut through the air like this. The beam of light came so quickly that it penetrated a blurry afterimage. In an instant, David, who was moving instantaneously, appeared beside Su Chun. He sneered, raised his right hand, turned into a hand knife, and slashed away like this. Too slow. Su Chun said coldly. His icy eyes have extraordinary dynamic vision abilities, which are specially used to capture figures with ultra-high speed. Click. Not to mention, Su Chun, who has an excellent body, came first, and his right hand held David's wrist in this way. With a click, Su Chun squeezed his wrist like a ball of mud without mercy. Subsequently, he grabbed his wrist even more, just like throwing a piece of rubbish, throwing it out mercilessly. Whoosh! David's poor body was like a tattered doll, cutting through the asphalt on the riverside street all the way, smashing several buildings behind one after another. Ha ha ha, enjoyable. It didn't even take a breath. In the ruins, a deformed monster like a creeping species crawled out of the smoke. David's limbs were extremely twisted. Obviously, the injury just now was enough to severely damage him, completely displacing his whole body's bones, and even his head was about to fall from his neck. But with the sound of frying beans, this deformed monster suddenly turned over and turned into a normal human body again. The cuts and bruises all over his body healed so quickly. Yes, no wonder I can teach the old man a lesson. David was very satisfied. Then, he began to whisper grinningly. Hey, Hello, wake up all for me. Look at the family members we are about to welcome. For a time, the aura of his body is getting higher and higher. The surging majestic power is getting thicker, and the aura of the whole person is getting thicker and thicker. In the blink of an eye, he has undergone earth-shaking changes. Interesting. Suchin raised his eyebrows. If you just look at it with your eyes, you can't get an insight into what happened to the other party. However, from the spiritual perception involving the spiritual level, I suddenly found that the other party's body was surrounded by demonic souls. They surrounded David and opened a grinning smile at Suchin himself. At this moment, he finally realized what the other's family members meant. Feelings are about killing oneself and annexing one's soul and consciousness. Die. David suddenly launched a fierce attack at this moment. There was a sudden violent tremor in the air, and a burning meteorite was summoned out of thin air. The earth trembled even more, and the previous elemental fluctuations swept once again. The storm turned into a fierce blade storm that swept Suchin's body. The destruction of ultrasound. Terrible mental attack. Mind fluctuations. Even the real space began to distort and collapse. This moment, David launched hundreds of attacks on his own. Do everything with one heart and one mind. The attacks were carried out one after another at the same time, without any ventilation at all. Yes, at this moment, he alone is a legion. This is why he is called the Great Group, the Legion, and even the Army. Boom. Surging attacks followed one after another. Suchin's lingering energy fluctuations became more and more violent, and the whales swallowed the energy around him. Boom. The thought power fluctuation that bloomed in his mind turned into an air cannon, and a meteorite from the sky was blasted to pieces out of thin air. Meteor fire rain suddenly sprinkled from the sky, like a firework feast. Suchin's figure is so alone under the constant fluctuations in his ability to attack frequently. At this moment, his genes are constantly changing, and restrained resistance is continuously generated from external stimuli at a rapid pace. Spirit resistance, plus 50. Energy devour, plus 100. Body strength, plus 100. In order to cope with too frequent energy waves, and even to further accelerate the speed of swallowing, even the internal structure of the body began to undergo some transformation. Suchin just slammed on the ground, abruptly smashing the energy fluctuations and hitting the figure in front of him with a punch. At this time, he can feel that reality is beginning to be distorted, as if someone is trying to fix the probability of hitting, but it is a pity that David, a single Omega-class reality modification ability, is obviously not as good as Suchin. He should never use this trick. Boom. Suchin's punch still hit the red heart, smashing his face completely like a tattered watermelon. Humph. With a dull laugh, David used another Omega-class ability, Damage Transfer. This conceptual ability actually transferred the injuries caused by Suchin to a stray dog. Boom. The stray dog headshot and died instantly. Come on, let me see if you are strong or I am strong. Be obedient, and be one of us obediently. Buildings collapsed one after another. The water of the river meandering around the city evaporated completely under the strange heat. No one dared to imagine that the scene of the battle between the two was so exaggerated. Oh my god, who is that? You can set off such a huge offensive by yourself. It's like a person is a legion. Too terrifying. It's hard for everyone to imagine that one person can trigger hundreds of energy fluctuations at the same time. Is this multitasking? This is one-minded one. The Supreme will be fine, right? It's hard to say. That guy is too cruel. Many mutants looked horrified, and the aftermath of the fighting almost flattened houses on many streets. The ground broke apart, as if it were an earthquake, and the cracks that appeared on the ground even spread to most of the city. What's even more exaggerated is that a meteorite exploded in the air just now, and it sprinkled the fire and rain, completely smashing through the roofs of a city. And the instigator of all this is the strange man in a hospital gown, who escaped from the mental hospital alive. Nonsense. Don't show up the ambition of others. Supreme will not lose. Seeing everyone's confidence began to waver, a mutant couldn't help but blurt out cursing. Boom. It's too late to say, then it's fast. There was another loud noise in the distance. David attacked again. The Eanbird's laughter kept coming out of his mouth, as cold as a night owl. At this moment, more and more personality and consciousness appeared in his mind. Oh my god. At this moment, the White Queen Emma, who was far away, could also see demonic ghosts lingering all over the enemy, as if they were surrounded by ghosts. Every incarnation of personality stared at the Suchin in the fierce battle in front of him. It is conceivable that under this kind of incomparable gaze, just a glance will make you feel extremely creepy, and the spirit will usher in an extremely tingling pain. But even so, Suchin is like an okay person, just like a dancer dancing on the tip of a knife. He is so easy to calm down under hundreds of attacks. The slender and thin figure lingers with light fluctuations, but until now, the opponent's attack has not penetrated the thin energy light film, and a black sweater even did not stain a trace of dust under the incentive battle just now. Damn kid, die to me. David roared. He really couldn't bear the calm and composure of the other party, a calm face in his grasp. He suppressed the previous frenzied bombing, knowing that it was meaningless to send energy to the opponent. This moment, he changed his strategy. Attempt to kill it with one blow. Multiple Omega-level abilities continue to emerge. The space completely solidified in a moment. The flow rate of air molecules also stagnates. The exploding fireworks stopped in full bloom. The water droplets hovered in the air and stopped moving, and everything came to a halt at this moment. It's like a movie that is playing completely presses the pause button. Stop. Come on. Plunge into the arms of our family. David sneered. The personality in his mind is constantly making different sounds. Welcome, cute boy. I like him. Let him come soon. It was chaotic and noisy, but David had long been accustomed to the sounds of his family. The more lively the better. This will have the taste of home. His figure flew out instantly and came directly in front of Suchin. David didn't have much at all. He directly illusioned with one hand, trying to penetrate the solid shell of the opponent in this imaginary state, and directly squeezed the opponent's hard shell with one hand. Heart. David grinned grimly. His eyes were full of madness, and the excitement made his throat tremble constantly, and he knew that he was about to acquire the other's consciousness and soul. But at this time, a warning sign rose from the body's instinct. Instinct told him to shrink. What's the situation? David's mind trembled, hesitating between instinct and craving. Not good. Less than a moment. The various personalities in his mind screamed. Run fast. Suchin, who was stopped at this moment, turned a pair of eyes and stared at the approaching figure. Wrong. It was obvious that the molecular velocity around him was completely frozen, and time still stopped moving. But Suchin, who was in front of him, broke the routine like this, suddenly stretched out his hand and squeezed his fist and slammed his fist to the opposite side. David, with his various personalities constantly screaming at his head, frowned, and his body was completely virtualized in time. But the punch completely pierced a layer of air. David sneered, never flinching anymore. He wants to get each other. Since then, his other arm that was faintly imagining stretched out towards the opponent, and it was completely materialized when it was about to penetrate into his body, so as to avoid squeezing the opponent's internal organs. Whoosh. But at this time, within this reachable distance of each other, Suchin's other hand still stretched out, trying to grab the other's wrist. Click. This time, it actually worked. Not good. David was shocked. The first and second attacks took less than half a second, and the last fist was completely empty. But the next time, Suchin's other hand just held the opponent's illusory arm. Molecular mimicry. I will too. Suchin sneered, just like fishing for a fish in a river, setting off waves of ripples like water ripples, completely salvaging him from the weird state. Then, another punch blasted out, directly blasting towards the opponent's body. It's useless. An idea just came to David's mind. Boom. In front of his body, blood mist burst out, and his figure blasted into the ruins far away like a cannonball. This time, the conceptual ability of damage transfer has ceased. He couldn't turn on the body of the opponent who was close, nor could he turn to other places. Damn, this must be something wrong. He lay down on the ground. His twisted body began to heal superbly. Fool. It's resistance. The opponent's body has targeted resistance. Yes, remember what happened to shitting just now. Rows of noisy words kept popping up, and David's eyes reddened, and he finally realized that the opponent had indeed drew nourishment from the battle and completed the transformation. Otherwise, it will not be restricted by the time stop. Damn, if I attack faster. Do not. It's not that I'm slow. It's that the speed of the opponent's evolution is too fast. One more time. I remember that I swallowed up a little devil called amplification not long ago. Who is it? Come forward to me quickly. David immediately began to collect abilities. With so many abilities and so many personalities, it took a lot of time to find out that coward. But at this time, Suchun in front of him had already shuttled there, not giving him a chance to get up, and suddenly stepped on his waist, completely stomping off his waist, and there was even a terrifying pit on the ground. Step on whatever you want. But this David didn't care at all. He vomited blood and made faces at Suchun in a crazy way. The broken wounds healed quickly at a speed visible to the human eye. David is too lazy to say anything. He doesn't care about the injury. After all, he has become a mass of blood and can be merged and reorganized. But at this time, Suchun stopped attacking with a sneer on his face, and a cold chill flashed in his eyes. His right hand just grabbed the other person's head. David showed you a casual look. Anyway, you hit and scolded. He, a mentally ill patient, didn't care at all, and he even burst into laughter. But the next second, do not. There was a trace of badness in his heart. David suddenly yelled, and his whole body began to struggle as hard as possible. Because at this time, Suchun's right hand was actually pulled out of the opponent's head, and a smoky soul emerged. It was an external consciousness that David had devoured. Among them is the ability of injury transfer. Just when this consciousness was completely removed, David's body suddenly lost this Omega class ability. No wonder he was so resistant at this moment. A ball of fireworks appeared in Suchun's hand, burning the soul that had been drawn away completely, and did not give the other party a chance to absorb it again. Asshole. Whoosh. He directly shuttled through the space, trying to escape Suchun's attack. But in less than a second, Suchun's eyes had insight into the changes in space, and appeared directly beside him like a god predicting. What? David was taken aback and tried to escape again. But before his body was completely saturated by the spatial ripples, Suchun's neck was grasped by Suchun, and he was lifted out of it like a poultry. Didn't you say it was so happy just now? Suchun said blankly. He scratched his right hand again, and raised multiple personality consciousness from his head at once. Some of his imprisoned personalities were very grateful for Suchun's actions, while other self-generated personality consciousness cursed Suchun like a ghost screaming. Suchun can naturally hear the abuse involving the spirit. He sneered, and fireworks burst out and burned clean. Come, show me how many healing abilities you have. His calm words heard in David's ears like death urging his life. He didn't even know why the other party was able to restrain himself so much. How could he produce such a vicious withdrawal method? Damn bastard. David looked worried. To this end, even continuing to worry, the personality consciousness of the majors began to struggle. Time stopped again. Reality is distorted by this. The space even collapsed to form a collapsed black hole. But a series of superconceptual abilities didn't work for this guy at all. In the surrounding environment where the time stopped, Suchun just walked in such a leisurely manner and kept walking forward. Name, Suchun. Race, human. System, gene information feedback system. The protagonist creates. The non-system chooses the protagonist, but the protagonist creates the system. Characteristics, immortal physique. Even when turned into a granule cell, it can quickly heal and regenerate. By the end of chapter 80, this ability has evolved to immortality and cannot be obliterated. Infinitely evolving genes. Genes are evolving all the time. Any external stimulus can promote gene transformation and generate targeted restrainability. Using ability will also promote ability evolution. Ability 1. Read motivation. Laboratory awakening broke out. 2. Rewrite reality. Can interfere with reality, tamper with reality, increase probability, laboratory awakening and bursting birth. 3. The body of unparalleled steel, nuclear explosion, close combat, and even continuous refinement and evolution in the Hulk battle. 4. Energy absorption and utilization, capable of being born during a nuclear explosion. 5. The eye of insight, seeing the gaps and cracks of the spatial structure, the awakening ability to deal with the enemies of space teleportation. Read more at wuxiax.com. 6. Laser, hot sight, new ability to deal with laser eye awakening. 6. Mind barrier and mind system ability, to deal with Professor Charles and the mind system ability of the awakening of the Black Phoenix. 6. Magic resistance, to deal with the awakening of Kamatage Mage. 7. Divine resistance, awakens when dealing with Thor and Asgard. 8. Time resistance, cannot be stopped by time. 9. Time retrospect, passive, to deal with Wolverine that reverses the future. 10. To be added, if any omissions can be reminded in the common area. Interpersonal relationship, younger sister Susan, friend superkiller. Organization established, Utopia. Elite backbone, members named after chess pieces. Men, Red Tank, Doppelganger, Mutant Electronic, Emma the White Queen, Wanda the Scarlet Witch. Sphere of influence, East Coast, the capital city Yurton. Possessing science and technology, a shield aircraft carrier, a steel legion built by Mark Armor, and some technological information left by MR. Fantastic read. This, the Supreme has won. That guy was hurt so badly just now. I was wrong. I dared to question the strength of the Mutant King just now. There's a lot of discussion about the variants that watched the battle from a distance. The situation turned abruptly. Who could have imagined that a mental patient who could perform hundreds of miracles by a single person with a wave of offensive just now was beaten to the point of crying and crying? It was not an opponent at all. Do not. David cried out in pain. Suchun, who walked safely from time to time, grabbed the opponent's body again and pulled out a bunch of conscious personality from his mind again with one hand. Compared to the last time, this time, dozens of conscious personalities were picked up by Suchun. Once more exaggerated. Under Suchun's unparalleled evolutionary genes, every opponent caught in a protracted battle will find himself reduced to a frog in warm water. A variety of abilities will only prompt Suchun to make up for more shortcomings and evolve more restraint methods. It takes at least tens of millions of years for natural animals to evolve, but Suchun's evolutionary time has compressed this extremely long time to the extreme. That's why Professor Charles marveled as a super Darwin physique. At least this bug-like ability was stopped by Suchun in a short moment, and he was able to move at will in the domain where the molecular flow rate completely stagnated. While the opponent was struggling to death, with more delays in fighting, Suchun's infinite evolutionary genes have transformed into more targeted restraint methods. Soul plus 200. Soul plus 200. The consciousness that David swallowed outside, and even his self-derived personality were all grasped by Suchun. Soon, he lost all his healing ability, like a bereaved dog, covered in blood, just fell to his knees on the ground and screamed in pain. Asshole. The dark side personality that has always been dominating is still screaming. But Suchun has no patience to give to each other. Click. He suddenly stepped on his foot, slamming the opponent's head fiercely. Suchun didn't bother to care about what was left of the opponent's abilities. Despair. He snapped his fingers. The fluctuations that interfered with reality then turned into a ruthless force of obliteration, completely obliterating his existence. Infinite ability versus infinite evolution. Obviously, David was completely defeated. Congratulations to Supreme. The tall figure of Emma, the White Queen, was the first to walk up. For the title of Supreme, everyone began to get acquainted with each other consciously. This is the son of Professor Charles, a true schizophrenic. According to his perception and judgment, Professor Charles is not dead. Suchun said coldly. This, Emma, the White Queen, naturally heard about the Supreme's uproar at Xavier College of Genius. Professor Charles, the master of the soul, died. But not dead? Improbable. At least the students who rushed to the academy were sure that Professor Charles was dead, and his body was completely annihilated and dissipated by the Black Phoenix that was out of control. Suddenly, as a psychic person inferior to Professor Charles, Emma the White Queen suddenly understood how the other party survived. Birth weight. People with strong mind system ability can indeed make their own consciousness parasitize other people's bodies. This doesn't sound like what Professor Charles would do. Just facing the hope of rebirth, can the benevolent and peaceful Charles only refuse at the last minute? I will let people pay attention. Emma, the White Queen, suddenly left an eye on her. Suchin didn't care much. After all, a former subordinate was defeated. Okay, get ready to go. The arrival of David the Infinite Power is just an episode. According to the original plan, the mutants under the Utopian camp will attack across a continent and attack an island called Alcatraz on the west coast. Worthington Pharmaceuticals. This biopharmaceutical company produces a drug that can completely inhibit the mutant X gene. As long as it is hit by an injection, the mutant can be completely incapacitated within a few seconds. Mutant electronics words are really surprising. Permanent failure? The newly joined Scarlet, which Wanda frowned. Not necessarily. There are not enough samples. But according to my scientific and rigorous probability estimation, the approximate duration may be at least several months. This sentence completely changed the complexion of the mutants around. This is fatal. The drug effect is much stronger than the inhibitory drugs that have appeared in the past. Damn bastard. It's the Sentry robot. It's the X gene suppression potion. How much do these humans have? And the son of General Stryker, Jason Stryker. After the Avatar said, he glanced at Su-Chun in the first seat. After all, General Stryker, who was annihilated by the catastrophe fluctuations, was a supreme enemy. And Jason Stryker is the famous illusion master. He has been manipulated by his father in the past, and his ability even prevents Professor Charles from getting rid of the illusion. Not to mention, some of the substances extracted from his brain can make mutants become subordinates who listen to words. There is evidence that the master of illusion was also secretly gathered by SHIELD Bureau. The trace is unknown so far. No matter how, Worthington Pharmaceuticals, which has been thoroughly discovered the secret conspiracy, must take the lead in uprooting in order to deter the increasingly rampant anti-mutant forces. Alcatraz. In the past, this cell was used to hold heavy prisoners. After more than a decade of being abandoned, it was successfully bought by Worthington Pharmaceuticals. Before this, President Worthington even threatened to treat every mutant's disease and let them return to normal lives. Yes, many mutants who suffer from discrimination and social injustice also think that they are ill. After all, some mutants have physical defects, such as witches, nightcrawlers, and so on. There are also abilities defects, mutants who cannot close and open their own abilities as they like. For example, the laser eye is a typical example. It cannot close by itself and can only rely on tactical eyepieces. There are also Rockshaw girls who can't make contact with people's normal skin. Of course, more people who went to treatment in the past were just to avoid being discriminated against and not to be oppressed by unfair society. Mutant's X gene is not a disease. You don't need treatment at all. At this moment, an aircraft carrier suspended high in the sky just released its invisibility, and a black shadow completely enveloped Alcatraz Island. This, oh my god, isn't that an aircraft carrier from SHIELD? All personnel of Worthington Pharmaceutical Group on Alcatraz Island suddenly felt extremely confused. But soon, they all realized that the current SHIELD Bureau has long existed in name only, and the aircraft carrier has been completely divided by the mutant forces and the Hydra forces. Damn it, it's an enemy attack. This moment, they suddenly realized something was wrong. That black shadow shrouded in this way, and the falling sun's rays were completely obscured by this huge sky aircraft carrier. Click. At the bottom of the aircraft carrier, a turret stretched out like this, and the terrifying muzzle was tilted at an angle, aimed at all the defense facilities outside Alcatraz Island. To count the details, the exposed barrels alone are more than hundreds. No one thought that the utopian mutant forces were so rampant, and the aircraft carrier that came directly began to bombard. Every muzzle began to brew light, and the cosmic energy extracted from the cosmic cube was continuously ejected under the panic cry of the people below. Boom. The dazzling light beam just started bombing. Under the brilliant beam of light, all the defensive facilities outside Worthington's headquarters building, and even a ship in the sea area, completely exploded under the bombardment of light, turning into orange-red flames. The island itself has been bombarded, and it continues to crumble. Just the first round of bombing completely disintegrated all the defense systems built before the entire Alcatraz Island. Since they want to promote mutants as a disease and want to destroy our X gene ability, let them be completely annihilated in history. Emma the White Queen said indifferently, Alcatraz Island used to be an island prison for serious prisoners. The establishment of such a pharmaceutical industry base in such a place is undoubtedly a great ironic metaphor for mutants. After the birth of the number one mutant, the mutants who went to Worthington Pharmaceutical Group for treatment began to flee. After all, they initially just wanted to treat discrimination and injustice. Now the mutants have finally risen and finally stood up from their oppressed position, and everyone suddenly realized that they were not sick at all. However, in order to continue to study the X genes of these mutants, Worthington Pharmaceuticals still forcibly detained them. Now, it is time for utopian forces to come to the rescue. Whoosh! A Harrier fighter continued to accelerate from the deck of the aircraft carrier, and in the blink of an eye, it took off, transporting batches of mutant troops to the ground. It's over, it's over. The personnel of Worthington Pharmaceuticals did not expect that the defense system that was sufficient to deal with Magneto would be completely dismantled in such an instant. Don't want to be rampant. At this moment, a roar resounded like thunder in the sky. Under this terrifying sound wave, I saw a body that was at least a few hundred feet high suddenly standing in the sky and the earth. When his entire face was approaching the aircraft carrier that was in the air, it almost shocked the people on the deck. What is this? This giant is too big. Everyone's vision was completely occupied by his face. Oh, the faint breath from the tip of his nose faintly turned into a hurricane, sweeping directly to the entire aircraft carrier deck, making it difficult to stand. Sink it for me. The giant who came suddenly roared, and the sound seemed to turn into thunder again and rang into the mutant's ears. Whoosh! His stretched arms directly produced a sonic boom when it pierced the air. A Harrier fighter could not avoid it, and was directly hit by the thick arm. If the giant hand that obscures the sky and the sun slaps against the entire aircraft carrier, it may sink in an instant. Not good. Emma, the White Queen, was shocked, and her appalling spiritual fluctuations spewed out, trying to disrupt the spiritual realm of the giant. Don't think about it. Wanda was also shocked, and immediately used his own chaotic magic power in surprise. But the giant in front of him just shook his head in pain, his emotions getting more and more irritable. The palm of the chopping hand still came towards the sky aircraft carrier. Under the wave of Wanda's red magic power, it was only slightly blocked, and it tore through the obstacles and continued to attack unimpeded. The Hong Tanku on the deck stared and yelled at the sky. He was very helpless, but he couldn't reach the opponent's body at all. Seeking flowers, compared to the opponent, he is as small as an ant. Just when the opponent's arm covering the sky with a black shadow, wrapped in a majestic force, was about to sink the entire aircraft carrier. The giant Goliath suddenly felt that his arm had encountered some obstacles, and he couldn't make any further progress. It's you. Goliath's eyes widened, and suddenly he noticed that in the high sky not far away, a figure just walked out of the ripples of space. He was above the 9 heavens, so he raised his right hand slightly, underlining the invisible power of mind. Resolve this crisis. Damn, the giant Goliath had already known who he was most vigilant about during this trip, but he was not as well known as meeting him. But he really felt how much pressure the other party put on, and his heart still sighed. Zero. Asshole. He roared. He was transformed into a giant by PIM particles, but relying on the energy extracted from another dimension, the body's data was increased countless times. He exhausted his strength, and his swaying right hand was constantly competing with the invisible power of thought. Vaguely, he was able to go several meters. But in less than a second, the invisible binding force became stronger and stronger, so firmly grasped on his wrist, completely making his giant hand unable to play. I don't believe it anymore. Goliath the giant couldn't stand the young man who was above the sky just looking down at him like this. He also couldn't stand his own failure. Ever since, the other hand swayed the sky like this, trying to completely knock the opponent's body away. Boom. But at this moment, a huge mind-powered cannonball hit his face so mercilessly. This is undoubtedly a slap in the face. Under the heavy slap, Goliath's body was completely out of balance, and the offensive was so easily resolved. Damn it. He cursed in his heart, and his expression was extremely embarrassing. I was slapped in the face by someone. But then, Su Chun, who is indifferent and ruthless, seems to be playing with each other. The fluctuations in the power of thought that permeated the void turned into invisible giant hands constantly slapped on his face. A big face is not good. It takes a little effort to pump hard. The ruthless ridicule made Goliath feel ashamed. Mountain. Boom, boom, boom. The invisible giant hand, which was condensed in the air by the fluctuations of thought power, just so ruthlessly slapped on the face of the giant Goliath. Although it is not too fatal, but this kind of slap on the face humiliates one's dignity more than a fatal injury. What a shame. Goliath roared. Under the anger, surging energy fluctuations suddenly surged in the body, and the whole person's breath became thicker and thicker. Along with his own momentum, he saw the giant Goliath's physique increased a lot again. His hands suddenly tore through the power of thought that permeated the surroundings, and he punched the figure in the sky in front of him. Boom. This fist trembled in the void, and the momentum of the impact alone caused waves of aftermath to disperse the white clouds not far away. Damn it. But the figure hit by the fist just disappeared without a trace, and there was no trace at all. The giant Goliath's eyes suddenly looked forward, only to find that even the aircraft carrier that had just hovered in the air had already flown away and had risen into the high air in a stealth state. With such a delay, he has completely missed the achievement of crashing the aircraft carrier. Not good. Suddenly, the warning sign in his mind suddenly made him feel a murderous intent coming from behind him. Limited by his huge physique, the turning movement became a little slow, and he had no time to react. Boom. Su Chun, who shuttled out, waved his fist forward. Void trembles. The surging power is pouring out like mountains and seas, and suddenly hit Goliath's back. How big is the gap between the two? One big and one small. One stands in the sky and the earth, like a giant spirit god. The other is just the size of a human being, and in contrast it is as small as an ant. But that's it. Su Chen's punch was actually a loud sonic boom, and Goliath's body suddenly staggered. He only felt a huge force coming from his back, and the internal organs were even more shocking. It was squeezed violently, and it became a ball. Boom. Affected by this tremendous force, his huge figure could not help being pushed forward, stepped on it, and accidentally even collapsed a small half of Alcatraz Island. The other few steps have set off huge waves in the ocean. Asshole. In the end, under this tremendous force, his huge physique inherited from the dimensional energy was unable to maintain the balance of the body for a while, and suddenly fell forward like a huge mountain collapsed. Boom. As Goliath's knees plunged into the sea like this, the boundless waves flew up. Just as Su Chun was about to move further, he raised his eyebrows suddenly, and his combat instincts already felt that a killing intent was approaching. With his indifferent pair of eyes, he saw the end of the horizon, and a figure full of flames flew over. It's you. This is an old acquaintance. Read more at wuxiax.com. Thunderbolt. In the last catastrophe, the Fantastic Four was almost annihilated, but this guy was knocked out by Su Chun himself in the initial attack for an unknown distance, which made him accidentally get his life back. I want you to die. But now, the Thunderbolt has killed like this. With fireworks all over his body, he was flying fast, flying like a rocket. Not only that, from the ground in the distance, a white light suddenly appeared, and when the light was enlarged, it was a figure enveloping the vast white light and flying in. Okay, very good. I thought you superheroes were completely wilted. There was a hint of interest on Su Chen's indifferent face. Since smashing the opponent's conspiracy and tricks in the first city, killing many Avengers and Fantastic Four members, he has never encountered a superhero again. He thought that these people really endured their temperament, so he swallowed his breath and didn't dare to stand up. Since they dare to provoke their status, then be prepared for death. Let me see how many caddies you have. Su Chen sneered. Facing the attacking figure in flames, his right hand swept the energy fluctuations. He can not only absorb energy, but the release of it can be sent and received by the heart. In the blink of an eye, a vast wave of ice power filled the tip of the right finger. Boom. A dazzling beam of ice power was immediately released from the fingertips, breaking through the void and crashing into the thunderbolt of fire from a distance. Before continuing to output, the figure that had just flown from the ground just slammed into it like a cannonball. Su Chun raised his hand to support, and with a bang, the whole person was knocked out dozens of distances. Body strength plus 100. Divine power resistance plus 100. The constructed system gives a good feedback on the evolution of genes. Su Chun raised his eyebrows and steadied his figure in the air casually. The man killed in front of him was a god. Mortal. This is a greeting from the earth god. Hercules, the unreasonable Hercules, didn't seem to want to give the enemy a chance to breathe at all. Apart from anything else, he continued to crash into the figure in front of him. Unlike Thor, who has not yet awakened the power of Odin, Hercules is not a man with a magical weapon. The condensed power of his body has lingered around him, turning into a bright white light. He had already learned that he wanted to fight quickly, so he didn't dare to retain a trace of strength at this moment, and the fluctuations of the divine power in his whole body became higher and higher. In an instant, the figure of Hercules' thick arms hugged Su Chen's figure just like this, and it rushed into the city on the ground far away like a comet. Boom, boom, boom. Under this straight collision trajectory, all the tall buildings in the city were completely crushed. This earth god is worthy of being a Hercules, and his fighting style is even more aggressive and barbaric. Under the impact of a moment of embracing, a line of straight buildings was completely shattered. He will control Su Chen's physique so firmly, trying to kill him completely under the impact of divine power and the violent collision. Roll, angrily rebuked, and within a second, Su Chen suddenly got up and kicked away the figure in front of him. Divine power resistance plus 500. Body strength plus 300. Divine power absorption plus 200. Awakening, energy erosion, awakening, divine power corrosion. At this moment, Su Chen's infinite evolutionary genes were immediately stimulated. His thin energy light film is full again. This time, it is a faint gray wave, revealing a terrifying wave of death. Oh, Hercules still didn't know what monster he was going to face in the next second. He still swooped down like a tireless bison. But the closer he gets to his opponent, the white divine light released from his body becomes dim, as if he has been corroded by some kind of power. Not good. Not good. It's too bad. When Hercules' tongue felt like a moth was fighting a fire, the fluctuations of his divine power were dimmed, and the lingering white divine light was suddenly eroded and continuously annihilated. What's wrong? He was a little dazed. The closer you get to the opponent, the more you can feel a terrifying erosion wave in the enemy's body. Once the divine power is touched, it immediately melts away. But Hercules, the violent Hercules, could no longer restrain his speed, and his whole body slammed into the opponent like this. Boom. At this moment, he was like crashing into a huge mountain, and the figure above the air lifted his right hand to support it, and remained motionless under his impact. Impossible. Hercules was stupid. A few seconds ago, he was able to hug his opponent, smashing it to pieces all the way to an unknown number of high-rise buildings. But now in a short period of time, the opponent's physical strength has actually increased to a certain extent. Something's wrong. What shocked him even more was that the divine power fluctuations lingering around him had dimmed. Get out of 12. A scornful smile appeared on Su Chen's indifferent face. He raised his supporting right hand and squeezed his fist suddenly, and slammed into the Hercules in front of him. Boom. With a loud noise, the body of the Hercules plunged into the ground completely like a meteorite. Under the terrifying impact, a huge crater was formed directly on the surface. Earth God. Su Chen's figure looked like a ghost, and in the blink of an eye, he came to the ground from the sky. Before Hercules got up officially, he grabbed the opponent's neck, and then the whole person grabbed the opponent and soared into the sky. Under the harsh sound of the sonic boom, Su Chen, who was wrapped in thoughts of power fluctuations, directly took Hercules' figure into the deep sky, thousands of meters high. The cold wind is biting, and the cold current wind is constantly blowing in the deep sky. Come, show me how strong the Earth God's body is. Su Chen's relentless words made Hercules' heart chill silently. Do not. At this moment, he suddenly realized what the other party was going to do. He struggled hard, but a terrifying throwing force spewed out from the opponent like this. Su Chen tried his best, smashing his body towards the surface with both hands. Whoosh! Hercules' body suddenly fell straight toward the ground like a meteor. Driven by the terrifying speed, it was rubbing the air, and fireworks appeared all over his body, and it hit the surface like a fireball. On a mountain. Boom. Under the force of Su Chen's thrown on the earth, the entire small mountain range over 100 meters high collapsed by more than half. The surging waves of surging power turned into a circular shock wave and uprooted the surrounding trees. The vast smoke and dust swept all around, filling the entire sky. Too ruthless. My goodness. Goliath, the giant who was watching from a distance, was completely stupid. He never thought that the power of a person could be so terrible, but Hercules, an upright earth god, a true god, was just like a rubbish to play with. For a while, he didn't even know whether the organized offense was correct. Damn it. In a secret base somewhere, the expressions of all SHIELD personnel who watched the fight outside through satellite equipment in low Earth orbit changed drastically. Its evolution. I reminded Hercules to pay attention to the growth of the opponent in battle, but he was still too reckless. Damn, we shouldn't organize this offensive operation. Director Hill's face was completely darkened. After all, she and Agent Coulson didn't have much appeal. Even if a group of superheroes are recruited, how can these people be deployed by themselves and others? One relied on the identity of the Earth God, one had a bad temper, and the other was anxious for revenge. As a result, these three people had to be completely accounted for. Hercules should be all right. Everyone is even more worried about this. No, I'm afraid he will be over. No matter how optimistic people are, they can't give the other side the hope of surviving at this moment. At this moment, in the collapsed mountains, Hercules only felt the boundless pain rushing from his whole body's bones. Even his divine body could not be intact under the violent drop action just now. The blood was flowing, and the injury felt extremely painful. Damn. Hercules gritted his teeth, and divine power surged into his body again, and he began to repair the mutilated wounds all over his body. What makes him puzzled is why the closer he gets to his opponent, the more bleak the divine power fluctuations in his body, as if his divine power is suddenly evaporated. No, can't continue to fight. He has realized that the opponent's body has the characteristics of restraining his own divine power, and if he continues to fight, he is really afraid to fall. Didn't you just play very happily? Why do you want to leave now? Su Chen's words came from nothing. Whoosh! As he flicked with his hand, the smoke in front of him was slapped away. Hercules just wanted to say something, but suddenly realized that he couldn't speak. His neck was completely tightly bound by the other party's invisible power of thought. He was lifted up in an instant, and then fell onto the opponent's right hand. Come, let you play a set of fun. Su Chen chuckled lightly. His words resounded like a demon in Hercules' ears. Next second, boom. Su Chen hovered all over his mind and flew at high speed in a posture that was almost close to the ground. This is a bitter Hercules, because Su Chen, who was flying close to the ground, grabbed his neck tightly, pressed him to the ground, and slid all the way. At such a fast flying speed, he drew a line of thousands of meters long on the ground. The gap. Puff. Hercules was vomiting blood in pain. He did not expect that his actions had been retaliated against by the other party before. What made him even more desperate was that he had no room for resistance at all, and the divine power fluctuations that were constantly rising were eroded and dissipated under the lingering energy position around the opponent. Damn it. In the end, Hercules was more like a shot put, and was thrown fiercely by Su Chen, smashing many buildings far away. Awakening. Energy plasticization. Soon, Su Chen ushered in a new round of evolution. At this moment, the energy fluctuations lingering around his back suddenly turned into a number of monster tail-like tentacles, which hung upside down in the air. There was a wave of annihilation of divine power. This is the deadliest weapon to deal with the existence of divine power. Boom. The crumbling building just collapsed. The smoke rose up. After being thrown as a shot put just now, Hercules smashed several buildings to stabilize his figure. Ho ho. He breathed vigorously, making a sound like a broken bellows. Every breath smelled of blood, and it was obvious that the internal organs had been completely damaged. Hercules has never been as uncomfortable as it is today. He only felt that his breath was extremely sluggish, and everything made himself a wasteful, like a mortal. Asshole. He tried to cheer up. A torrent of divine power fluctuations flowed in the limbs and hundreds of skeletons, and began to slowly repair his injuries. God will not fall. Hercules gritted his teeth, and now he was determined to stand up from the ruins. But his sluggish fighting instinct was more than a second late before he realized that there was already an extra figure in front of him. Boom. Su Chen stomped on a volley and trampled his standing body into the ruins. This is the Earth God. It's really embarrassing and ridiculous. This ridiculous remark was enough to make Hercules furious, and he couldn't wait to screw the other's head. Can be less than a moment. The warning signs in his mind resounded, and the fighting instinct he had tempered between life and death for countless times had already told himself that the danger had arrived. What is this? Hercules was taken aback, and suddenly realized that Su Chen, who was floating on the ground in front of him, had suddenly released 8 energy tentacles. The sound of breaking through the air. The sharp tentacles plasticized by energy fluctuations suddenly penetrated the void and pierced Hercules' body suddenly. What? This time, Hercules felt extremely painful. What is this? He was stupid. I couldn't believe that the tentacles that pierced through the air actually pierced his divine power shield in an instant. Not only that, even his divine body was stiffly penetrated like paper. It hurts. Hercules' tongue realized that the other party had completely evolved a way to restrain his divine body. Why? Before he died, he wondered why the other party suddenly became so restrained. It is divine resistance again. It is to make the close divine power fluctuations continue to annihilate. At last, he even evolved a pair of energy weapons that could easily penetrate his divine body. OMG, what kind of monster is this? How long did he fight the opponent? Not even a minute or two, but in such a short time, this guy was able to complete 3 rounds of earth-shaking evolution. A existence like you shouldn't live in this world. He spit out grief and anger. Unwilling, Hercules fully felt the injustice of God. Then, there's no more. Along with a graceful arc, and energy tentacles extending from Su Chen's back waist penetrated his head like this. An Earth God just fell. That's the case with the gods. Su Chen raised his eyebrows, and the demon tail-like energy tentacles hanging upside down suddenly collapsed, turning into a stream of energy and involved in the body. Next second, he turned and looked back at another flame figure soaring in the air. On the surface of the sea in the distance, the giant Goliath who had just been knocked down by his punch had also stood up. Even if he didn't use the power of the spiritual level, he could feel the hesitation and fear of these two people. At first, the blood surged, and the revenge was eager, understandable. But now seeing the terrifying throw of the number 1 mutant on the Earth, and even witnessing the fall of the Earth God, the hearts of both of them may have retreated. Why do you want to run? Don't want revenge anymore? Obviously the body is on the ground far away. Obviously it is a shallow whisper. But Su Chen's words were so clear and unmistakable that they lingered in the ears of the two of them. The devil was whispering. Reaper is urging his life. For a moment, both of them were frightened. What? The thunderbolt roared unwillingly, and he was so furious that he was stimulated by Su Chen and recalled the death of his sister and brother-in-law, and even the death of the stone man. The Fantastic Four almost finished, so he can survive on his own. The trace of timidity that had just risen was immediately thrown away, and this fierce fellow bathed in flames like this, as if a rocket fired. Thunderbolt. This time, the giant Goliath calmed down instead. The gap in strength is like an insurmountable gap. But this is not the most terrible. Hercules clearly saw that the opponent was inferior to himself and relied on the indestructible divine power fluctuation to force the opponent. Yes, he did it, but it was awe-inspiring for less than 2 seconds. Afterwards, there was a series of abuse. The most terrible thing about the number 1 mutant obviously lies in the terrifying evolutionary ability. This guy's not a human at all. Die for me. Thunderbolt has been completely attacked by anger, and at this moment he is coming with the determination to die together. One hit kills in seconds, and does not give the opponent a chance to recover and evolve. The next step was to witness the explosion of a supernova that he might only be able to use once in his life. Whoosh. He braved fireworks all over his body, like a torch, swooping down in a super high-speed flight. At a speed faster than a supersonic cruise aircraft, he quickly circled the surrounding area of Suchun. He quickly circled the surrounding area. Suchun, who was in it, was immediately completely surrounded by a large-scale firestorm. The blazing heat wave accelerated. The temperature rises layer by layer. In the surrounding flame storm, Thunderbolt could not even be caught by human eyes. The afterimage dragged by his body can even make a circle. He has burned his life. It is just to form a supernova explosion. For an instant, the ultra-high temperature heat wave even reached, good enough, millions of degrees Fahrenheit, and the space structure in the flame prison even collapsed for this, and everything here began to collapse. I have the guts. But don't think of yourself too great. Your friends and relatives are just executioners who launched the conspiracy to a complete failure. Suchun sneered. This man is still too stupid. If you clearly give yourself abilities, then you will naturally laugh at it completely. Although Suchun, who was in the flame prison at this time, had been approached by the heat waves from all around, the impact of the explosion was constantly surging. But within a moment, the flame resistance continued to increase, and Suchun, who was basically immune to flames, developed a way to restrain the opponent's heat wave at this moment. The opposite of fire is naturally ice. In an instant, Suchun's body suddenly spewed out a surging ice energy. With him as the center, within a few miles of it, it was completely reduced to an icebound world. He would like to call it the Ice Age. The opposite of fire is naturally ice. When Thunderbolt Fire tried to explode its own supernova and began to circle around Suchun's body rapidly, the heat generated by itself was constantly spurring Suchun's evolution. Under the interference and stimulation of this environment, Suchun's immortal physique suddenly became full of fire resistance. Gradually began to fire immunity. Then, in order to restrain the more and more terrifying heat wave, the infinitely evolving gene suddenly transformed into a brand new ability. Awakening. Ice control. In an instant, Suchun had discovered that he had the ability to completely condense the surrounding environment into ice. Didn't think much. The energy stored in the billions of trillions of cells, and even the hundreds of limbs in his body suddenly turned into surging ice power, centering on himself, completely radiating out to the surroundings. Boom. The front was wrapped in layers, and the flame prison formed by the continuous rotation was suddenly and completely shattered. Hiss. Under the collision of ice and heat, a large amount of white steam was produced immediately, and the vast steam spray immediately obscured the sky. The ice power was still slightly better after all. After completely offsetting the ultra-high temperature fireworks, it still spread to the surrounding area. At this moment, almost half of the forest area and small half of the city were reduced to ice-covered land. Everything in the world is frozen under an endless layer of ice. The Ice Age is appropriate. Good. Suchun is very satisfied. Due to the explosion of the supernova from the Thunderbolt, some space has been collapsed, so that this absolute icebound force even prevented the continuous collapse of real space. Of course, if the Thunderbolt is a bit more fierce, I am afraid that Suchun's icebound power will be further enhanced, freezing the movement of all the molecules, so as to achieve the effect of stopping every time. Pity. Suchun couldn't help but sigh for the enemy's weakness. Listen, this is human words. If you hear the Thunderbolt that has completely burned your life, I am afraid you will vomit blood. And far away, in the waters around Alcatraz Island, the giant Goliath who originally stood in the sky has completely disappeared. Yes, this guy had long thought that the poor Thunderbolt was just self-defeating. He is not optimistic about him at all. There is even some contempt in my heart. Isn't this giving the other party ability? Unfortunately, as the first superhero to jump out, Goliath himself has already been spotted. Don't think about leaving. In the city adjacent to the sea, wanted the Scarlet which appeared on a street like this. Hearing this, Goliath, who had been relieved of the giant state, immediately looked at the woman who came to obstruct him in anger. A red windbreaker, tall and graceful, with a delicate and beautiful appearance. If it weren't for the magical fluctuations in it, he would have thought it was a female celebrity. A woman. Goliath sneered. One phrase is enough to prove his contempt for this woman. The Scarlet Witch Wanda sneered. She needs merit, needs to be promoted to the management, become the core backbone, and obtain the identity code of the black and white chessboard. Then the best target is naturally this Goliath who doesn't dare to transform into words. Don't underestimate women. The lingering chaotic magic power fluctuations of Wanda the Scarlet Witch suddenly turned into a red magic bullet and fired at the enemy. Just with the momentum of the howling and the momentum of the bombing, Goliath knew that this woman's methods were indeed a bit extraordinary, and in a vague way, she had a threat to herself. He frowned. It is not that he is afraid of this woman, but that he is afraid that the number 1 mutant who has finished cleaning up the Thunderbolt is about to come. Damn woman. He didn't even bother to fight each other. Like a trick, the whole figure disappeared in front of him. The red magic bullet that blasted away suddenly lost its target, turning buildings in the distance into ruins. What? Wanda frowned. She vaguely felt that the other party's body was nearby, but why did she suddenly disappear in front of her eyes? He's getting smaller. At the moment this sentence sounded, a slender figure just walked out of the spatial fluctuations like water ripples. Under Suchun's keen mental perception, he could immediately detect a very unusual life fluctuation nearby. The body can become bigger and smaller, but life fluctuations cannot be erased. Suchun's eyes suddenly fell on the small ant-like figure on the ground, and a smile appeared on his cold face. In an instant, his clear eyes suddenly glowed with red light, which turned into laser beams and slammed down on the ground. Damn, Goliath realized that he had been discovered, and he didn't dare to put it on anymore. He immediately lifted the reduced form of the Pym particle, but he turned into an ordinary human body and still couldn't avoid it for the first time. With a bang, his entire figure was knocked out, and he was hit by a beam of light on the wall of a building hundreds of meters away. Puff. He spouted a mouthful of blood. A terrifying blood hole appeared on his right shoulder, and his trembling right hand was about to press against the enlarged device in his wrist. But at this moment, Goliath's consciousness was completely invaded by a majestic wave of will. It's Emma, the White Queen. With shoulder-length blonde hair and a white chiffon dress, she controlled Goliath's body in this way and did not give the other party any further action. In addition to being able to obtain energy outside of dimensions, Goliath mainly relies on the suit of his body to become bigger and smaller. This is Pym particle technology. Emma, the White Queen, walking from the street in the distance, revealed Goliath's secret. A generation of Ant-Man Hank Pym has a great relationship with the Shield of the last century, so you can believe that the Ant-Man team has joined them. Emma, the White Queen, walked slowly to Suchun's side. Damn, Wanda cursed secretly from the bottom of his heart and was exposed to the show again by this woman. And far in the northern part of the earth in a glacier snow area, a secret base of N 37 repaired in the underground ice layer is buried there. Like other numbered bases, this is also a secret facility built by S.H.I.E.L.D. all over the world. Once S.H.I.E.L.D. encounters some kind of crisis, it will be activated directly, and the relevant data and information have been deleted by Nick Fury personally. Every secret base can be activated with full power energy for several years. It can resist nuclear explosions and the impact of various natural disasters. The material stored in it can survive for more than 10 years. Of course, this kind of compressed biscuits is really vomiting. The team headed by Ant-Man is stationed here. It's a pity that Goliath is dead. Our bigger and smaller Pym particles can't solve the number one mutant at all. Maybe we should change our mindset. Scott, didn't you say that you entered the quantum universe when infinitely smaller? Maybe we should start in this direction. When using Pym particles to become infinitely smaller, people will fall into a quantum realm. This is an undisputed fact. The wife of a generation of Ant-Man, Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp was reduced to subatomic size in order to stop the missile and disappeared without a trace ever since. Surprisingly, the second generation Ant-Man Scott Lang, who was about to inherit his own mantle, accidentally fell into the overcaller domain. However, he successfully returned to reality, but since then, he has been in contact with Janet in the quantum realm dash. This makes the generation of Ant-Man, Hank Pym, very exciting. Bring it on. This is not only for my wife, but also for defeating the number one mutant. Maybe we can actually invent a time shuttle device from the quantum realm, or open the door to a certain parallel world, and let ourselves in another world help figure out a solution. Hear the words. The second generation Ant-Man Scott Lang also laughed. It's really whimsical, but I like it. Perhaps that mutant number one would not have thought that someone would travel between the future and the past to solve him. If we really open the door to the parallel universe, maybe we can find Hulk in another world. Compared to other superheroes they knew, Hulk only under gamma ray radiation has a broader future and a more powerful evolutionary prospect. Only he could defeat the number one mutant. Maybe Hulk in the parallel world has evolved something else, or it has shattered the entire world. In addition, hooking up with Hulk is also very simple. Hey, man, you are dead in my world. Do you want to see the murderer who killed you? As long as he uttered these words, he might be able to bring Hulk over. Scott Long completely said his whimsy, which directly caused Hank Pym to laugh. Good for you. Well, it's time for us to work, for the wife and for the space-time installation. Hope the quantum field can bring us some surprises. At this moment, the battle on Alcatraz has already come to an end. Worthington Pharmaceuticals headquarters has been completely compromised. As a veteran biopharmaceutical company, Warren, the son of the president of Worthington, is a mutant, with a group of wings covered with white feathers growing out of his back, just like angels in the Bible. But this can't make the old father happy. The discrimination and contempt for mutants made him determined to develop a drug that can inhibit the mutant X gene. Soon, he got a little boy who could block the ability of other mutants. Any mutant who approaches him will be completely suppressed by his X gene, unable to perform any abilities. And the brain marrow extracted from his body is even more helpful to the abuse and produced a bottle of inhibitor drugs. To this, capital crime is inevitable. His appearance will only cause more trouble. The mutants in the laboratory are safe. Besides, Supreme, we suspected that we found two secret S.H.I.E.L.D. facilities in the Western Desert, and we have been assigned to investigate. In deep air, the command room of an aircraft carrier, Emma, the White Queen, reports to the first Suchun, a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent who came to inform us was caught in Alcatraz Island. Under the spiritual invasion, he naturally wiped out his memory. Soon, two of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s nests were discovered. Very good. Suchun sat on the throne of the command room. Below the steps, there was a map presented by holographic projection. The two secret facilities of S.H.I.E.L.D. were marked red so conspicuously. As long as you catch more S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, you can unearth more information. It won't take many days before they can continue to hide. Emma, the White Queen, is very confident about this. Human memory is like a book for her to read. Few people can guard against her psychic powers. With a little bit of the face, it is absolutely possible to quickly and completely execute a large number of fish that have slipped through the net. At this time, a very strange and terrifying event directly stopped Suchun's footsteps. He had to go back. Yorkton City, Oblique Street, Manhattan. This is a seemingly ordinary and elegant building, with people coming and going around. Everything looks very normal. But what even S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't know was that this building was actually one of the three great temples on Earth. Seeking flowers. Just today, the sky outside the temple building in Yorkton actually spread out a thin trace of cracks. Accompanied by a loud click, the cracks intensified, like glass shards that kept falling off, and a black and terrifying force kept pouring out from the cracked space. In the blink of an eye, these black trickles wrapped up the entire building and turned into a disgusting black fungus blanket. With the continuous pouring of black energy, this very erosive dark energy gradually spread to the surroundings. The building touched was like high-concentration sulfuric acid spilled on a carton, and it collapsed in an instant. Even all the light and the air were completely eroded by this strange black air, turning into a black, strange, evil air that curled into the air. Damn, what the hell is going on? It didn't take long for the mutants to take over the city before they encountered such an incredible problem, and they don't know that the root of everything is actually related to the Supreme that they serve. Just when Suchun lost control of his emotions and ran away completely that day, the reality was tampered with recklessly by him, and the traces of personnel existence continued to be wiped out and spread all over the world. At that time, although he did not clearly point to the object of obliteration, but in the subconscious, Kamatage, who was once an enemy, was naturally obliterated on a large scale, so that most of his hands were withered, and the existence of the temple mage became very vacant, so as to provoke the past enemy, the Domum believer. Just today, Cassius received instructions from the dark dimension, and the demon god Domum could not wait to descend on the earth today. He wants to turn the whole world into a dark cage, and devour all living creatures with great feasting. Destroy the three major temples to me. As long as the magic circle that protects the earth is destroyed, our demon lord will be able to personally descend. Cassius' words stopped abruptly. Follow the killing intent. His whole body exuded a frightening dark atmosphere, and he looked at the slender figure gradually coming from the street in the distance. I know you. Cassius smiled, and he said in a persuasive tone, a young lost person, the darkness has boosted your strength, but you don't know how to properly tap that power and join Domum. Embrace it. It will make you recognize yourself and understand how amazing you are. Suchun just smiled coldly at this. Go away, otherwise die. Sean, roll, otherwise die. Hear the words. Cassius just smiled sullenly. I really don't know good or bad. Do you think this place is your sight? Wearing a black robe, he opened his arms, as if embracing the world. He shouted and chanted, and said, open your eyes and look around. Hiss. The shattered space continued to fall off, and the black magical energy continued to pour out, and the trickle-like black magical energy made the surrounding air more corroded, and all the buildings affected by the black air continued to collapse and dissolve. The initiator of everything is this Cassius, who presided over this black magic ritual. As for the poor temple mages, they were dragged into the mirrored space of the same line, and were continuously eaten by the Domum believers. What? Accompanied by a scream, a corpse suddenly fell out of the cracks in the shattered space. It was a temple mage wearing a crimson robe. Suchun has seen it a long time ago, and even played against it. He glanced at the cracks and gaps all around the air holes, and suddenly realized that a mirrored space was built in this real world. A big battle is taking place in it, so that a series of demonic energy is pouring continuously from the shattered mirror space. It seems that you don't intend to take this thing back. Suchun also understands that this is a question for nothing, so I didn't continue to talk nonsense. There was no answer. The weird and mysterious fluctuations interfere in reality in this way. The calm and composed Suchun has been able to rewrite reality very well. This time, he directly erased the concept of distance. The distance of hundreds of meters between the two people was completely erased by him with a single thought. This is the ability development that Suchun has recently thought about. Directly obliterate. The probability of tampering with things. Now, he has directly erased the concept of distance, that is, intervening in space with real fluctuations. What? Cassius was surprised. He couldn't even feel a little energy fluctuation, nor did he catch a hint of an opponent's attack. In such an instant, his figure was pulled in front of the opponent. Then, boom, the other's punch hit his face so ruthlessly. The head burst instantly. However, there was not a drop of blood blooming, but a breath of darkness was spilled. Boy, the demonic energy that rose up unexpectedly showed a face of ugly bird, exactly the face of Cassius. He stared angrily and said with a sneer, "When I finish cleaning up the others, I will come to meet in person for a while." You, whoosh. After speaking, this magical energy just curled up into the air, poured into the air gap, and penetrated into the mirror space inside. Obviously, Cassius's real body was inside to deal with the temple mages. Suchin didn't bother to wait any longer. If only this pouring dark atmosphere continues to spread, I am afraid that the entire city will no longer need to be inhabited, and it will become a disgusting black purgatory. Really looking for death. Suchin's black and white eyes immediately began to perceive the space, and gradually saw the mirrored space framed in the real world from the gaps split in the air. Next second, under the ripples of the space slowly rippling out, Suchin's figure just disappeared in place. Mirror space. Do not. This is no longer a traditional mirror space. In the hands of Cassius, the most proud disciple of Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One in the past, combined with the power of Domum Demon God, this created a terrifying dark world. The temple mages who were dragged and entered or exited, but they were trapped in this realm. But the solution to all this is Cassius, the caster who won the ceremony. But obviously these temple mages could not do it at all. Otherwise this evil Cthulhu would not separate out a clone and go to the outside world to check the situation. Cassius was surprised at this moment. But after a brief stupor, he suddenly laughed. I didn't expect that this world is still so anxious to die. Or maybe you finally wake up. Do you want to consider what I just proposed? Certainly. Now you are still welcome to enter my world. I forgot to tell you. If you want to go out again, don't think about it anymore. In this magically altered mirror space domain, all the pictures around it are like adding a terrifying bloody filter, and you can see it, a hell on earth. The ground is covered with disgusting fungus blankets, and the buildings are beating like an internal organ, not to mention the smell of sulfur in the air. Just fine smelling is enough to make people sick and nauseous. Here is the projection of the world in the dark dimension beyond the earth. Everything is so distorted and dark. Even standing here, Suchun feels that his emotions are disturbed by some negative emotions. Depravity, darkness, greed, evil. A terrible negative emotion continues to permeate Suchin's heart. What? The figures in the crimson robe screamed in the distance, and the mana fluctuations in the whole body gradually blackened. When they were not attacked, they were completely eroded by the reflection of the dark dimension, and they directly became the most devout believers of the demon god of Domum. Do not. There are also temple masters who are desperately resisting, using the white magic of Kamatage's line to try to make the holy white light dispel all the darkness. It's just that under such a dimensional reflection, all his efforts were in vain. The white light that bloomed dimmed instantly, and the whole person's body suddenly burned into black flames. Domum doesn't want to see this disgusting white magic. A word fell. Cassius looked at Suchun not far away so slowly, and as expected, this young man who didn't know the heights of the sky had already begun to be eroded by demonic energy, and his emotions began to darken and degenerate. Come on, embrace all darkness, and let Domum's power lead you forward. As if responding to his words, the surrounding darkness suddenly began to flow into Suchin's body. But what surprised Cassius was that the speed of the rapid gathering in front of him was very fast, turning into a whirlpool and gathering like crazy. Wrong. He reacted instantly. It was obviously the other party's power that was devouring here. I belong to the darkness. Why do I get lost? Why do I need to guide? Suchin smiled. At this moment, his smile was more evil and enchanting, and the black air lingering around his body was even more diffuse. The enemy in front of him didn't understand at all what kind of treatment he would receive when his state of mind gradually ran away and became black and out of control. I will give you a beam of light. It was like speaking and speaking, and in an instant, a bright beam of light blasted through this dark dimensional reflection domain and directly enveloped Cassius. That was the white magic that the temple mage used just now, but now it was Suchun who took it in his hand. After amplifying and amplifying, it fell on his body. What? Suddenly, painful words came from Cassius's mouth. A sudden, magnificent beam of light not only tore through the reflection of the dark dimension, but also completely enveloped the opponent's body. What? Cassius Dunn cried out in pain. He couldn't think of how the opponent would suddenly come with a hand of white magic. Asshole! He roared, and a shocking wave of darkness suddenly rose up all over his body, and the evil spirit aura from Domum was so high. Oh! Accompanied by a loud howl, the whole person's aura fluctuations smashed the shrouded beam of light in this way. Boy, I want you to die. This holy white magic is a means to restrain the evil god. But for Cassius, compared to the pain, his innate disgust made him resist. But at this time, his eyes were suddenly startled. The young man not far in front of him is still absorbing the dark energy around him, and the devilish energy lingering all over his body undoubtedly shows that the other party's mood has fallen into the abyss. Impossible. This alone was enough to turn this little demon into a devout believer of Domum. But why is it still as indifferent as it is now? There is something wrong with his body. Even the devout Domum followers around realized that something was wrong. Not good. The entire projection domain of the dark dimension is about to collapse for this reason. Suchun not far away was like a whale sucking, constantly swallowing the energy fluctuations around him, so that a siphonic whirlpool airflow appeared above his head. The countless torrents of dark aura fluctuations without exception were captured by Suchun. This is not the first time he has absorbed the breath of the devil. He had met the evil god Haikong before. Now, encountered another demon god, Domum, from the dark dimension. Their powers are all interfering in the hearts of others, distorting the will of others, so that they can become their own loyal slaves. However, this is undoubtedly the biggest tonic for Suchun, who is already able to absorb external willpower at the spiritual level. Click. After he swallowed unreasonably, the dark projections that held everything around him began to collapse, and the spatial structure continued to collapse like falling cement. Do not. Cassius Dunn was furious. As the initiator of the ceremony, he was unable to continue. Boom. Accompanied by another loud crash, the entire dark projection domain collapsed and dissipated under the loss of strength. No one thought that Suchun would completely collapse a field in this way. Compared with the last time he dealt with the mirror space, he directly smashed the spell maintainer Baron Mordo. This time, it was extremely simple and violent. The disgusting smell of sulfur, high-rise buildings throbbing like internal organs, a scene of purgatory on Earth disappeared without a trace. Now, after the field collapsed, they returned to reality. A group of figures fell from the air. It is still the asphalted street outside the temple just now, but compared to Suchin before entering, he in front of him was indifferent, revealing an aura of evil charm. While still digesting and devouring and gradually transforming the demon energy that distorted his will, Suchin's mood was inevitably disturbed by some negative emotions. Certainly, this is not a good thing for the enemy at this time. As the saying goes, blackening is 10 times stronger, and whitening is weak by 3 points. With emotions dominated by anger and vaguely out of control, Suchin's use of reality tampering immediately ushered in an exponential increase in strength. Why haven't you been transformed by the demon god? Cassius is still struggling with this. But the next second, a dangerous warning sign had already sounded in his mind. Not good. The terrifying killing intent pervades from this. Again, without a trace of energy fluctuations, without any clues, the concept of distance between the two was once again erased by Suchun. It's this trick again. Cassius ushered in a nightmare in a daze, and the distance between the two was within reach. And a fist from the other side just bombed. Boom. With a loud noise enough to pierce the sonic boom, Suchin's fist fell on the opponent's head so clearly. The entire face was suddenly distorted, deformed, and then burst open with a bang. This time, most of the figure thrown out had blood mist blooming. Leader. The devout Domum believers around suddenly screamed. They were furious, but I didn't feel uneasy. It's like fear. The emotion of fear has long been lost. Despise Domum's power and go to death. A crowd of figures rushed in and roared loudly. But at this time, Su-chun took advantage of the fact that the negative emotions had not yet dissipated, and once again used the mysterious power that interfered with the reality under his anger. At this moment, in a small area around, the movement of countless molecules suddenly fell into lag. Su-chun was inspired by the bullet time effect produced when Quicksilver was running at high speed, and even the Omega-class stop effect of David the Infinite ability. The space condenses, and reality seems to be frozen, because the hands of time flow no longer move. Stop. Time completely stopped at this moment, because Su-chun has already used the wave that interferes with reality at this time, erasing the concept of time. No one knows exactly what happened. Despair. When the hands of time resume beating again. Boom, boom, boom. The 7 Doma believers trapped in the realm completely shattered, and the blood mist bloomed at the moment when time recovered. Good. Su-chun is very satisfied with his masterpiece. Reality tampering is undoubtedly a very worthy ability to develop. He erased the distance before, which is undoubtedly a concept of space. Now he directly obliterated the concept of time, made him immobile during the lost time of the opponent, made him lose all defensive measures, and then killed him. This is really hard to guard against. I admire you. And this time, a creepy voice came from not far away. I saw Cassius, who had been shattered by most of his body just now, had actually ushered in extraordinary healing, and his injuries were constantly being completely repaired by a dark force. But his voice has completely changed. An incomparably wicked strand of demon gods will came to Cassius' mind like this. The master of the dark dimension, Doman's wisp of will has spied on Su-chun. Doman's wisp of the evil spirits will came in this way. He has completely dominated Cassius' body, and it seems that he doesn't adapt to the human body. He also shook his neck, and the sound of bones like fried beans continued to resound. And this time, a group of Doman believers who had been inspired by the demon gods will came from the temple immediately. They didn't even bother to look at Su-chun and bowed down and worshipped, in order to show their respect for the evil god. Congratulations on the arrival of the great evil god Domam. Your will lead us forward. The Doman believers shouted loudly. His face without dissatisfaction reveals an expression of admiration and worship. Damn. The destruction of the temple in Yorkton allowed Domam to successfully descend from outside the dark dimension. Compared with the followers of Domam, the faintly surviving temple mage's complexion changed drastically. At this moment, they only felt terrified. If the 3 major temples are completely finished, the magic circle that maintains an earth will be completely shattered. At that time, it is not a ray of Domam's will that has come, but the other party's true body completely kisses the earth. Your body is better. This strand of Domam's will does not conceal his desire to covet Su-chun. Compared to Kamataj's temple mages, the young man in front of him made him ecstatic and at the same time extremely annoyed. Dare to swallow my power. You are not the first. The shameless guy at Ancient One is your predecessor. Domam smiled intentionally. Certainly. What made him annoyed was that the young man's energy that swallowed him could be directly transformed, so that he could not feel any resonance at all, but was completely absorbed by the other party. Damn beast. Domam was a little annoyed, which was completely different from the situation of Ancient One. He can transform and absorb. The thought of the other party devouring dark power and feeding back his own body made him even more annoyed. Don't want to slander our sorcerer supreme. Damn Domam. Ancient One needs your power? Doman's words also made the temple mage frustrated. That is simply slander. It is an intolerable joke. Stupid kid. In response, Doman's contemptuous eyes glanced at them. He didn't even bother to say anything to them. The thin arm under his sleeves gushed out a stream of black air current, which suddenly filled and enlarged, turning into a heart-eater monster unique to the dark dimension. Kill them. Stop talking. Domam looked at Su-chun not far away. Dare to swallow my power. Kid, don't miss me anymore. Throw into my dark embrace. This moment, the killing intent is pervasive. Sun Lung's breath seemed to freeze the void, and the air flow around him slowly and completely stagnated. Even more exaggerated is that the sky, which was originally blue as a wash, ushered in the darkness of night. Under the aggressive darkness, everything around me gradually fell into the darkness where I could not see my fingers. You leave directly. Su-chun instructed coldly. Behind him, some mutants of the Utopian camp heard the words, and suddenly did not dare to blend in with the situation in front of him, and began to be ordered to gradually leave this area. Boom. In an instant, Domam's figure moved. His figure is like a ghost, dragging out a trail of black afterimages, which swiftly come directly behind Su-chun. Die. A pair of skinny arms are like eagle claws, attacking fiercely, and the haunting annihilation aura in them is enough to make people feel creepy. Click. But this sudden sneak attack was abruptly grasped by Su-chun's right hand on the opponent's skinny wrist. The opponent's ultra-high-speed movement can't hide from his eyes with extraordinary dynamic vision. Hiss. The dark annihilation aura suddenly dissolved the clothing of Su-chun's arm and the energy barrier of his body. Even the skin was slightly wrinkled. But this annihilation momentum can no longer continue to work. What? Domam frowned. Click. At the same time, Su-chun had completely broken his wrist. Damn. Domam didn't realize that his wave of annihilation didn't do much to him. But the next moment, his eyes and vision began to blur, and his head became dizzy, and the sky and the earth seemed to be turned upside down. It turned out that his whole figure was dragged by Su-chun's arm, and he suddenly threw it to a place not far ahead. Boom. After smashing many buildings in succession, Domam's body was lying on top of a ruin. Damn human body. What makes Domam rage this wisp of will is that no matter how his dark aura changes, this is a mortal human body after all. The foundation of the body is too weak. So at this moment, his whole body's bones were cracked, and the trickle of darkness continued to fill his body, and he began to recover from injuries everywhere. That little beast. I will kill you. When I occupy the earth, I will kill your whole family one by one, and then whip the corpse. Domam gritted his teeth. After all, how could he have been so humiliated? How could he be so aggrieved if he was not limited by a human physique? But this series of words was completely heard by Su-chun from a distance. In fact, after completely swallowing the dark aura that twisted the mind, there was not much negative emotion in Su-chun's mind, and the evil charm gradually dissipated. But when he heard the other party's words at this time, Su-chun's face turned black. Chin should never make fun of his family. I have to say that when Iron Man Tony met with Su-chun for the first time, he did summarize the most important point. That is, when facing Su-chun, you must not provoke him. Especially in the 13-year-old teenager who is in the rebellious period, once angering the opponent, it will cause the emotional instability of the opponent, so as to attract more powerful forces. Domam, who did not live or die, felt that the concept of spatial distance was completely erased at this moment. Too good for Zhao. Huh. A figure appeared in front of him in such an instant. Angrily, Su-chun, whose black hair was hanging slightly, kicked the opponent's half-standing body completely back to the ground so fiercely. Then, he leaned down and hit the opponent's body with punch after punch. Boom, boom, boom. Many shocking fluctuations of power were poured on Domam's parasitic body in this way. Every punch dropped is a violent earthquake that affects the whole city. Every punch drop made the ground seem to be repeatedly hit by meteorites from outside the sky. 7 punches in succession. A bottomless pit appeared on the earth. The surging power of the terrifying force caused the surrounding buildings to collapse completely. As for the parasitic figure of Domam, he couldn't even say a word. There was no whole body, and he died tragically under multiple rounds of horrible force bombardment. Lucky. Boom. The smoke and dust in the sky so slowly rushed straight into the sky like a wolf smoke. Su-chun under rage went on a brutal bombardment with several punches. Cassius, who was held down in the ruins, was dead, and the waves of power alone overturned the surrounding buildings. A bottomless pit appeared in the city. The spiderweb-like cracks spread all the way, extending to the end of the field of vision. Domam's wisp of will to descend in this world along with Cassius's body. Oh my god, this. I've seen the supreme style of Sorcerer Supreme, Ancient One, and these temple mages are still in place. They are completely dumbfounded. The physical destructive power of brutal violence is still more eye-catching than the brilliant magic light. The scene just now was too visually impactful. I can't imagine that this is a power that a human should have. Damn it, everyone go together and kill him. Domum's wisp of will was thus extinguished and dissipated. Those Domum believers wearing black robes were suddenly out of anger. The Lord humiliated the minister to death. They don't care whether their strengths are compared. They are incredibly low. The devout Cthulhu followers are just like martyrs and come forward and kill them one after another. Whoosh. A faint rippling wave just rippled behind Suchen. Puff. Before I could get out of the ripples in the space, a figure wearing a black robe was completely penetrated by a sharp blade shaped by energy fluctuations. Noisy. There was no mood swing in Suchen's indifferent eyes. Under this extreme indifference, a surge of thought momentum suddenly formed a sharp blade. The improvement in IQ also allows him to master more knowledge well. At least the esoteric information left by MR, Fantastic Read, has already begun to be understood by him. Soon, he knew the importance of this building. The three major temples of Kamatage have formed a magic circle around the Earth's equator to protect the Earth. Domum wants to destroy the temple. The mage sticks to it. After that was a series of chaos. Very good. After Suchen's indifferent and relentless words, the intrusive psychic fluctuations instantly turned into a terrifying psychic storm, raging in their minds. In just a moment, they did not become idiots or completely brain dead, who seemed to have no casualties. Stop. At this moment, a roaring word came from the temple. I saw Suchen's old enemy, Baron Mordo, who also wore a crimson robe, walked out. The meeting between the two can be traced back to when Suchen rushed to the secret base of Stryker. At that time, if it weren't for a puppet doll-like monster item to become a substitute for death, I am afraid Mordor himself would have been killed. A wimpy who flees with his tail dared to stand up? Suchen said coldly. The expression of Baron Mordo showed anger. He already remembered the last humiliation, but the reason why he dared to show up was because of his safety. Despair. Along with the sound of footsteps, a lady in a white robe just walked out of the temple. Ancient One Mage. Sorcerer Supreme is here. Astonishment sounded all around. The bald face in front of him, with a benevolent and peaceful face, reveals a calm and elegant temperament, which is exactly the Sorcerer Supreme, Ancient One. She gently raised her hand, and the surging magical power fluctuations acted on many brain-dead temple mages. It's like the hands of time are reversing. In a blink, the figure slumped to the ground was completely restored to its original intact appearance by Ancient One with one-handed time magic. Bring back to life. The recovered temple mages were also surprised. Ancient One. Suchen's eyes looked at the bald lady like this. He had already heard her name. I know your Kamatage philosophy. Let it go with the flow. Let everything in the world develop naturally, or even let it perish, because this is a natural choice. So that's why you, the guardian of the earth, don't interfere in the human world war. But just now you went against nature and resurrected the dead under the sect. Isn't it against your philosophy? Suchen naturally understood a lot of Kamatage's ideas from the memory search. Hear the words. Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One just smiled peacefully and shook his head, and said, unfortunately, this does not go against, because you shouldn't be here. I will even make up for everything that you have interfered with in reality. Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One spent some time in the dimensional space outside the Earth. After returning, it was discovered that the reality of the world had been drastically tampered with by a force, just like the timeline of the Earth was completely covered by the timeline of another parallel world, so that a lot of errors occurred. The traces of a large number of people's existence were thus obliterated, and the impressions, memories, and related texts that existed all disappeared without exception. This classic of the world was torn a lot of pages continuously by a little boy in the rebellious period. The whole reality was turned upside down. According to Kamatage's philosophy and conforming to nature, Ancient One will naturally ignore the wars in the world. That is the evil thoughts of mankind at work. Even if she can prevent the outbreak of war, it will not be able to wipe out the evil thoughts in human hearts. Sooner or later, the war will break out in the next round. All of these are human choices. Blame yourself. Ancient One, as the patron saint of the earth, won't make a move. But the little boy who arbitrarily tampered with reality caused chaos in the timeline and turned the whole world into a mess. But she wanted to make a move. I want to rectify all this broken world, set the timeline back to the right, and put all order back on track. I know you and Kamatage have also forged some hatred. Trust me, this is definitely not a personal grudge. Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One, dressed in a white robe, said very gently and elegantly. She seems to have a calming temperament, and even her words make people feel like spring breeze. The Baron Mordor who followed was all smiles, and his eyes were staring at Suchen in such a state of enthusiasm. Suchen didn't care about the jumping clown at all, but looked at Ancient One coldly and said, so you want to recover all the enemies that I perished? Annihilated in that catastrophe wave, the person who wiped out all traces of existence can be his enemy. Wolverine, Phantom Cat, General Stryker. Even the existence of the enemy identified in the subconscious. Not to mention, there are superheroes killed by him himself. If everything recovers, then all his previous revenge actions must be reduced to a joke. All efforts have been wasted. Yes. Ancient One's answer is very positive. She looked at Suchen and sighed with relief. Let go of the hatred in your heart first. The destruction you have caused to reality is really terrible, and the chaos in the timeline must be repaired. After the falsification of reality is completely restored, you can no longer use that ability. It will cause too many practical problems. As for your enemy, you can solve it later, and I won't bother about it anymore. A word fell. Suchen sneered. This is another high-sounding remark. It is also a moral accusation. I have to let all my previous efforts have been completely in vain. Stop dreaming. I don't agree to your terms. It seems that the ending is either you die or I live. Suchen made no secret of his fighting spirit. The energy fluctuations lingering all over his body just came out, and the aura in his body rose slightly. For a time, the killing intent around him began to spread. The coldness of the coldness makes people feel immersed in the underground ice cellar. Very well, the other party is still resisting. Last time, the evil spirit's body was unclear, and now I am still clueless, young man. It seems that you still have to go all the way to the dark. Baron Mordor rebuked him quite righteously. He almost burst into laughter from the bottom of his heart. In my mind, I even anticipated the scene of the opponent being completely defeated by the Ancient One Mage. Which pot does not open and pick which pot? Mention the matter of the evil spirit body before. Suchen thought of the other party's indiscriminate sniping on himself. New hatred and old hatred. It is good. All the messy accounts are completely settled today. Then let you return to hell together. The energy fluctuations in Suchen's body became more and more surging. Feeling the murderous Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One's calm expression, with a light swing of his right hand, the activation ceremony of the mirror space was completed. The surrounding reality is completely replaced in an instant. Although the environment is still the ruins of the previous city, in specific terms, this is a spatial domain structured in the real world. None of the fighting happening here will affect reality. And just like Cassius, if you don't get rid of the caster, you won't even be able to escape from this world prison. The mages of Kamatage rely on this magnificent method so as not to be known to the outside world. Seeking flowers, click. The surrounding buildings suddenly made a sound of spinning gears. Soon, in this world, the city area at the far end of the horizon was slowly lifted up like a piece of paper. In just a few seconds, the pouring of dozens of degrees was directed towards the sky. The temple mage can be said to play a very fancy space structure, especially after they have just settled the crisis of the other two temples with Sorcerer Supreme. Their killing intent has not disappeared, and they continue to kill in such awe-inspiring manner. Boom. The ground area under Suchen's feet bounced out like a square. Humph. Suchen, who had a hunch for a long time, just jumped up like this, surpassing the 9 heavens due to the fluctuations in the power of thought. 0. At this time, the 90-degree tilt of the urban area is so slowly closed, as if the two halves of a book are completely closed, and the building rooftops of the two cities collide in one place. The air area has been successfully sealed off. Many temple mages in crimson robes shouted. After the city is completely folded like a book, the air area available for activities becomes narrower and narrower. Not only that, if the dividing line in the middle is crossed, the gravity on both sides will suddenly reverse. Whoosh. Just now, Su-chun felt a downward gravitational force. After flying past a certain dividing line, he suddenly felt the gravity position change, and the whole person suddenly felt an attraction in the air. In such a folding city, the top of your head is the ground of the other half of the city area, so you should always pay attention to changes in gravity. But Su-chun doesn't care much at all. After adapting in less than half a second, he immediately soared freely in the canine-toothed air area through the fluctuation of his thought power. And the entire mirror space will not be detrimental to you, because in such an extremely unstable space field, Su-chun, who is able to display the ability to change the space system, is also greatly strengthened. For example, with one thought from him, the figure of a large number of red-robed mages was so easily erased by him without a trace of signs, and they appeared directly around his body. Very good. This is too easy. Mountain. The spatial distance around was thus easily wiped out by Su-chun, and 4 figures were dragged by him to his side. There is no trace to follow. There is also no energy fluctuation that can be felt. After the concept of distance was erased, many temple mages looked dumbfounded. Not good. They already felt a powerful killing intent approaching. At this moment, the energy fluctuations pervading Su-chun's waist began to shape, turning into a series of energy tentacles suddenly hanging upside down in the air, and then piercing the surrounding figures like this. Puff, puff. The sound of multiple blood bursting sounded at once, and the poor temple mage had no room to react, and was completely penetrated by this terrible penetrating force. One after another, the dead figures just fell from the sky. Take your life. The roaring words came from the back like this, and it was still a temple mage who knew nothing about life and death, and then went through the space and killed him from behind. In order to be concealed, he even put on a layer of invisible magic waves when he shuttled through the space. In the blink of an eye, a sharp blade in his hand was thoroughly condensed by magical waves, glowing with a cold edge under the sun's rays. Die. Hidden in the invisible, he pierced with confidence, full of confidence. Only the sharp blade in his hand faintly tore the light film. The sharp vertebrae are enough to penetrate the most solid armor. However, he was not clear about his sneak attack, and was completely captured by Su-chun, who had enough insight into the space trajectory, and even had an extremely keen perception. Dare to attack me even with this little means. Su-chun sneered. The energy tentacles hanging upside down on his back were just a swipe, and with a bang, they completely slapped the opponent out. At this time, another figure wearing a crimson robe was killed in front of him. The magic blade he was holding pierced Su-chun's middle door brightly. Court death. Su-chun's face didn't even move at all. Feng Qingyun stretched out his hand calmly, just grasping the magical blade from the opponent's assassination under the surprised gaze of the opponent. He is not clear about the fluctuation of the magic power of the enchantment. What he knew was that under the control of his great strength, this magical blade that could easily penetrate the armor burst into pieces. The red robe mage was completely dumbfounded. What is the structure of this guy's palm? It actually crushed a sharp blade like this. Not good. A frightening scene followed. Su-chun picked up the fragments of the sharp blade that shattered in the air, and before the magic power dissipated, he slammed into the opponent's heart so fiercely. He squirted blood. The whole person's eyes were filled with despair. At this moment, he had already felt the terrible place of Su-chun. Damn, Baron Mordor, who had seen everything in the distance, gritted his teeth. After such a period of time, the young boy grew up at a speed far beyond his imagination. He is strong again. But what about it? Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One is about to subdue him. Suddenly, the sound of the chain movement just came through, and a full 8 chains with magical fluctuations stretched out from the void, and they were so tightly bound to Su-chun's limbs. It's time to stop. Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One shot this. The fierce and decisive boy made her frown, and she didn't know how many fights the opponent had to go through at such a young age to temper such a skillful fighting instinct. Your killing intention is too heavy. Killing so many Kamatage mages in front of him naturally made Ancient One a little dissatisfied. Just this broken chain dared to trap me. Su-chun sneered. He could feel the suction rushing from the void chain bound to the limb's arms, and the strength, and even the energy in the body began to dissipate. But when Su-chun's mind didn't even feel tired, and his limbs didn't become as heavy as a shot put, the magic resistance instantly rose rapidly under the stimulation. There was a loud bang. Su-chun was shocked, and the power emerging from his body completely broke the binding rope. Ancient One frowned. The opponent's resistance to magic was beyond her expectations. But at this time, her inherent magical intuition reminded herself that an unknown force was acting on her body. Here we go again. Sorcerer Supreme suddenly understood that the other party had to erase the concept of distance between each other. Her benevolent and peaceful face still showed no hint of panic. The distance of hundreds of meters was erased in this way, which can easily be done by Su-chun, who is calm and composed, in areas where the spatial structure is extremely weak. In other words, this is basically his home court advantage. Looking at this woman who was going to waste all her efforts, Su-chun was angry and couldn't tolerate it, clenching his right fist, and just bombarded away. Boom. The sound of the sonic boom sounded. Under this fragile spatial structure, the aftermath of the force raised by Su-chun's fist even faintly shattered the surrounding space, creating a lot of cracks. But just as this punch was extremely close to the opponent's face, the eyes of the Agamotto worn on the neck of Ancient One exudes a bright green light. The green oval gemstone set in a magic pendant just releases its power. The fluctuations that belong to time come into play here. Su-chun's fist from the bombardment just kept going backwards like this. As if going back in time, his subtle attack was completely cracked by the power of Ancient One mage's time, and the figure dragged from the tampered reality of Ancient One just returned to its original place. The distance between the two was also extended. Su-chun, who had come back, suddenly realized what had happened. Time resistance plus 200. The constructed system reflects the information of gene transformation well, compared with David's ability to stop. The green gem worn by this woman is obviously more exquisite than the power of time. Everything is over. Although Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One was horrified at the other party's tampering with reality and obliterating the weirdness of distance, she no longer retains this moment and completely used the eye of Agamotto, which is the power of the gem of time. A force of time rippled out like this, just as a pendulum began to continuously rotate counterclockwise, and a force of time regressing was acting on Su-chun in this way. Ancient One can easily adjust the time to make an intact apple instantly become shriveled. Now, she directly uses the power of time to bring Su-chun back to half a year ago, or a year ago, in order to weaken the opponent's strength. The gem of time that manipulates all the concepts of time in the world releases its dazzling power in this way. Not all infinite gems holders are able to perform its functions, but when Ancient One inherited from the previous Sorcerer Supreme, it has been held for at least 700 years. So at this moment, she is still very familiar with controlling the time gem. Despair. As if the hour hand of a clock was beating in the dark, it was an invisible concept of time. So Ancient One personally transferred the time belonging to Su-chun. She wants to go back to the other person's time and completely return her age to the most young and helpless time. At this moment, Su-chun didn't care. His figure flew directly like a cannonball. What? Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One frowned, her complexion getting more solemn. When she succeeded in setting back the other party's time to a few days ago, she found that the more she had to go back, the more resistance she could feel. It's as if a clock is completely rusty and refuses to allow anyone to stop it. Something is wrong. 12. This is hard work. But Ancient One personally used this trick to subdue how many Pujas, and in less than a few seconds, he could call back the opponent's age and strength to a few years ago. In this way, the opponent's strength can be completely disintegrated. But now, this is the first time she has encountered an existence that resists the penetration of time. Not good. She can't continue to allocate the time, because the other side's figure has been completely killed. Under fast casting, multiple magic barriers are completed instantly, like breathing. Boom. And at this moment, the figure that Su Chun struck was completely within reach, and his fist was wrapped in a huge and unmatched power and blasted on the figure in front of him. This is not just a pure physical punch. The energy fluctuations from the limbs in the body gathered on the fist, so that the surface of the fist was bursting with incomparable energy fluctuations. Boom. When this punch fell, multiple magic barriers were as crisp as thin paper. The figure of Ancient One was hit frontally. Boom. With a dull, loud noise, her thin figure flew to the ground like a shooting star. Boom. The impact power contained was so vast that the flying silhouette of Ancient One smashed more than a dozen buildings on the ground one after another. Sorcerer Supreme. Oh my god. This won't be true. The scene before him was so shocking that all the temple mages present were dumbfounded. The guardian of the earth, Ancient One, was knocked out like a sandbag. In the past, the figure that was so great was just hit by people like a puppet. Everyone only felt shocked and surprised. This is too exaggerated. Is this the so-called Sorcerer Supreme? Too weak. The slender figure above the sky is like a victor, looking down all this condescendingly. A pair of extremely cold eyes just looked at the mages with such unparalleled contempt. Facing each other's ridicule, everyone couldn't even give birth to a trace of thought to refute. Whoosh. At this moment, everyone's vision only felt inexplicable, and the other person's figure was lost in their vision. Boom. But within a second, the ground building in the distance exploded completely, and many buildings continued to explode like firecrackers. The temple mage looked silly. After all, everyone could vaguely see the figure of Sorcerer Supreme being kicked out of the sky. Soon, the splendor of magic and shocking energy fluctuations continued to explode in multiple areas. Building after building is like a toy made of building blocks, constantly collapsing. In the fast and dazzling battle, everyone can't even see the opponent's location, so that there is no way to start. But Sorcerer Supreme seems to be dying. Click. The temple mages wearing crimson robes were cold and sweaty, because the surrounding mirror space had already begun to collapse. The space is constantly disintegrating like patches, and the entire mirror space is crumbling. I am afraid that it will not last long. Obviously, the Sorcerer Supreme, who maintained the ritual, suffered so much that it was unable to maintain this domain at all. Damn. Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One was also pale at this moment. Under multiple rounds of attack, she felt the opposing party's powerful sense of oppression more and more. In addition, the power of the time gem could hardly continue to act on the opposing party's body. She struggled, and in the end she could only transfer the opponent's strength back to 3 days ago. But this will not help. It is impossible to weaken the opponent's strength at all. At first, she thought she had a problem with the eyes of Agamotto. But after 3 consecutive time reversals acted on his body and completely recovered from his injury, Ancient One understood that the opponent's body actually had a sense of repulsion against the power of time. Damn it. She felt more and more mentally exhausted. Ancient One is no longer what he used to be when he was young. She is just immortal, and she is on the verge of reaching the end of her life. It won't be long before she will even die. And just now, she even reversed the defeat of the other 2 great temples, so that the consumption was a bit intense. The tiredness accumulated by using the time gems for many times is hard to erase. Not good. The opponent does not give the opponent a break to breathe at all. Boom. Su Chun, who was killed suddenly, was hit with a punch again. Before the space transfer, Ancient One was knocked out again and crashed to the ground like a meteorite. Click. At this moment, the mirror space built around it suddenly collapsed, and it was impossible to continue to maintain it. Under the fragmentation of the mirror, a group of people returned to the real world. It is still the ruined city, because the multiple rounds of battle in the mirror space just now can't interfere with the real world at all. At this moment, Ancient One was lying down on the ground, vomiting blood, and the light released by the eyes of Agamotto on his neck became dimmed. No, it's impossible. Everyone even felt the collapse of their outlook on life, and looked at Ancient One with incredible faces. Su Chen's face was also taken aback at this time, and a hint of icy sarcasm suddenly appeared on the ruthless face of his cold eyes. What a guardian of the earth. I didn't expect you to be such a hypocritical person. Tell everyone why there is the power of Domum in the body of a Sorcerer Supreme. Su Chen looked at the scene before him with interest. Dignified guardian of the earth, Sorcerer Supreme by Kamatage. Throughout his life, he has been teaching the temple mage to fight against Domum, to prevent the demon gods of the dark dimension from completely descending on the Ancient One of the earth, and actually swallow the dark power belonging to Domum. This is really shocking. This is like a person's veil being thoroughly exposed, revealing the face of an enemy. Su Chen's indifferent face showed a mocking smile. Unfortunately, you accused me of using a set of high-sounding words. It seems that you, a saint standing on a moral high, are not very clean either. The enemy Kamatage has resisted for generations is the demon god Domum of the dark dimension, but the leader who opposes all of this is absorbing the opponent's power. Su Chun, who had invaded the mage's mind not long ago, had read a lot of knowledge and pointed it out directly. He laughed. At this moment, Su Chen really felt a pleasant emotion. Yes, pleasure. A character who was still criticizing at a high moral point just now had his veil torn apart, his character collapsed, and he became a gradually respectable person in everyone's eyes. This made Su Chen feel extremely comfortable in his heart. If I remember correctly, Cassius betrayed Kamatage because he found that you were unwilling to teach how to become stronger. The disciple you used to be most proud of has discovered that you secretly absorbed the dark breath. Perhaps at that moment, he realized that the way to become stronger was to take refuge in Domum. Su Chen started to make up the knife. This is not his baseless nonsense. After all, Cassius vowed to say some related words to other temple mages before. Combining the information in front of you, it can be deduced somewhat. Wow. One stone stirred up 1,000 waves, and an uproar came. Angry, hesitating, confused, puzzled. Is it true? Ancient One mage. A group of temple mages looked at the beloved Sorcerer Supreme, Ancient One, in the past with extremely confused emotions. No, Sorcerer Supreme, how can you absorb the power of Domum? Yes, isn't this behavior the same as the Domum believers? Even if you have difficulties, the power of the dark dimension is extremely distorting people's hearts and will, and sooner or later you will be completely backed by the power of Domum. Impossible. Tell everyone, you are not devouring dark power. Words kept coming one after another. Under the dark energy swallowed in the body, the state of Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One is very good. Even the pale complexion has been completely improved, and the spirit of the whole person is much better than before the war. But at this time, facing the criticism from the surroundings, he was puzzled and angrily accused. Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One looked dark. It is true. Her words suddenly disappointed many temple mages who were still looking forward to. Even Baron Mordo, who has always implemented the Kamatage philosophy and believes in obedience to nature, clenched his fists. Impossible. How much admiration he had in the past. How angry Mordo was at this moment. He also realized why Ancient One did this. Is it to prolong your own human life? After all, a mortal can't live for so long. Even the so-called Earth God has the moment of decay. So you use Domum's power to continue your life? Baron Mordo was very angry. Yes. Ancient One sighed helplessly, but the Sorcerer Supreme looked extremely lonely at this moment. Always kind and peaceful, she decided to give you an explanation. I don't have much life left, so I have to rely on external forces. Everything is to continue to protect Kamatage, to protect this earth. This is her original intention. As the guardian of the earth, she did have a trace of greed, and wanted to try to live longer in the last moments of her life. Of course, one of the reasons she can't say straight is the question of future successors. Cassius was once her most proud disciple, but she fell into the abyss of darkness and couldn't extricate herself. But Baron Mordor is self-sufficient, old-fashioned and rigid, and doesn't know how to work. This is not a qualified future Sorcerer Supreme, and the successor she was looking for was still working as a surgeon in a hospital, and the opportunity that belonged to him had not arrived at the right time. So, she wants to live longer. It's too risky, Sorcerer Supreme. You are playing with fire. That's right. The people who devoured the dark power followed suit. They all thought they were in control of Domum's power, but in the end they all eroded their hearts and distorted their will. This is completely contrary to the belief that teaches us. Many wizards shook their heads and sighed, feeling disappointed. Some people even thought about leaving. At this moment, everyone felt that the pillars in their hearts had completely collapsed. Compared with the blind worship of Domum believers, although their sentiments to Ancient One are not so pious, they are still very grateful, admire, and respect each other. But now, there are inevitably more rifts in some people's hearts, and it is difficult to accept this reason. Su-chan just folded his arms like this, watching the scene of their betrayal with interest. Seeing that the guardian of the Earth's human set was torn apart, and his heart was suffering and suffering, he really felt a joy in his heart. After all, it was possible for such a highly respected Sorcerer Supreme to accuse him of arbitrarily tampering with reality on the moral high ground just now. He thought it was a good experience. So are you embarrassed to accuse me of modifying reality? Su-chan stood up directly at this time. A sardonic smile appeared on his indifferent face, and said, now I can completely doubt that your heart has been completely eroded by Domum's will. So well, please also for the safety of the whole Earth, for the safety of humans all over the world, for the safety of Kamatage, and for the health of the Earth's magic circle, where you can drive yourself out of the Earth. The words said with awe-inspiring righteousness, full of justice. It even blamed the opponent directly on the moral high ground. Su-chan's indifferent words pierced the Ancient One mage's heart like a blade with the same handle. You, Sorcerer Supreme, Ancient One looked angry, and suddenly realized that the other party was ridiculing and mocking his own way of doing things. Damn bastard. At the same time, Baron Mordor was also furious, because he naturally heard the meaning of the other party's words. After all, before this, he had suspected that the opponent's heretic god's body, for the sake of the safety of the Earth, must completely obliterate the opponent, so that he led a group of wizards to attack. Now Su-chan's words are indeed in line with the arrogant style of some people in front of him. Trust. Su-chan's sudden sarcasm made people very annoyed. Even Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One was embarrassed by these morally pressured words. A centuries-old man with a peaceful mind was ridiculed and speechless by a 13-year-old boy. Maybe I take too seriously the identity of the guardian of the Earth. Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One returned to her peace of mind again, and she shook her head and smiled bitterly. Between the words, there is even some self-ridicule. Every drink and peck in the world has its own reasons. Being oppressed and producing revenge can be regarded as conforming to the development of nature. At this moment, the eyes of Agamotto worn on her neck released a faint light. Ancient One's expression became more and more serious, but his eyes were gradually lost in thought. It seems to prove whether he is correct. Through the gem of time, she watched the long river of time, trying to capture where every branch of fate in the world would go under the guidance of this young man. Every choice will produce a new branch of destiny. Tens of millions of results are at least. In the movie, Doctor Strange used the gem of time to watch the future timeline to determine how to deal with Thanos from tens of millions of results. But the amazing scene came. The consciousness of Ancient One's wandering suddenly felt that Su-chan's destiny branch was so long and endless, which symbolized that his future was so vast and long-term, and his destiny branch is so scarce. Generally speaking, even an ordinary person may have tens of millions of branches of destiny, which represents the uncertainty of the other party and the complex diversity of the future. But for this boy, too little. There are no more than a dozen at most. No matter which branch of fate is so long and endless, you can't see the end at a glance. When Ancient One's consciousness kept falling, trying to spy on the opponent's specific destiny, he found that when he glanced at it, it was actually a vast mist, and all the sights were obscured. Can't snoop, can't covet it. His future is so shrouded in the mist. Sorcerer Supreme didn't believe in evil, and his consciousness gradually sank, just trying to get enlightenment from it. Not good, But at this time, Ancient One only felt a splitting headache, and a terrifying force of rejection completely drained her consciousness. This guy, in this short glimpse of the long river of fate, Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One's face was covered with cold sweat, and even the light of the time gem on his neck was suddenly dimmed. No one knows exactly what happened in this instant. It's just that the sudden change in Ancient One's complexion is still a bit shocking. What's wrong with this? Everyone looked stunned. Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One ignored it, but looked at Su-chan with a complicated expression. His fate is unclear, and the future is vast. It's as if the other party is the destiny, so that it is impossible to snoop, to covet, and to get any enlightenment from it. I was wrong in this matter. I took back the words that hurt you before. Everything is the fixed number of the world, and I can't arrogantly criticize the changes in the timeline of the world. Ancient One sighed. Sorcerer Supreme this. No one thought that Sorcerer Supreme would completely admit his mistake to the enemy just now. Everyone looked at each other. Ancient One, the guardian of the Earth, seemed to let go of everything and said to the wizards without any burden, swallowing the power of Domum does bring risks. This matter is considered to be a risk for me. If everyone is really unacceptable, you can leave by yourself. Wow. There was another uproar. Everyone was unsure, but they didn't know what to say. Su-chan, who was not far away, still looked cold. He knew that Ancient One had just used the gem of time to spy on something about him, but his instinct also told him that the other party had found nothing, and the system he constructed did not feed back a trace of genetic transformation information, obviously not being stimulated by the outside world. Of course, this was also the first time he heard someone else's confession. Sometimes he was thinking, after the journey of escaping from the laboratory, if he got the plea from General Stryker and others to confess his mistakes and admit all the sins of hunting mutants, instead of sending more troops and then completely slandering them after failure, will he go to another branch at that moment? Do not. It definitely won't. Su-chan has an answer in his heart. These arrogant things will not admit their mistakes at all, and his future branches will not have their existence. At this time, Ancient One's words came again. This temple must exist, no matter what. It cannot be destroyed. Otherwise, the projection of the dark dimension will erode here. This is not for the Earth, but for your mutants. Stop talking. This is how her time power acts on the surroundings. This moment, Sorcerer Supreme finally demonstrated his confidence as a guardian of the Earth. The Yorkton City Temple, which had been eroded and damaged a lot in front of him, and the surrounding neighborhoods were completely restored at this time. Even the silhouettes in crimson robes were completely provoked by her time magic to return to the time of Taj Kama. The figures disappeared without a trace. Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One sighed. The power of the gem of time is so powerful, she has been able to figure it out superbly, but it can't affect the young man in front of him. Maybe he really is the fate. But at this moment, when the dark-faced Baron Mordo will be completely taken away by the power of time. Puff. A terrifying flying blade penetrated his heart. I remember you. Su-chan's words came like this. You. In the end, Baron Mordor did not expect that he would have such an encounter. He wanted to say something, but the severe pain made him speechless, and his figure quickly faded away and disappeared completely under the power of time. Ancient One frowned, but she could more or less foresee that the stubborn Mordor would never recognize herself. He must be a member of the team that deviated. This moment, Su-chan and Sorcerer Supreme are the only two left in the bustling urban streets that have been completely restored. Looking at Su-chan, Ancient One sighed helplessly and said, I don't have much time left in my life. Compared to me, your future is vast and promising, and there are more wonderful lives waiting for you. You are a very unique existence. Maybe you are the destiny. If there's a wish, I just hope that you can let go of some obsessions in your heart. It will make your life easier. That's what I want to say. Don't be nagging. This is a sincere word from an elderly man. At night, Yurkton, a landmark high-rise building hundreds of meters high, has become Su Chen's residence at this moment. According to Utopia, this is the Supreme Palace. Su Chen's hands sort out of ring-like things. This is, in the spacious and elegant hall, the White Queen Emma was slightly surprised, but still took the ring fingers thrown in. The suspended ring, a kind of magical item. The Mage of Comatage was able to open the space channel soon after he got started, and he could travel around the world unimpededly. This, Emma, the White Queen, also changed her face when she heard this. Space powers are extremely rare even in mutants, and the quality is uneven, and they may not be able to achieve the effects that can be achieved by the ring. Let them continue to guard the temple. Ignore them. Of course, select some young and clever mutants and send them there. They will become new students of Comatage and learn the magic knowledge there. This is one of the conditions that Su Chen let them go before leaving. The three major temples that sustain the Earth's magic circle naturally cannot be destroyed, but the protection fee is charged. Mutant Mage is one of the choices. Su Chen's ambitions pervaded his mind and made him understand that if he wants to conquer the stars and the sea, and even expand his horizons to a broader multiverse, his forces need to be stronger. I need a bigger scientific team. This is his request. At least according to MR, Fantastic Reed's vision, the Universe Cube can be used as a super large wormhole device, which can be used for interstellar transitions and wormhole shuttles for a large number of troops. Su Chen has read a lot of scientific research materials left by Reed during this period. After the brain domain has been fully developed, he has a new cognitive perspective. At least, after the successful development of the Cosmos Cube, the first key attack was the Asgard God's domain, and he is also very interested in the Sentry robot itself. If the attack order is completely modified to other races, it will definitely become a huge colonial army under his own. Su Chen can't wait to go out of the world and take a look at the scenery outside. I will ask someone to deal with it. Emma, the White Queen, is more like a secretary of life and chief of the house, responsible for handling the affairs assigned by Utopia Supreme. Susan on the side took a bite of the biscuits and said on a whim, "Brother, can I learn magic?" Which girl does not have the dream of a magical girl? Her longing eyes looked at Su Chen like this. Su Chen smiled. Not to mention learning magic. Even if his sister asks him to pick a star, he will do his best to do it. Sure, with a connection to Susan's mind, Su Chen doesn't have to worry about any harm. Let them send a female mage over tomorrow. Let her teach the introductory knowledge. Great. Susan jumped up from the sofa excitedly. Although in a magnificent palace that I could not imagine in the past, a cloakroom alone is many times larger than a bedroom in the past. But after these days, Susan is still a little boring. Can I too? The super killer Mindy is also a little bit hopeful. After all, as a master of firearms and even assassination, in the environment of an increasing number of mutants, she felt more and more that her use of weapons was too little. Although the other party didn't need anything from her friend, she still looked forward to seeing the need for strength growth. Of course, you and Susan are just a companion. Su Chen directly agreed. Two little girls of the same age don't have much generation gap at all, and they have become accustomed to getting along these days. He also felt relieved that there were supergirls around. Then can I throw away my textbooks? Susan held her face in both hands and said expectantly, "No." Su Chen has a serious face. This is an indisputable matter. He hopes that his sister will grow up healthily and have a good future when she grows up. As the elder brother, he naturally had to strictly discipline the little witch on behalf of the deceased mother, so as to prevent her from developing a lot of bad problems during the rebellious period. Then I have to learn magic and textbook knowledge. Isn't there no time to play? Susan was in a hurry, and she felt as if she had dug a hole and made herself jump down. Learning a little more content will never suffer. Su Chen patted her head gently. Although he spoils his sister, these teaching contents involving growth must not be left behind. Seeking flowers. After all, Susan's brain is not as fully developed as herself. Emma, the White Queen in a white dress, stood by and watched the scene in front of her silently, with a slight smile on her delicate face. The scene in front of me is so warm. As a mutant, Emma, who has lost family love since childhood, is also looking forward to the scene at hand. Furthermore, who can think of a young man who is indifferent and aloof in the world fighting for hegemony abroad? Treating my sister in my own home is like an elder brother next door, gentle and quiet, and mediocre. But once the opponent is alone, the whole person's face reveals firmness and arrogance, and the back that comes and falls on the ground is a bit more solemn, like an abyss. 0. Emma felt a bit bitter inexplicably in her heart, but she knew that Su Chen must have been severely hurt by the external pain that made him come to this point. The same night, West Coast. Compared to the warm and harmonious family atmosphere over there, the entire secret base facility of S.H.I.E.L.D. buried in the ground reveals a sense of solemnity. Just today, our two bases have been discovered, and mutants have captured everything there. If you are not mistaken, the special agents who know some of the affairs will continue to expose more secret bases, and tomorrow I am afraid that there will be 3 more secret bases. Director Hill said helplessly. In the face of mutants with the ability to invade the mind, the work of secrecy becomes more and more difficult to maintain. How do Sentry mutants produce? Mass production has begun, and Dr. Bolivar and Trask Industries have made a guarantee that they will absolutely destroy 99% of the mutants in the world. Very good. Director Hill only felt a little relieved. And at this moment, they also didn't expect that their biggest help had broken into the solar system from the outer space star field. The greatest savior that Nick Fury had pinned before his death has arrived. Soon, against the backdrop of the vast expanse of space, a beautiful figure covered in golden light just flew directly towards the Earth like a meteor from the sky. Mountain. Captain Marvel is here. In Nick Fury's cognition, this is the most powerful woman ever on Earth. Even the most senior level 10 agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. were unable to retrieve relevant information from them. Throughout the entire S.H.I.E.L.D. Bureau, perhaps only Agent Coulson had some impressions of this. Whoosh. Under the background of the vast starry sky, like a meteor from the sky, it burrowed into the blue planet in front of him in an instant. The super fast flight speed suddenly broke through the atmosphere of her figure. After she felt the signal fluctuation from the pager, she rushed towards the West Coast. After leaving Earth for more than 20 years, Captain Marvel Carol once again returned to his home planet. After solving the Kree invasion at the age of the last century, Carol left the Earth and began to act as the unavoidable savior of the universe. So many years passed in a flash. But what problem did Nick Fury encounter? Carol with blonde hair turned into a streamer and swooped down. A pair of golden eyes that were also glowing with energy fluctuations swept across the entire land of the Earth, and her extraordinary visual capture ability allowed her to gather all the sights of cities in her pupils. What? She was very surprised, but it didn't find too many problems. It's not like an alien invasion. Don't even think about a world war. So here comes the problem. It's not the invasion of interstellar forces and the Galactic Empire. Damn, Nick Fury won't take a little thing to entertain me. When entrusting Nick Fury with a pager capable of transmitting a signal to the universe, she specifically ordered that unless the Earth is in a major crisis, otherwise the device will not be activated. Certainly, Captain Marvel's strength is indeed very strong, able to absorb and control any form of cosmic energy. However, it is ignorant of the large-scale tampering of the Earth's timeline. Soon, when she flew to the sky above a city, she found that the whole city was pervading in a mist. They're here to kill mutants again. Run away. This white mist is poisonous. Hurry up, everyone. When the fog raged across the city, the mutants who breathed the gas one by one immediately reacted quickly. They knelt on the ground in pain, their hands tightly covering their hearts, and the terrifying gas toxin caused their internal organs to fail quickly. What? Not only that, they couldn't even use their superpowers, so that there was no resistance in the mist, and they quickly fell to the ground. Oh my god, what happened? Captain Marvel Carol stopped heading for the destination and swooped directly towards this large city with a population of at least millions. Help me. A female mutant who fell to the ground in pain stretched her hand forward and tried to ask for help from the lady who was floating in front of her and braving the golden light. It's just that under this terrifying toxin, she foamed at her mouth all at once, her organs turned to exhaustion, and the life fluctuations of the whole person had become very weak. Damn it. Carol grabbed her hand and tried to heal her body with gentle energy, but the terrifying toxin had completely taken her life. This is a massacre. Captain Marvel Carol was furious. With irradiated perception, she could see a figure after another in pain. Certainly, in this mist that permeated the entire city, there were quite a few humans in it unscathed. They are mutants and die well. No, such indiscriminate slaughter is too horrible and too counterhuman. Our body is okay at all. This must be the latest poisonous fog developed specifically for mutants. No, my daughter is human. She is not a mutant at all. Will anyone come to save him? The voices of painful wailing and revelry continue to sound. Some people support killing all the mutants, but many more people are afraid. Such slaughter is really terrible. Even some humans are very angry about it, because many people around them have also fallen. This day, the alien race finally began to go to the world. The mist released by the Terrigon crystal from their race spread to this central city in this way. Different from mutants who slowly awakened their superpowers over time. Becoming an alien requires a catalyst like Terrigon mist to stimulate the genes in the body and successfully awaken the ability. Under this ruthless slaughter, many figures in the city were carbonized. Under the stimulation of the mist, the entire body's skin was carbonized. Suddenly, it was a cocoon, completely enveloping their figures. In less than a minute, when the layers of carbonized structure have completely fallen off, it will be the time when the inhuman race has completely awakened. Scan their body structure and genetic information. It was a coincidence. Captain Marvel Carol, who has been in the universe for many years, witnessed this scene. She was angry with the watch worn on her wrist and scanned the carbonized figure around her. As a result, an amazing discovery made her eyes widen. After scanning and analysis, the carbonized human body has a fragment of genetic information similar to that of the Kree. Impossible. Coming to this conclusion, Carol was completely unbelievable. She couldn't believe that her past enemy, one of the 3 interstellar empires in the universe, the gene information fragment of the Kree, was actually inherited in the human body. Is this a joke? It can be scanned multiple times, which is the answer. Analysis shows that this fog spread in the city is very consistent with the biochemical technology of the Kree Empire in the past. Another coincidence just ran into it. Carol only feels that his outlook on life has been impacted. So, Nick Fury only used that pager after discovering the secret tricks of the Carey people? According to the genetic information report of the carbonized person, although it cannot be accurately assessed, at least the inheritance time is at least tens of thousands of years. In other words, the Kree visited the Earth a long time ago and used their own genes to combine with human DNA to make some biological weapons. Damn the Carey Empire. Their layout is so deep. So, Nick Fury only used that pager after discovering the secret tricks of the Carey people? Carol, who is self-sufficient, believes that, after all, the Kree is her mortal enemy. Presumably Nick Fury discovered this and immediately issued a distress signal.